Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. Yamori Hiroto found himself in the courtyard of a modern school, reborn in the body of a weak outcast. Bullies mocked him, calling him a pathetic heir. Memories of his new life made him feel a familiar strength. MC reignited his energy, breaking the blocks in his new body. The first test was the school's 100-meter sprint. Yamori Hiroto even gave the champion a 3-second head start. Everyone laughed, calling him crazy. But the difference between a cultivator and an ordinary person is stark. He overtook his opponent and crossed the finish line. The judge merely muttered that it was a new school record. Yamori Hiroto had once been the world's strongest cultivator, who had single-handedly defeated an army of demons. But a mysterious woman gave the order, and his victory turned to ashes. He vowed to drag his enemies to hell. The cultivation master has returned, and the path of revenge begins now. After the physical test, Yamori Hiroto heads to the restroom to plan his next move. But he immediately runs into a practical obstacle. Every useful resource costs far more than he can afford. A glance at the prices confirms that even basic ingredients are outrageously expensive for his current circumstances. He considers making and selling talismans as a way to earn money. That hope weakens when he checks his account and finds he has almost nothing, not even enough for low-grade materials. He hardens his resolve, deciding that if he wants revenge, making money has to come first. Before he can act on that plan, someone from his miserable present catches up to him. A group of local thugs corners him, treating him like an easy target they already own. Their leader demands this month's protection fee in advance, using the excuse that Yamori caused trouble earlier. Yamori realizes the previous owner of this body had been regularly extorted by them. He pieces together that they call it protection, but they were the ones who beat him down in the first place. When Yamori does not submit, the leader casually orders Haru to handle him, still convinced this will be effortless. Haru attacks expecting a one-sided beating, assuming the old Bakuto would have folded immediately. Instead, Yamori slips past the strike with ease, making clear that the weak man they knew is gone. He punishes Haru instantly with a brutal counter to the throat. The blow sends Haru flying, and the narration underscores that even a cultivator's weakest body still surpasses an ordinary human. Without hesitation, Yamori turns on the next thug before the group can recover. He drives another crushing hit into the blue-haired man and smashes him into the wall. The remaining extortionists panic, suddenly wondering if this really is the legendary Yamori. Yamori advances on them calmly, savoring their fear now that the power dynamic has reversed. Desperate to regain control, the last two rush him together. Yamori catches both attacks at once, stopping them cold. He holds them in place with effortless strength, making their combined assault look pathetic. As pain shoots through their hands, they realize they are completely trapped. Yamori decides to make them suffer a little, treating their fear as overdue repayment. The two finally break and beg for mercy, apologizing and pleading for him to stop. He answers by knocking them away anyway, making it clear their surrender comes too late to spare them immediate punishment. Cornered in the restroom, one of the boys breaks down and begs for mercy. The black-haired young man advances while the others recoil, realizing too late that they cannot control the situation. One blonde thug tries to force himself back into the confrontation despite his fear. He lunges in desperation, determined not to let his target escape. The young man counters instantly and crushes the attack with a brutal strike. The blonde is hurled across the room and smashed into the wall. He collapses battered and helpless, completely overpowered. Standing over him with a monstrous aura, the young man warns that next time the punishment will be worse. The others panic and finally admit they are facing someone far beyond them. Terrified, they apologize and beg him not to come any closer. He ignores their fear and demands the return of what they stole from him. The boys are confused, still pretending not to understand what he wants. His anger sharpens as he makes it clear they are holding something that belongs to him. That threat breaks their resistance, and one of them immediately offers to give it back. The stolen bundle of talismans is hurriedly returned, with the thief insisting that is everything. Afterward, the young man decides he may have gone too far, but he is confident the humiliated boys will keep quiet, and he orders Haru taken to the infirmary. He reflects that this school is too crowded with people who can sense the supernatural, so he should leave once the timing is right. Still, recovering the stolen charms means he can at least turn the incident into money. He judges the talismans cheap but useful enough to become the first practical step in his revenge. He considers the nature of talismans and the value they hold in the cultivation world. They are common tools for lower-ranked cultivators, made to trigger special effects through infused materials and spiritual energy. Different ingredients and methods produce many kinds of charms with different functions. Even at his current low stage, he knows enough to recognize their worth and use them. To test them, he calls for the charms to reveal themselves. 5 groups of talismans appear before him, sorted by type. He selects one stack after judging the options. Satisfied, he concludes these charms should sell for a decent price. With that settled, he turns his attention to finding a place to train and medicinal herbs to support his progress. Now identified as Yamori Bakuto, a stage 1 cultivator, he heads into the city with only a tiny amount of money and no one willing to buy from him yet. As he walks the street, people eye his charms suspiciously, making it clear he cannot sell them openly here. He suddenly notices something unexpected. A faint whimper draws his attention to the roadside. He finds an injured small dog struggling to stand. Seeing the severity of its wounds, he suspects it was hit by a car and may not survive. He kneels beside it, weighing what to do. Deciding to experiment, he takes out a healing charm and chooses to test its effect on the dog. The charm works exactly as intended, restoring the animal's injuries and internal damage. The dog slowly realizes the pain is gone. Moments later, it is fully recovered and happily barking. Bakuto gently pets it, pleased that the charm proved genuine. Their quiet moment is interrupted when the dog reacts to someone approaching. A stylish woman arrives arguing with a red-haired man, furious that he struck the dog and insisting it must be taken to a hospital. She rejects his excuses and makes clear she never asked him to follow her, only to help save the animal. Then she notices the dog is no longer dying and stops in shock. Seeing the animal healthy in Bakuto's arms, she realizes something impossible has happened. She and the man rush over, demanding to know who he is and how the dog healed so quickly. The woman explains that when she first found it, the dog was so badly injured that survival seemed impossible. Bakuto seizes on her mention of the hospital and casually asks whether she is going there to visit someone. As she stands before him, he immediately senses an opportunity in this encounter. He reveals that he used something to heal the dog, inviting her to focus on the method rather than the miracle itself. A young man recognizes the item in his hand as a protective charm and realizes it may have real value. Before he can process it, a red-haired man accuses him of deceiving a woman named Shizuru and moves to drive him away. The accuser warns Shizuru that the stranger is dangerous and claims he deliberately set up the earlier incident with the dog. Ignoring the warning, Shizuru cuts to what matters and asks whether the charm can actually be used by anyone. She reveals why she cares so much. Someone close to her is in a vegetative state, and she is desperate for a way to save them. The young man explains that such a condition comes from severe brain damage and that a pure mind talisman is meant to restore and regenerate through spiritual energy. He identifies the charm she found as exactly that kind of talisman and tells her it could help someone in that condition. The red-haired man tries to pull her back, but Shizuru focuses on the possibility that her aunt could be healed. The young man clarifies that the talisman is simple to use, requiring only contact with the person who needs healing. He immediately turns the miracle into a transaction, naming steep prices for the two charms. Shizuru accepts without hesitation, even offering far more than asked if it means getting every charm he has. The red-haired man lashes out and tries to force the seller away. His attempt fails the instant the young man catches him. With a cold warning not to interfere in a willing deal, the young man leaves the attacker's arm useless and in pain. He makes it clear that anyone who stands in his way should leave before things get worse. A casual shove sends the red-haired man sprawling, ending his resistance. The young man calmly completes the sale with Shizuru while the fallen man can only protest from the ground. He adds extra talismans to the purchase, explaining that the yellow ones are protective and the red ones produce fireballs. As he hands them over, he quietly hopes she will never need the more dangerous charms. Shizuru thanks him, moved by the chance he has given her. Wanting to remember the person who offered that hope, she asks for his name. He introduces himself as Yamori Bakuto and walks away with a casual wave, his dog following beside him. The red-haired man keeps insisting Bakuto is a fraud, but his warning no longer reaches her. Shizuru admits it may sound irrational, yet even the smallest chance of saving her mother is enough for her to believe. She resolves to take that chance because the possibility of her mother waking up again outweighs everything else. Elsewhere, Bakuto counts the sale as a breakthrough, thinking that with money at last he can start looking for a place to live. He is already planning the next step, deciding to spend what remains on herbs needed for training. His dog suddenly alerts him, drawing his attention to something nearby. They arrive at a mansion engulfed in visible blue spiritual flames, and Bakuto realizes a powerful supernatural force is at work there. The sight catches him off guard, and he immediately starts assessing what could cause it. He notices a glowing plant in the garden and identifies it as silverheart grass, a rare spiritual herb. Meanwhile, the red-haired man receives treatment for the injury Bakuto inflicted on his arm. Still humiliated, he blames Bakuto for everything and vents his anger while being treated. He vows revenge, unaware that someone important has overheard his outburst. An older man appears and condemns him for repaying Shokuin's kindness with disgraceful behavior. The rebuke hardens into open contempt as the older man denounces the embarrassment he has caused the family. Shizuru arrives within earshot, clutching the charm, just as the older man turns his scorn toward her as well. He and the nurses mock her for spending a fortune on charms, treating her hope as proof that even a councilman's daughter can be made a fool. Humiliated but not broken, Shizuru decides she will still try the talisman one last time. She steels herself with the belief that this is her final chance, and that she has to do everything possible for her mother. Her father erupts, insisting she has gone too far. He ridicules her faith in the talisman as superstition and dismisses her desperation as madness. Shizuru finally turns on him and demands to know what he himself has ever done for her mother. She points to her unconscious mother in the hospital bed and accuses him of neglecting her until it was too late. Her father is left speechless for a moment, as she tears apart his claim of having done all he could. She presses on, accusing him of moving on with other women while expecting her to quietly accept her mother's death. Unable to answer her pain, he raises his hand and tries to reassert control through anger. But faced with her defiance, he hesitates instead of striking. The moment breaks his momentum, and he lowers his hand with a bitter, restrained breath. Retreating into cold judgment, he leaves only a cutting remark that his daughter has become far too defiant. A silver-haired man moves to summon a nurse and have the life support tubes removed, assuming the patient's long vigil is over. The daughter refuses to accept that decision and clutches a glowing charm, determined to keep fighting for her mother. Leaning over the hospital bed, she pours all her hope into the charm and vows she will not give up. The charm suddenly erupts with blue light, releasing a force no one expected. She is startled as the object responds, realizing something impossible may actually be happening. The husband turns back in alarm, sensing the situation has changed. His wife opens her eyes despite the ventilator, and her first visible recovery is so sudden that he can only register that she already looks healthier. As the daughter calls out to her mother, the husband rushes for medical help. Overcome with hope, he begs the staff to come at once because his wife has awakened. The doctor and nurse are stunned, struggling to believe the report. Once they see the patient, the doctor immediately orders a full examination. The results confirm a medical impossibility. She is expected to recover, and with rehabilitation she may return to normal life within a year and a half. The daughter reveals that the recovery came from the charm she had been carrying. She explains that the charm itself was what healed her mother. The claim shocks everyone, because it overturns everything they think medicine can explain. As the doctor calls it a miracle and wants a medical professor brought in, others begin wondering if the unknown benefactor behind the charm was no ordinary person at all. One onlooker voices the wild possibility that the healer might have been an immortal cultivator. The daughter throws herself into her mother's arms, relieved that the woman she feared losing has finally awakened. While crying with gratitude, she decides that if she ever sees the mysterious savior again, she must repay him somehow. Elsewhere, the story shifts to a quiet house where that unseen benefactor has just settled in. The young man finishes moving into his new place and treats it as the first step toward reclaiming the life and power he once had. He remembers those who betrayed him and turns his return into a vow of future revenge. His hatred hardens into certainty that he will never forgive the enemies who ruined him. But before revenge, he knows he must rebuild his strength by reaching cultivation stage 11, which requires spiritual springs or spiritual materials. He promises his enemies that the day of reckoning is approaching. As he assesses his condition, he realizes the world's spiritual energy is fading, and if that decline continues, his cultivation will stall. He concludes that to break through, he must find either a place rich in spiritual energy, or an item that still contains it. At first he assumes only spiritual springs or rare materials could solve that problem. Then he discovers a silverheart grass growing right in the garden, an unexpected source of spiritual material. He recognizes silverheart grass as a spiritual herb that can be refined into medicine to raise a cultivator's level. Using its fruit, he sees a path to making gathering chi pills and advancing to cultivation stage 2, but he hesitates. Because the herb is too valuable to waste, he decides careless use could create trouble and slow his progress. He resolves to begin training immediately rather than wait for disaster to strike first. Later, he enters a street market, moving through an ordinary crowd while keeping his purpose hidden. Selling talismans has brought in some money, but he realizes it is nowhere near enough to buy the ingredients he needs for proper cultivation. He also senses that despite trying to stay discreet, trouble has found him anyway. His suspicion sharpens when he notices watchers keeping their distance while tracking him closely. He recognizes the pattern as organized surveillance that began after his third day in the city, and now there are even more tales than before. Instead of retreating, he decides to draw them out and see exactly who is after him. Before he can act, a girl recognizes him and calls him by the name tied to his current identity, Yamori-kun. She cheerfully notes that he has not been at school lately and presses him about what he has been doing. She quickly pieces together that, with his family cut off and no support from the Yamori household, he must be broke. He remembers that she was one of the original body's classmates, making the encounter an inconvenience he cannot ignore. Trying to help, she offers to lend him money so he can return to school. He brushes her off and starts to leave, but she calls after him, unwilling to let the matter end so easily. Watching him go, she senses that something is seriously wrong and that he is caught in something bigger than simple poverty. At the same time, the atmosphere around the street tightens as hidden movement closes in from the surrounding alleys and rooftops. He calmly counts the hostile presences around him, identifying 10 separate auras waiting to strike. With the odds measured, he decides to end the ambush quickly. The trap finally springs as armed attackers rush in, forcing the confrontation into the open. A young man bolts through an alley while armed pursuers realize he is escaping and rush after him. The chase spills deeper into the back streets, as several gang members close in from behind. Instead of fleeing further, the target stops and turns to face them in the open. One pursuer vows he will not let the boy get away this time, only to find him completely unshaken. The boy openly invites the whole group to attack together, making clear he does not fear them. The gang surrounds him with clubs and knives, expecting to overwhelm him by numbers. Their bald leader almost admires the boy's nerve before moving to intimidate him. The boy cuts through the posturing and demands to know why they have been tailing him and who sent them. The leader warns that the boy has crossed a major family and is courting death by continuing his business. The gang mocks him as a doomed nobody and suggests even the Amatani heiress would be better off without him. That name jolts the boy, who realizes this body was once engaged to Amatani Setsu. He pieces together that these men belong to the Amatani family and are trying to silence a broken engagement before it causes trouble. Deciding he needs the truth, he resolves to force them to talk. Nearby, a girl secretly watching the scene panics that Yamori-kun is being targeted by Yakuza. She fears he has no chance against so many armed men. Believing he is in mortal danger, she starts calling the police. Before she can get help, someone notices her and closes in on the hidden witness. A hulking thug seizes her and demands to know who she was trying to contact. As she struggles and cries out, the gang realizes an outsider has stumbled into the situation. The leader is alerted that their boss has arrived to deal with the complication. The boss takes the girl hostage, pinning her in place to control the scene. The boy recognizes her as Machiyama Nozomi, and is thrown off by the fact that she followed him here. The gang taunts him for dragging yet another girl into danger because of his ties to the Amatani heiress. Nozomi desperately warns Yamori that the men are armed and tells him to run. Trying to save herself and him, she blurts out that they cannot hurt her because she is the daughter of the Kyoja Machiyama family. That claim makes the gang pause and reassess who they may have just grabbed. The boss quickly decides the safest answer is to kill her too so no one can trace what happened. Nozomi begs him to stop as he raises a knife to silence her. He dismisses her plea and moves to stab her for getting involved. That threat finally pushes Yamori into action as he launches himself straight at the attacker. He strikes with such speed that the knife is knocked free before it can reach Nozomi. As he closes the distance, he admits he had hoped to avoid drawing attention to himself. He cuts off the thug's resistance before the man can even react. Yamori unleashes a brutal counterattack, making clear that surrendering quietly was never an option for him. With one decisive blow, he smashes the boss into the wall and drops him instantly. Watching this, Nozomi can barely believe the quiet boy she knew is capable of such overwhelming force. The remaining gang members freeze as they realize they are facing someone far more dangerous than expected. Yamori coldly gives them one chance to cooperate and repeats his demand to know who sent them. Elsewhere in the city, police receive word that the gang has moved into the eastern backstreets. Officer Ko immediately asks for their exact location while driving toward the scene. He is told the suspects are cornering a boy and holding a girl hostage. Ko orders backup at once but insists Chief Onaga not be informed yet. As he speeds there, he warns his subordinate not to rush in because these dealers are willing to kill. The subordinate agrees, though Ko's urgency makes it clear he may not wait for support himself. A moment later, the radio reports that backup may no longer be necessary. The officer on scene explains that the boy they were worried about has already changed everything. By the time police arrive, Yamori is standing over the entire gang, having taken them all down alone while Nozomi remains safe behind him. Holding one surviving thug by the head, Yamori forces him to admit the attack was ordered by the Amatani family, and that the men know nothing beyond that. Unsatisfied, Yamori presses harder and demands to know whether the information on him came from the Amatani family or the Yamori family. He gives the thug 3 seconds to answer, making it clear the interrogation is far from over. As the battered thug begs for a pause, the young man keeps him pinned and refuses to let the situation slip away. He sharply halts the police before they can interfere on the thug's behalf. A pursuing officer warns that if he keeps using force, he will be no better than the criminals he just defeated. The young man dismisses the police as useless, already judging them as part of the problem. He considers forcing his way through them, but weighs the cost of escalating further. Since he has already demonstrated overwhelming strength, he decides he no longer needs to keep pressing the issue. He releases the thug and backs off, choosing restraint for the moment. The thug realizes how close he came to being killed and admits the young man is already strong enough to challenge government authority. One officer arrives relieved, amazed that a single person really brought down so many dangerous criminals alone. The aftermath makes clear just how many enemies the young man handled by himself while civilians and defeated men remained scattered around him. The lead officer introduces himself as Sergeant Ko Haruki and approaches in a more formal, respectful tone. The young woman with the protagonist politely joins the exchange, signaling that they are no longer treating the police as immediate enemies. Haruki explains that he and Officer Rokuhara already know the broad outline of what happened and move to formalize contact. The young man realizes government surveillance has been watching closely enough to catch everything. Haruki says they will take a statement later and asks only about what happened today, trying to keep the process narrow and manageable. Before that can continue, someone calls for Chief Onaga, abruptly shifting control of the scene. Onaga arrives already framing the matter as police failure, implying he alone prevented them from letting a criminal go free. Using his rank as second-class police chief, Onaga declares the student under arrest for assault. He thrusts an arrest warrant at the young man and aggressively asserts legal authority over him. The young woman protests that they were the victims, not the attackers. Onaga seizes on her objection as if the claim itself were absurd. He produces a supposed witness who falsely claims the young man was the one brutally assaulting innocent men. Haruki grabs Onaga in outrage, accusing him of knowingly protecting criminals and lying about the case. Onaga coldly insists he is telling the truth, showing no shame in the fabrication. He reminds Haruki of the hierarchy and threatens to have him removed from the force for speaking back. Haruki can only condemn him as vile, but his anger changes nothing. Rokuhara restrains Haruki and begs him to calm down before he destroys his own career. Seeing the conflict spiraling, the young man unexpectedly agrees to be taken in. Privately, he concludes that someone powerful went to great lengths to frame him, confirming a larger enemy is moving behind the scenes. Onaga mocks his compliance, while the young man decides that entering custody may be the best way to draw out whoever orchestrated this. When Onaga lets slip knowledge he should not have, the young man notices immediately and presses the implication. Onaga realizes he exposed himself, and the young man identifies him as just another pawn serving the real mastermind. With a taunting smile, he challenges Onaga to deny that he is acting on his master's orders. Onaga retreats behind bluster, denies everything, and orders the arrest to proceed. The police move to take the young man away while the young woman can only watch in alarm. Even in custody, the young man reveals he quietly stole a button from Onaga's uniform. Onaga is shaken to realize the theft happened without him noticing, exposing how completely he was outplayed. As the handcuffs close, the young man warns that next time they meet, taking a button will be the least of what he takes. Humiliated and furious, Onaga vows revenge. The story shifts to the prison where the consequences of the arrest begin to unfold. Inside a cell, a large inmate sits waiting in silence, suggesting someone dangerous has already been prepared for what is coming. A baton strikes the bars, signaling the start of a coordinated move inside the prison. A shadowed figure reports that the target will arrive soon, and receives a direct order to eliminate him. The inmate accepts the contract without hesitation, revealing this prison attack has been arranged in advance. Escorted inside, the young man calmly takes in the prison environment instead of showing fear. The cell door unlocks and opens, delivering him exactly where his enemies want him. He walks in under guard, fully aware that the setup is continuing behind bars. Sensing hostile intent immediately, he realizes the inmates are planning to gang up on him. Rather than panic, he finds the situation interesting, as if the trap may lead him closer to the truth. Facing the waiting inmate, he directly addresses him as the mastermind, showing he intends to confront the conspiracy head-on. A bandaged enforcer insists he has always lived by his own code and never preyed on ordinary people. He makes clear that he does not extend that restraint to his current target, whom he dismisses as beneath protection. With open contempt, he declares that people like this man are simply too weak to matter. He reveals his name, Zenzel Funaki, and announces that he was hired to kill the young man, offering surrender as the only way to avoid trouble. The young man immediately reads him as just another subordinate, while recalling the moment he entered and felt the needle-like presence in his skin. Even while admitting he may seem weak for now, he recognizes the force pouring off Funaki and understands what he is facing. Funaki flares with power, and the young man identifies it as spiritual energy. As Funaki prepares to finish him, the young man calmly signals that he is ready to begin. Funaki lunges in to send him to the afterlife, confident the fight will end instantly. He follows with a brutal flying kick meant to crush the young man before he can react. But in mid-attack, Funaki realizes something is wrong. The young man intercepts him cleanly, and tells him he has completely misjudged the situation. He begins correcting Funaki's worldview by stating that the truly weak one here is not him. He drives Funaki into the ground and finishes the thought. The weak one is Funaki. Funaki desperately grabs hold of his opponent's leg to stop the assault from continuing. Using that grip, Funaki twists his body and tries to reverse the exchange with raw physical force. He hurls the young man away in a wide arc, buying himself space. The young man lands and immediately squares up again, while Funaki resets for another clash. Now taking him seriously, Funaki admits he underestimated him and vows to make him regret it. The young man stands in the settling dust, surrounded by a darker aura that makes clear he still has the upper hand. His power surges outward across the room, signaling that he is no longer holding back. He dives straight at Funaki with a concentrated strike, pressing the advantage before Funaki can recover. The blow sends Funaki skidding backward as the young man chases without pause. Funaki crashes through the wall under the force of the attack. Spitting blood, he realizes the power hitting him is far beyond what he expected. Before he can regain control, the young man closes in again and keeps him pinned under relentless pressure. Funaki tries to shield himself and create distance, cursing as he loses control of the fight. Another violent impact tears through the room and blasts the young man away from the immediate exchange. He steadies himself in the smoke, still composed despite the disruption. Funaki rises bloodied and irritated, refusing to accept defeat. He charges again with a heavy punch, warning his opponent not to get arrogant. The young man watches the attack come in without any sign of panic. He slips inside the swing and counters with a precise body blow. The hit tears blood from Funaki's mouth and breaks his momentum completely. Funaki is launched backward and crashes hard amid flying debris. Stunned in the rubble, he can only wonder what kind of monster he is fighting. As the young man approaches wrapped in a menacing aura, Funaki's fear finally overtakes his bravado. The young man raises another strike, making it clear the beating will continue unless he talks. He slams Funaki down again, crushing any remaining resistance. With Funaki pinned by the face, he demands to know whose orders he is following. He presses further, forcing Funaki to explain what comes next in the chain behind this attack. Leaning over him with cold focus, he waits for the answer while his aura coils around him. Elsewhere, a suited officer on the phone hears a shaken report describing the young man as some kind of monster. The man on the other end dismisses that label and identifies the target as the supposedly useless failure of the Yamori family. The officer is unsettled that such a person could display this level of power, but he is assured it will not matter if the problem is handled quickly. He is told that Ryuja thugs have already been sent after the young man, and that success will earn him a recommendation to Lord Ima and a promotion. The officer accepts the arrangement and reminds Hashimoto not to forget that promise. Back in the ruined room, Funaki hangs broken against the wall while the young man, now seated before him, notes that he still refuses to talk and grudgingly respects that much. Funaki admits he underestimated him because his strength lies beyond what ordinary people can handle, grouping himself with those ordinary people. The young man seizes on that wording and realizes this means there are other cultivators besides himself. A battered man begins explaining that years ago he encountered an old monk in Ryuja. That meeting convinced him the monk possessed impossible power, enough to split a huge tree with nothing but one hand and pure energy. Seeing that feat, he realized he was dealing with something far beyond ordinary human ability. The monk then handed him a bottle of divine water, offering him access to that power. He followed the monk's instructions and spent years drinking diluted portions of it. Over time, the substance transformed his body into something he no longer considered fully human. The young man listening pieces it together, and concludes that divine water must be spiritual essence, making him wonder whether a spiritual spring exists in Ryuja. He recalls that spiritual springs form where energy becomes densely concentrated over long periods, eventually condensing into spiritual essence. That would make liquid from such a spring extraordinarily valuable for cultivation, so he questions why a man who surpassed normal humans is still mixed up in mundane crime. The answer is painfully simple. The man's child is dying, and the treatment costs are crushing. Worse, the divine water that changed him could not heal his son, leaving him able to do little more than delay the inevitable. Driven by desperation, he admits he needs money for a real cure and has been forced into this path. The young man immediately shifts from listening to bargaining, saying ALS can be dealt with, and that he may be able to save the child. That promise jolts the desperate father into stunned disbelief. The young man explains that divine water is dangerous in raw form, but spiritual energy can be refined into safer specialized effects. He offers healing as one such application, using a talisman as proof of concept. The father scoffs at the idea that a scrap of paper could hold real spiritual power. To answer him, the young man activates the talisman and releases a surge of spiritual energy. The father's injuries mend at once, forcing him to accept that the healing is real. With that leverage secured, the young man gives him a choice: reveal who is behind everything, and the child will be saved. He makes clear that refusal will bring a far darker outcome. The threat lands, and the father realizes resistance is pointless. Accepting the young man's power, he admits he already suspected he was no ordinary person. He finally names the one who contacted him, Akamasa Hashimoto. He adds that this man is widely known as Lord Hashimoto. The story shifts to Hashimoto himself, who mocks Onaga's fear and the Yamori family's weakness while taking a call. In his lavish club, Hashimoto resumes his leisure as if nothing serious is happening. He toys with his captive by pretending to offer her a polite choice of food or drink. The woman, chained and bloodied, can barely respond. Hashimoto closes in, treating her suffering like misbehavior that deserves correction. Still smiling, he prepares to continue his cruelty. He violently pries open her mouth and rips out more of her teeth. Her mouth fills with blood as the torture escalates. Hashimoto delights in the pain he causes and frames the mutilation as a lesson in obedience. The woman can only choke and moan through the damage. A subordinate interrupts with news from Lord Ima concerning Yamori Bakuto. Hashimoto casually replies that he already sent Ryuja thugs to handle it, and sees no need to involve the police himself. But inwardly he rejects that option, recognizing that direct police involvement would only end in death. Back in the present, the conversation in the cell turns practical again. As payment for the talisman's help, the father offers up his cross necklace. The young man identifies it as concentrated spiritual essence rather than an ordinary trinket. He explains that if this essence is used on silverheart grass, it can instantly produce bare fruit and help him advance his cultivation. He accepts the gift, acknowledging that it will be genuinely useful. Before he leaves, the father warns that Hashimoto will now come after him. He stresses that anyone targeted by that man never gets a peaceful outcome. The young man remains calm, tells him to focus on his child's treatment, and turns his attention toward Hashimoto. With cold resolve, he decides that when this is over, Hashimoto will be forced to smile through the end. The scene then moves to Nemi University, where a new arrival enters the story. A yellow car pulls up on campus and someone steps out. A poised woman in sunglasses emerges, signaling the start of the next development. A poised woman confirms from a photo that Bakuto is tied to the Machiyama family through Junko, and she is struck by how boldly he has hidden that connection. Deciding to verify his status directly, she heads for the president's office to ask Dean Jean which class Bakuto belongs to. Inside, Dean Jean wrestles with the danger of crossing someone linked to the Yakuza, yet admits that if the accusation is true he can no longer stay uninvolved. Saki Machiyama insists they cannot ignore what happened to Yamori, while lecturer Rika anxiously warns that Yamori will return soon. Before the discussion can go further, the office door opens. The women turn to find the elegant newcomer entering, immediately shifting the room's attention. She cuts straight to the point by asking whether they are discussing Bakuto. Elsewhere, a furious subordinate slams his hand down and protests that Chief Onaga has gone too far. He confronts the chief over releasing the Scar Gang after years of pursuit, accusing him of throwing away justice. The younger officer openly calls the decision an abuse of power. Onaga dismisses the challenge and demands proof, treating the accusation itself as insubordination. The officer presses harder, convinced Onaga has been manipulating events from behind the scenes. Onaga leans into the confrontation and dares him to say exactly what he knows, forcing the officer into a dangerous standoff. As the argument peaks, someone pushes into the chief's office despite orders that no one is allowed inside. Saki rushes in demanding Yamori's release, while the elegant woman follows and apologizes only formally to Chief Onaga. Onaga reacts with irritation, outraged that outsiders were allowed into the building at all. He quickly underestimates the newcomer, assuming the Yamori family lacks the influence to threaten him. Trying to shut the matter down, Onaga claims their friend is being held on robbery and assault charges and therefore cannot be released. The young officer immediately rejects the accusation as absurd, making clear the charge is fabricated. Onaga coldly refuses to reveal anything further, hiding behind his position while keeping control of the narrative. Saki calls out the contradiction, arguing that if the real criminals were freed while Yamori was detained, the chief is plainly protecting the guilty. Onaga responds with open intimidation, ordering them to leave and threatening arrest for obstruction if they resist. Instead of backing down, the elegant woman calmly places her phone where everyone can see it. She invites Onaga to try carrying out his threat, signaling that she came prepared. Onaga escalates anyway, ordering his men to seize them and lock them up. Officers move into the room to carry out the command, surrounding the visitors and the protesting subordinate. Onaga broadens the crackdown, declaring the young officer complicit with Bakuto and accusing him of harboring a suspect. The officer protests that this is a blatant abuse of authority, but his outrage no longer slows the chief. He turns to the seated woman and demands whether Chief Oji would really tolerate such invented charges. Onaga laughs off the accusation and twists it further, framing any challenge to him as another offense. The woman finally reveals the real pressure point by noting that Chief Oji has been receiving favors from certain people. That remark unsettles Onaga at once, because it suggests she knows about the corruption behind his protection. She presses the implication further, asking whether Yamori's case can also be settled with money. Onaga answers with cynical honesty, saying the powerful enjoy special privileges and that ordinary people were doomed from the start. He goes even further, casually proposing a cover story in which they attacked first and all conveniently died in his office. The young officer realizes with chilling clarity that Onaga is serious about murdering them to protect himself. Saki is equally shaken as the threat becomes unmistakably real. The elegant woman alone remains composed, her silence signaling that she has been waiting for this confession. She asks Chief Oji whether he heard everything, revealing that the phone was recording and transmitting the entire exchange. A voice from the device confirms he heard it all, and the room freezes as Onaga realizes his words reach someone above him. Onaga falters as he recognizes the name Chief Oji and understands he may have just condemned himself. The woman introduces herself properly as Shizuru Suga and relays Oji's message that he is coming personally to investigate Onaga for corruption, abuse of power, and obstructing a major case. The threat drains out of Onaga as the scale of his mistake sinks in. Shizuru makes the blow final by identifying herself as the daughter of the Suga family of Nemi City. Onaga is horrified to learn she belongs to a far more powerful family than he imagined and has been working with his opponent all along. The scene shifts to a barred detention area, returning the story to where Yamori is being held. A radiant cross-shaped spiritual item comes into focus, suggesting a possible means of escape or intervention. Bakuto studies the spiritual essence and notes that there is only a little left, enough for just one use. Before he can act, he senses someone approaching his cell. A woman in high boots arrives outside the barred corridor, bringing a new turn to Bakuto's confinement. Bakuto arrives at a room and steps inside with sudden focus. He immediately recognizes someone important enough to put him on guard. A poised woman warmly greets him after a long separation, making clear they already know each other. Elsewhere, Lord Akimasa vents his fury by smashing things as he rages over his family's failures. He condemns his relatives as useless burdens, especially one who is half dead and another who has been imprisoned. His anger turns to fear as he realizes that if he cannot complete the mission for the Aima family, even his own safety is gone. A subordinate asks for orders, forcing him to turn panic into action. Akimasa decides to send his strongest man to handle the problem, preferring capture over killing while presenting it as a move to protect the family's honor. But beneath that restraint, he privately vows to eliminate the target himself if necessary. Back at home, Bakuto idly watches a beauty program while worrying that buying cultivation materials has left him broke. He sets out his ingredients and prepares to make use of them despite his tight finances. Using his refining vessel, he begins processing the materials into pills. When the refining is complete, he immediately tests the result. The effect exceeds his expectations, and he feels the spiritual essence rapidly transform his body. The breakthrough succeeds, pushing him into cultivation stage 2. He emerges renewed and stronger, startling even the dog with the change. Feeling the difference at once, he judges that ordinary bullets can no longer threaten him. He also realizes the spiritual essence he had stored is now exhausted, so further progress will require new sources of aura or essence. He considers a dangerous spiritual spring in Ryuja and thinks of asking Funaki for a powerful contact in Kyuchi, but his bank balance reminds him how poor he is. Even the basic entry costs for that route are beyond what he can currently pay. A cosmetic injection advertisement on television gives him another idea. When the ad boasts of huge demand for beauty treatments, he sees a market full of wealthy customers. He reaches for the refined product, already turning the plan over in his mind. Bakuto decides that if rich women are obsessed with youth, tomorrow's party will be the perfect place to sell to them. 5 hours earlier, he had been dining with the elegant woman and learning who she really was. Her status explains how she was able to reach the city chief directly. She reveals that she invited Bakuto because she needs his help with something important. He cautiously asks what kind of favor she means. She asks whether he knows the Sugao building, the headquarters of the city's biggest cosmetics brand. Then she reveals that the building belongs to her, and invites him to a celebration there for her mother's recovery. Bakuto is caught off guard when she directly asks him to attend. The next night, he arrives at the towering Sugao building for the rooftop party. As he enters the lavish gathering, he reminds himself that his low cultivation level limits him to refining ordinary beauty pills rather than true elixirs. Still, he knows these appearance-enhancing pills are exactly the kind of thing the women here crave. He opens the box to reveal a polished pill presented like a luxury jewel. Calculating the profits, he realizes that selling only a few could earn him more than 2 million yen. Seeing wealthy guests gathered around the recovered matriarch, he decides this is the moment to make his move. Before he can act, he overhears relatives pressuring Shizuru about her age and marriage, treating her life as a family obligation. They cruelly warn that if she remains unmarried she will become like Masami, dismissing her as a hopeless spinster. Koshiro pushes the humiliation further, claiming selfish women grow old into useless burdens on the household. Masami tries weakly to defend herself, but her timidity only invites more contempt. The recovered mother finally intervenes, reminding Koshiro that after the grandmother died, Masami was the one who raised both of them. Koshiro brushes that aside and insists he is only speaking for the family's good by arranging Shizuru's marriage now that her sister is awake. The strain makes the mother break into coughing, and Shizuru rushes to support her. Even then, Koshiro coldly argues that an unmarried older woman is defective and would only bring scandal to any respectable family. Masami finally gathers herself enough to say that Shizuru should decide such matters for herself. Koshiro repeats her words with open disbelief, as if the idea itself is offensive. He explodes, condemning personal choice as mere selfishness. Then he mocks the entire cosmetics empire, sneering that beauty products cannot restore youth. A calm voice cuts through the room by declaring that President Suga can, abruptly shifting everyone's attention. A young man presents a small box and rejects the insult that women in cosmetics are shallow, making it clear he will not tolerate that attitude. His cold glare immediately shifts the room's confidence, and his presence alone feels threatening. One of the men, rattled by that pressure, demands to know who he is. The gathering erupts in confusion as people call for guards, only to realize none are coming. Before anyone can force him out, the hostess in the wheelchair identifies him as Yamori Bakuto, the man who saved her mother's life, and claims him as her invited guest. Her mother warmly thanks Bakuto for selling a talisman to Shizuru, crediting it for her recovery. Bakuto lightly corrects her and hints that the real gratitude should go to him directly. A skeptical businessman dismisses the talisman as fraud and insists the woman recovered because of medicine, not superstition. Bakuto answers with mock politeness, introducing himself as a beauty researcher and also as President Suga's business partner, which suddenly raises the stakes. Shizuru is caught off guard by the revelation that he is tied to the president as a business partner. Others challenge his right to be there, but Bakuto turns their discussion about whether cosmetics can truly restore youth into an opportunity. He offers to give them a direct answer instead of an argument. Curiosity begins to overtake hostility as some guests decide they want to see what he can prove. Bakuto asks an ordinary female guest to lend him her hand, choosing a neutral volunteer from the crowd. He opens the box and invites her to swallow what is inside. The woman hesitates, overwhelmed by the gravity of what she is being asked to trust. Bakuto reveals a single pearl-like medicine and names it a beauty-preserving pill. The skeptic immediately denounces it as a lie and warns that Bakuto may be trying to poison her. The volunteer wavers and asks whether taking it is truly safe. Shizuru publicly places her trust in Bakuto and declares she would take it herself if necessary. Her mother supports that faith as well, believing in the man who once saved her life. Even so, much of the room still laughs off the idea, convinced no such youth-restoring medicine could exist. Bakuto leans in and targets the volunteer's insecurity, asking whether she wants to feel as she did when she was younger. His words stir up the cruelty she has endured about her aging appearance, bringing old humiliation back to the surface. Driven by that pain, she resolves to stop doubting and take the chance. She reaches for the pill, committing herself to the gamble. With Bakuto urging her on, she swallows it. The room freezes in disbelief that she actually went through with it. When nothing happens at first, disappointment spreads and people begin to assume the medicine was fake or dangerous. The skeptic seizes on the pause to mock Bakuto as a fraud who came only to show off worthless junk. Then the change finally begins, starting visibly in her face and hair. In full view of the crowd, the woman is transformed into a far younger and more radiant version of herself. Shown her reflection, she realizes with shock and joy that she truly looks like she did in her youth. The skeptic and his allies are left stunned as their certainty collapses. Disbelief instantly turns into greed, and guests rush Bakuto with offers to buy the pills despite his warning that he only brought a few. The bidding escalates into a frenzy as wealthy attendees compete to outpay one another for a single pill. Watching the scramble, the skeptic quickly stops dismissing the product and starts reassessing its value. He realizes the real fortune is not one pill but control over Bakuto's refining method and the market that could be built around it. When his wife warns that reckless bidding could bankrupt their company, he snaps at her and refuses to be checked. Inwardly, he decides to manipulate Shizuru into the Oneji family and use that connection to recover his losses and mass-produce the pills. A rival businessman cuts in with a concrete offer, proposing 4 million yen for exclusive distribution rights through his group. Another immediately crushes that bid by offering 20 million instead. The skeptic tries to shut the rivals down by insisting Bakuto is Shizuru's guest and should negotiate only with him. He smoothly pivots from hostility to false hospitality, inviting Bakuto to deal with his side instead. To secure the monopoly, he offers 30 million yen while claiming Bakuto can keep 70% of the profits. Bakuto repeats the terms aloud, exposing how absurdly one-sided they sound. The man hurriedly reframes the split as generous, boasting that the Hashikawa family's network would make the arrangement worthwhile. Shizuru cuts through the bluff by asking what network the Hashikawa family even has left. Her father lashes out, demanding that she stays silent and remember she is family. Shizuru coldly throws his hypocrisy back at him, reminding him he had no regard for family when he lost 160 million by mortgaging her grandmother's company. A shaken man reels as his scheme is exposed in front of everyone. The woman confronting him makes clear she has proof, including the Onaga family's withdrawal and the bank's demand letters. His sisters realize in horror that he even mortgaged their mother's company. Cornered, he can only stammer and wonder how deeply they investigated him. His sister accuses him of coming to squeeze more money from their mother with the same manipulation he used on their grandmother. She cuts off any hope of rescue by declaring that he will get nothing from them. Even as she denounces him as a swindler, she points out that he is too broke to cover the massive debt anyway. He desperately denies it, trying to keep at least one ally from turning on him. He throws himself at his older sister, begging her to speak for him as the family's last remaining son. Clinging to her dress, he pleads that she has always protected him and begs her not to abandon him now. She refuses to excuse him, saying that stealing their mother's inheritance is beyond forgiveness. With that, she walks away and leaves him to face the consequences alone. Collapsed on the floor, he finally understands that his family has truly cast him off. The woman in purple coldly tells him his choices are bankruptcy through foreclosure or selling the company to her for a token sum. She adds that if anyone else wants the company, she will gladly hand it over, making clear he has lost all leverage. The surrounding guests openly enjoy his downfall. Once the humiliation is over, the woman turns to Bakuto and points out that the party is full of business experts. She offers to introduce him around if he wants help. She explains the deal plainly. If he handles the contracted elimination work and secures a favorable arrangement, he can keep most of the profit, but warns him that everyone there is dangerous. Even so, she says she trusts his judgment in business. Later that night, after she drives him home, she remarks that he lives well. He downplays it as only a rental as she steps out by his car. He thanks her for the ride, expecting the evening to end there. Instead, she reminds him that they are friends now, catching him off guard. She warmly insists that they are indeed friends. Left alone, he watches her go and lingers outside in thought. Looking up at the moon, he admits to himself that this new life is not so bad. He heads inside, unaware that something is waiting for him. The moment the door opens, the quiet inside feels wrong. A narrow beam of light cuts into the dark room as he enters. That light falls across a spreading pool of blood. He discovers a small dog pinned to the floor with a knife, barely alive in the middle of the room. The sight jolts him from calm reflection into fury and alarm. Elsewhere, a subordinate reports by phone that Yamori has returned home with a woman who appears to be his girlfriend. The person giving orders is pleased and decides to take her, intending to make him suffer for Lord Ama's satisfaction. Back in the apartment, the bloody dog confirms the cruelty was deliberate. The attackers clearly meant the mutilated pet as a message and expect him to open their present. He rushes straight to the dog, ignoring everything else. He carefully reaches for the knife lodged in its body. Realizing the dog is still breathing, he begins healing it with a strange green energy. Before he can finish, an armed attacker drops in behind him. The man swings down with a blade, trying to kill him while he is distracted. Bakuto reacts instantly and slips the strike at the last possible moment. The attacker is thrown off balance when his ambush fails. He barely has time to register that his target moved. Bakuto counters with explosive force, striking him down while scooping up the injured dog. More armed men rush in, confused by how quickly their first attacker was beaten. Bakuto hands the dog off and orders it to hide while he deals with the rest. Facing the wounded thug and the reinforcements, he realizes this was an organized hit. As dark power flares around him, he prepares to take them on one by one. A gang leader orders his men to beat the intruder into submission but keep him alive. One thug charges first, trying to overwhelm the young man with a direct strike. The target stays calm and lets a surge of purple power gather around him as he reads the attack. He counters instantly, slamming the attacker down with enough force to break the assault in one move. The remaining men hesitate as they realize this opponent is far more dangerous than expected. Bathed in dark energy, he coldly marks the first takedown and makes it clear he is in control. Another fighter rushes in anyway, furious that the intruder is acting superior. The man closes the distance with a weapon swing, trying to catch him before he can react. Instead, the intruder drives a brutal counter into him and stops the attack mid-charge. The thug's confidence vanishes as the young man seizes him by the throat. He lifts the attacker off the ground with one hand, effortlessly demonstrating the gap between them. After dropping him, he counts a second man down while the rest are left shaken. Panicking, the gang switches tactics and prepares to cripple him with gunfire rather than face him head-on. He launches himself through them before they can organize, vowing to beat every last one until someone talks. His threat hardens into an interrogation. He will keep going until one of them gives him answers. Elsewhere, a captor reaches for restraints and surgical tools while laughing to himself. The blonde man reveals that his victim is not random at all but someone important to the city's elite. He taunts the bound woman by reminding her that she is admired throughout Nemi City. He confirms her identity as Suji's daughter, the daughter of Councilman Sujizu, making her political value explicit. A phone call interrupts just as he is preparing to continue tormenting her. Expecting good news, he asks whether the men sent after his target have already killed him. Instead, he learns his men are not waking up, and the report shocks him. The young man answers the call himself, mocking the kidnapper from the scene of the defeated thugs. Trying to regain leverage, the blonde captor boasts that he has Suji's daughter and can use her as bait. The caller's expression hardens as he understands exactly who has been taken. He demands that the woman be released, insisting she is innocent and should not be dragged into this. The kidnapper dismisses the plea and sneers at him for thinking he can negotiate. He gives a deadline of 40 minutes and threatens to publicly mutilate her if the young man does not come. Before hanging up, he dares him to find them if he can. The young man stares at the dead phone, already shifting from restraint to pursuit. His anger spikes so sharply that he crushes the phone and swears he is coming for Hashimoto immediately. Back at the hideout, the kidnapper turns from the call and decides to start filming a teaser video with the hostage. The woman struggles weakly as he grabs at her, trying to force her into position. His plan is interrupted when an alarm suddenly starts blaring through the building. Guards rush in to report that the warehouse fire suppression system has activated unexpectedly. Afraid the disturbance could draw police attention, the blonde man storms off to inspect it himself and orders the others to guard the room. The guards barely have time to challenge the disturbance before something unseen reaches them. One of them is hurled violently through the doorway, proving an intruder has already breached the room. The room falls quiet again, leaving the hostage alone as the attackers are neutralized off-screen. Recognizing who must have come, the woman weakly calls out to Bakuto. An hour earlier, a large biker had been reading a letter and complaining that Ryua's dramatic invitation was inconvenient, especially since Yamori would not answer his phone. Even so, he follows the address in the letter to 432, Egumi Street. When he arrives and sees the house, he realizes it must be Yamori's place. Before he can approach, he overhears that Yamori has already returned home. A subordinate confidently reports that 6 assassins have been sent to leave Yamori half-dead. The same men also reveal they have captured Yamori's woman and are bringing her in. Hearing that Hashimoto Akimasa ordered both the attack and the kidnapping, the biker immediately decides to intervene. He watches the vehicle carrying the captive pull away from the property. Rather than attack blindly, he chooses to track the kidnappers first and send Yamori their location. He tears off on his motorcycle and begins chasing the SUV into the night. Late at night, a call reaches a mansion where armed men are guarding a captive. Bakuto reports to Funaki that Hashimoto Akimasa's people have kidnapped his girlfriend and hidden her in this estate. When Funaki identifies the exact address, Bakuto realizes he already knows where she is being held. Funaki reveals he has been torturing one of the kidnappers for information and confirms the lead. Bakuto asks Funaki for help, insisting that Hashimoto must be pulled out of that place alive. Funaki agrees with cold certainty, vowing he will personally drag Hashimoto down. Inside the mansion, the kidnappers remain at ease, unaware that the rescue is already underway. A blonde man in a purple suit berates his guards for failing to disable the warehouse alarm, fearing police attention. Bakuto slips into the mansion as the blonde leader goes to inspect the situation himself, and leaves the area less guarded. The remaining guards complain bitterly about their work, and resent being unable to touch the woman they are holding. Their grumbling stops when they sense someone else in the room. Bakuto steps out wrapped in violent energy, confronting them before they can raise a proper alarm. He warns them to stay quiet, making clear he intends to end this fast. He drops the first guard with a single crushing blow. With the room secured, Bakuto reaches the captive woman at last. Yamori, weak but conscious, recognizes him, and Bakuto is relieved to find her still alive. He lifts her into his arms and decides to get her out immediately. Bakuto runs through the mansion, trying to escape before the others realize what has happened. He heads for the courtyard gate, counting on the guards being distracted by the alarm problem. Before he can break through, a shot tears into him and stops his escape. The impact throws both him and Yamori off balance and sends them crashing down. Bakuto shields her as they hit the floor, but the escape is over. The blonde leader appears with a gun, pleased that his trap worked exactly as intended. Bakuto realizes the men who were supposed to be away returned far too quickly, meaning he was anticipated. The blonde man mocks him for walking into the mansion so boldly. Bakuto recognizes him as Lord Akamasa and confirms he has come face to face with the mastermind. Akamasa welcomes the confrontation with open delight, treating Bakuto's arrival as entertainment. His excitement turns manic as he admits he has been waiting eagerly for this meeting. Even wounded, Bakuto squares up and tells him he can boast all he wants if he can actually win. Outside, more guards hold the perimeter around the mansion grounds. Those men notice an intruder approaching through the gate. Funaki arrives radiating murderous intent, no longer bothering to hide himself. A guard tries to stop him with a hand on his shoulder. Funaki answers with a brutal punch that caves the man in instantly. The others are stunned as one of their own is launched away before they can react. They rush in with batons, trying to overwhelm him by numbers. Funaki walks straight into them without slowing, letting them commit first. He tears through the group in a blur of savage strikes, dropping multiple guards almost at once. By the time the motion stops, the courtyard is littered with bodies and Funaki is already moving on. His glowing eyes show that he is fully locked onto the kill. Inside, Bakuto coughs blood as the gunshot begins to take its toll. Surrounded by fallen guards but still outnumbered, he realizes he may not be able to protect Yamori alone. As despair creeps in, he curses himself for accepting this fight and failing the woman he came to save. Akamasa exploits that weakness, promising that after killing Bakuto he will send his wife and child after him. He savors the threat further, making clear he intends to destroy them slowly and deliberately. Before he can continue, a violent blast erupts from the entrance and shakes the hall. Akamasa turns in alarm, suddenly unsure who has broken in. Smoke and debris flood the doorway as a new presence steps through the wreckage. Funaki emerges and answers the threat himself, declaring that he is the one who will send Akamasa to hell. With Akamasa's men strewn across the floor, Funaki finally reaches Bakuto, who can only note how long the backup took. The young man offers a healing talisman, trying to keep his wounded ally alive amid the chaos. His companion recognizes the trick as the same recovery method used before, confirming they are dealing with the same unusual power. A panicked blonde conspirator orders the gunmen to eliminate them before they can turn the situation around. The guards open fire down the hall, trying to stop the pair before they can close the distance. Instead of retreating, the young man launches himself straight through the gunfire with overwhelming speed. He cuts through the attackers in an instant, proving that ordinary firearms are useless against someone who has mastered Cloud Shadow Step. Watching his men fail, the blonde mastermind realizes too late that his target moves far beyond normal human limits. The young man tears through the remaining resistance and reaches the center of the enemy group almost immediately. As the guards break apart in fear, the blonde man abandons any thought of control and turns to flee. He bolts for a side exit, shouting for someone to get to safety while he tries to save himself. While running, he bitterly reflects that this betrayal was part of a larger arrangement tied to a martial family. He reaches a secured door and desperately demands to be let through before his pursuer catches him. The keypad rejects him, and the failed password leaves him trapped at the worst possible moment. His composure collapses as he realizes the escape route has failed. Before he can recover, one of his own men is smashed aside, showing the pursuer has already arrived. Cornered, the blonde man tries to hide behind his backer's authority, insisting resistance is pointless because someone powerful is protecting him. Under pressure, he finally reveals the name behind the plot. Lord Aima personally wants the young man dead. The young man steps fully into view, now focused less on the coward in front of him than on the name that has just surfaced. Coldly, he decides that if this man is connected to the truth, he will be made to suffer until he explains everything. Terrified, the blonde man spills more. Aima Joe, heir to the Aima family, is marrying into the Amatani family and wants the young man erased because of rumors involving Yuki. The young man pieces it together, realizing someone orchestrated an elaborate smear to ruin him, and that only the Aima family had the reach to do it. Sensing a chance to survive, the blonde man argues that keeping him alive could still be useful. He tries to raise his value by warning that the Aima family is full of elite fighters and that Aima Joe himself is a powerhouse, confirming the threat is tied to cultivators. He presses the bargain further, promising help if his life is spared. The young man repeats the word value with contempt, making clear he is no longer interested in negotiation. Still pretending confidence, the blonde man mistakes that pause for understanding and keeps talking. Instead, the young man answers with a brutal punch that wipes the smugness off his face. He follows through mercilessly, driving the man down and sending him crashing through into the room beyond. The body slams into a hidden chamber, startling the imprisoned women inside and exposing what the operation was really protecting. Bruised and half-dressed, the captives recoil in fear, revealing they have been abused and held there against their will. Seeing them, the young man's anger hardens into something colder and more final. He steps into the room and takes in the chained women and the full extent of the cruelty around him. He decides the blonde man's worth will be judged by the victims he helped torment. With a sweeping motion, he throws a blade toward the women instead of at them, giving them the means to act. The knife skids across the floor within reach, and the captives realize he is offering them revenge. The blade comes to rest as a deliberate invitation rather than a rescue performed for them. He leaves the punishment in their hands, telling them to do as they wish. Now broken and terrified, the blonde man tries one last time to buy his life with money and influence. The women reject the offer outright, making clear that nothing he has can outweigh what he did. One of them answers for all of them, sending him to hell will be enough. Elsewhere, the wounded woman on the sofa is stabilized by the healing talisman as green energy closes her injuries. The young man tells the others to leave because he has already called the police, choosing to hand the rescued woman over properly rather than disappear with her. He promises he will return after turning her over to the authorities, showing he is not done with this matter. His ally asks what comes next now that they finally have a name behind the attack. The answer is immediate. He will uncover everything he can about the Ima family. And once he knows enough, he intends to destroy them completely. Later at home, he lies exhausted on the floor beside his dog, the violence over but his mind still fixed on the enemy ahead. He reflects that Hashimoto has been dealt with, but Ima remains at large, and he needs to find him before he can make another move. His dog suddenly perks up, sensing someone at the door and interrupting his thoughts. Still catching his breath, he heads to answer it, wondering who would come to him at this hour. A messenger from President Suga arrives for Yamori Bakuto with an urgent delivery and orders him to prepare to leave immediately. The formal suit and sealed invitation make it clear that this summons is serious and tied to an important event. Bakuto is caught off guard by the sudden command and tries to understand why he is being called out so abruptly. Without wasting time, he moves to leave and follows up by phone for answers. He confirms that he has received the invitation and questions why he is being sent a suit as well. The woman on the line explains that the Hashikawa family is hosting a formal party and expects him to attend properly dressed. When Bakuto realizes the invitation is to the Hashikawas, he is startled that he is being included at all. She tells him this is a valuable chance, since the Hashikawas dominate the pharmaceutical world and his former fiancée will also be there. That last detail hits him hard, because it means he is about to face someone tied to the life of the body he now inhabits. He immediately suspects the former fiancée must be Amatani Yuki, the woman connected to Bakuto's past. The name brings to mind a striking image of Yuki, underscoring how significant this meeting could become. At the lavish gathering, Bakuto arrives in disguise as a polished guest while the city's elite mingle beneath the Hashikawa's influence. His companion quietly identifies the major figures present, including leaders of other powerful families who have come to deal with the Hashikawas. Bakuto quickly understands that this is not just a social event but a battlefield of status, alliances, and hidden interests. His companion explains that people born into ordinary families rarely grasp how much power these noble houses truly wield. She adds that even distant blood ties to the Amatani family are enough to make people desperate to form connections. The real focus of the night, she reveals, is the arrival of the Amatani heiress herself. The atmosphere shifts as the crowd senses an important entrance, and attention turns toward the doorway. Nana Hashikawa, head of the Hashikawa family, arrives alongside Amatani Yuki, immediately drawing the room's respect. The moment Bakuto sees Yuki, he senses a spiritual aura around her and realizes she possesses cultivation power. That discovery collides with the knowledge that she was once meant to marry the original owner of his body. The introductions around the room confirm Yuki's status as the Amatani heiress and Nana's authority as Hashikawa matriarch. Bakuto is shaken to realize that this world has its own cultivation system, and Yuki is displaying her aura openly without fear. Her calm confidence suggests both strength and high standing, making her even more dangerous and important than he expected. He decides that if anyone can explain this world's cultivation, Yuki is the person he needs to question later. Before he can act, his companion warmly greets Nana and presents herself and Bakuto to the hosts. The exchange turns cordial as Nana asks after her family, showing that these women already share social ties. His companion answers politely and uses the moment to reinforce goodwill between them. She then offers a birthday gift, a newly developed beauty-preserving pill from her company. Nana immediately recognizes the gift's reputation and understands that it is something rare and highly coveted. Nearby guests react with envy and disbelief, realizing they are seeing a product not yet available to the public. Even Yuki is drawn in by the gift, sensing that it is far more extraordinary than an ordinary cosmetic medicine. After examining it, Nana concludes that the pill's refinement rivals true spirit elixirs and that its maker must be exceptionally skilled. Its lack of any maker's seal only deepens the mystery, because such quality should belong to a famous refiner. Bakuto's companion seizes the opportunity and credits the pill to her business partner, finally introducing Yamori Bakuto by name. The name shocks both Nana and Yuki, who instantly recognize it from Bakuto's past connection to Yuki. Nana recovers first, remembering him from childhood and openly praising the value of a pill like this. Yuki, however, reacts coldly and makes it clear she believes the Yamori family failed to appreciate what they cast aside. She dismisses his talent as insignificant in true noble circles, arguing that lineage and cultivation power matter more than craftsmanship. Nana reinforces that point by saying that if skill alone mattered, Bakuto would already hold a far higher place within the Amatani house. Bakuto silently confirms from their words that the great houses indeed possess their own cultivation methods, though he judges them crude by higher standards. As Nana laments that talent means little without status, she becomes more curious about who could have taught Bakuto such refinement. She directly concludes that anyone capable of training him must be an extraordinary master. The word master unsettles Bakuto and stirs a dark memory he would rather keep buried. For an instant, his thoughts flash to a looming female figure from his past, hinting at a harsh influence behind his skills. He quickly masks the reaction, downplays his ability as a hobby, and prepares to steer the conversation towards something he actually wants to ask. Before he can continue, a white-haired man named Joe arrives and casually wishes Nana a happy birthday, interrupting the exchange. His entrance shifts the balance of attention, and the group instinctively turns to assess this new arrival and his standing. Whispers spread that Joe is the heir of the powerful Ima family, making his presence another major development in the room's political game. Nana acknowledges Joe's arrival at once, and Bakuto recognizes that an even more complicated encounter has just begun. Bakuto is jolted by a sudden realization and immediately suspects something is wrong. At the party, his escort casually explains away his presence as a harmless visit for Aunt Nana's birthday, trying to keep suspicion low. Ima Joe notices Bakuto and pointedly draws attention to him, signaling that he already knows exactly who has arrived. Bakuto is formally introduced to Suga Shizuru, the daughter of the Suga family, placing him among the gathering's important heirs. Ima studies Bakuto with interest, clearly treating the meeting as more than a simple social greeting. He presents himself as Ima Joe, heir of the Ima family, and offers a handshake while implying he has heard enough to judge Bakuto already. Their handshake becomes a test, with Ima probing Bakuto's identity under the guise of courtesy. Bakuto accepts the challenge and lets the exchange continue, aware that Ima is trying to expose him. Seeing through the act, Bakuto realizes Ima is deliberately baiting him to see how long he can maintain his disguise. Bakuto introduces himself as Yamori Bakuto while sensing Ima's cultivation, and he begins checking whether Ima's spiritual power is genuine. As their hands remain clasped, Bakuto concludes that Ima is suppressing his energy in an unnatural way, because no cultivator should be able to hide every trace of it so completely. Bakuto's perception reveals Ima's internal meridians and confirms that something about him is deeply abnormal. What shocks Bakuto most is that, despite that inner structure, Ima gives off no spiritual presence at all, leaving Bakuto unsure whether he is even a cultivator. Ima smoothly resumes the social performance and addresses Bakuto with polished courtesy, refusing to let the tension show. He welcomes Bakuto warmly, masking his scrutiny behind impeccable manners. Ima then turns to Yuki with familiar ease, as if testing whether Bakuto will react to that name or relationship. Bakuto stays outwardly calm, but the lack of any emotional or spiritual fluctuation from Ima only makes him more suspicious. He starts to wonder whether Ima is truly just an ordinary man or something far harder to read. Ima, meanwhile, notes with satisfaction that even hearing his name failed to provoke any killing intent from Bakuto. The banquet proceeds around them, but beneath the formal atmosphere both sides continue measuring each other. Dinner carries on with the guests relaxed and unaware of the hidden contest unfolding among the heirs. Once the meal ends, the host announces that everyone should move to the main hall for dancing. The gathering shifts into a ballroom setting, giving the families a more public stage for alliances, status, and courtship. Away from the crowd, Bakuto reconsiders the encounter and questions whether Ima deceived everyone by pretending to be a cultivator. He keeps turning over the mystery, unable to understand why Ima would hide his true nature or what purpose the deception serves. As Bakuto crosses the hall, Shizuru notices him from a distance and begins to focus on him. Another man approaches Shizuru first and asks her for a dance, hoping to use the occasion to get close to her. She refuses him immediately and without hesitation, making it clear she has no interest. His companion reminds him too late that Shizuru is the Suga family's daughter and far above someone like him socially. Her rejection quickly becomes gossip, reinforcing her reputation for turning men away regardless of their family standing. The men are still processing that even a major heir was rejected when something catches their attention. They realize Shizuru is looking elsewhere, and their surprise turns into confusion. Yuki also notices the shift and reacts as the room's attention begins moving toward Bakuto. Shizuru calls Bakuto by name, making her interest unmistakable. Bakuto responds by offering his hand, accepting the opening without hesitation. Shizuru asks Bakuto to dance, reversing expectations and publicly choosing him over the others. The nearby onlookers are stunned that the woman who rejected everyone else has singled Bakuto out. Later that night, Ima leaves the estate with only a bodyguard, his expression turning cold once he is away from the party. His attendants greet him with extreme deference, showing that his authority inspires more fear than simple respect. He heads straight for the waiting car, keeping his movements controlled and isolated. Before getting in, Ima warns his men that no one is to approach them, suggesting that whoever awaits him is dangerous or deeply private. The order is accepted instantly and without question. The limousine pulls away, carrying Ima into a meeting hidden from the rest of the household. The guards whisper uneasily about how often Ima disappears alone with a single bodyguard, as if everyone knows something is wrong but no one dares say it openly. One of them reveals the rumor that those assigned to guard Ima lose themselves completely, even forgetting their own families. Inside the dark car, it is said that his bodyguards are replaced every few days, and the last one vanished without a trace. The truth of that fear erupts when Ima is suddenly struck across the face by someone inside the car. Instead of retaliating, Ima meekly accepts the blow and is scolded for touching another woman in front of Yuki. He immediately apologizes, revealing a submissive side that contrasts sharply with the composed air seen at the party. As the confrontation continues, a glowing ring is slipped onto a finger, suggesting a binding act or ritual now taking effect. A man coldly warns that if his life was spared only because someone thought he still had use, that mercy should not be mistaken for safety. He makes it clear that anyone unable to endure that arrangement should stop expecting a peaceful outcome. Ima Joe, now openly identified as the true heir of the Ima family, drops all pretense and turns the threat into a declaration of hostility. Soon after, a luxury car arrives, signaling his entrance into a far more public stage. Joe steps out to the immediate attention of his subordinates, carrying himself like a man whose authority is already accepted. Without wasting time, he orders 2 men to accompany him into the hall, taking command of the evening from the moment he arrives. Watching from outside, someone notes that only one person appeared to leave the car, hinting that something hidden happened before Joe emerged. The truth is that inside the vehicle, Joe had been bound and gagged, revealing that his composed entrance was staged after a violent struggle. Even restrained, he remains defiant, his anger and humiliation sharpening into a promise of future retaliation. Inside the grand hall, the party continues with refined music and aristocratic calm, masking the tensions gathering beneath the surface. Joe approaches the gathering and politely interrupts, asking to speak with Yuki about something urgent. Yuki turns in surprise, caught off guard by his sudden appearance. As attention shifts, another pair on the dance floor notices the interruption from a distance. Guests begin whispering that Suga Shizuru is dancing with an unfamiliar man, and curiosity quickly turns into scrutiny. Shizuru, already emotionally drawn in, reacts with visible warmth and flustered delight. Her partner, Bakudo-kun Yamori, is less composed, realizing how exposed he has become under the attention of high society. At the piano, the music continues, giving their dance a polished legitimacy he had nearly failed to maintain. He commits to the performance and carries Shizuru smoothly across the floor, turning a risky moment into a convincing display. Shizuru openly praises his skill, her admiration becoming harder to hide. He answers with strained calm, relieved that he has managed not to embarrass himself. Shizuru quietly reminds him that this party is his chance to present his beauty-preserving pills to the Hashikawa family, urging him to act naturally and fit the atmosphere. He steadies himself by remembering his cover story as the original owner of a bathhouse now selling homemade remedies, and decides that blending in is enough for now. Nearby, one woman points out that Yamori can dance, but Yuki dismisses it as meaningless because skill cannot change his ordinary status. The older woman notices Yuki's unusual interest and teases her for paying such close attention. Joe joins them and remarks on Yamori's surprising talent, inserting himself into the conversation with calculated ease. When asked whether he really knows the man, Joe calmly claims this is their first meeting. The woman immediately undercuts that claim by observing that, even with Ima influence, Yamori still looks like a child from a ruined background. Joe tries to defuse the insult, warning that causing trouble on Hashikawa ground would be unwise. She ignores the caution and argues that Yamori's methods matter less than the profit his alchemy-like product could bring to Okrina. Elsewhere, Yamori drinks alone and privately insists that he only wants to help the pills reach their full potential. The woman's real stance emerges. She believes someone like him cannot be left unchecked any longer. Joe, hearing this, realizes she is moving against Yamori and seethes over being unable to crush both her and the man he already hates. Yamori, still apart from them, senses the hostility around him while Joe watches from across the room. Other guests begin connecting the name Yamori to old gossip, spreading recognition through the hall. Yuki hears the whispers that he may be her former fiancé and is shaken by the possibility that he came here despite knowing Joe would be present. The gossip grows crueler, recasting him as a fallen winner trying to climb back into noble society by attaching himself to the Ima family. They conclude that he is exploiting Yuki as his only path to redemption, reducing his presence to naked social ambition. Unable to bear it, Yuki decides to leave early, while the older woman urges her to stay and enjoy herself. Once Yuki walks away, the woman turns back to Joe and begins speaking frankly about the girl. At that moment, Yuki instead calls out to Yamori, choosing confrontation over retreat. She accuses him of scheming and demands that he abandon his petty ambitions immediately. Yuki warns that noble politics are far more complicated than he understands, and condemns any attempt to use her to restore the Yamori family's standing. Yamori is genuinely confused, Unable to understand what plan she thinks he is carrying out, Yuki presses on, belittling his pills as barely enough to make a living and implying that he has mistaken survival for worth. He calmly takes another sip, refusing to let her anger dictate the exchange. His indifference only frustrates her more, as if he has accepted the low opinion she has of him. He finally answers by denying her premise entirely and asking who she thinks he is supposed to be using. That response stops Yuki short, because it does not fit the motive she had assumed. Yamori then reveals what he has actually noticed. Spiritual energy is leaking from her body because she cannot control it. Yuki is stunned into open alarm, her power flaring as she demands to know how he could possibly know that secret. The man warns that forcing spiritual energy through her body can only push her closer to collapse, meaning Yuki is already at her limit. At the banquet, he approaches Yuki in the middle of the gathering, turning a private medical truth into a dangerous social moment. When she challenges how an ordinary person could know that, he calmly offers to prove his claim. Yuki rejects his warning as too absurd to trust. He makes clear that belief is irrelevant to him, because she is the one gambling with her life. By bluntly telling Yuki she has little time left, he finally shakes her confidence. He lowers his voice and presses close, asking her to do one thing for him if she wants his help. What he wants is simple but pointed. She must deliver something to Ima-jo. Their secretive exchange draws attention from the other powerful guests watching from a distance. One of them, Yamori, immediately recognizes Ima-jo's name and reacts with hostility. The scene shifts outside as the party disperses into the estate grounds. The man leaves the hall accompanied by Shizuru, while guests continue filtering out around them. Before they can go far, someone calls them back. A middle-aged woman stops him and reveals she wants to discuss the beauty-preserving pill. She leads him and Shizuru into the garden, turning the encounter into a more private negotiation. The woman introduces herself as Nana Hashikawa of the Hashikawa family, flatters his reputation, and invites him to treat her as family while hinting her interest goes beyond the pill. He immediately distances himself from his old clan, insisting he is no longer part of the Yamori family. Nana studies him and remarks that he reminds her of Yuki. She explains that after Yuki's parents died, the girl was tightly controlled by the Amanai family and treated more like an asset than a person. Although Yuki was acknowledged as a rare martial genius with the potential to become a legendary cultivator, that status only deepened the family's hold over her. Shizuru realizes Nana is talking about someone who had surpassed normal human limits. He silently confirms that reaching the third cultivation stage is a massive leap, far beyond ordinary methods in this world. Nana reveals that Yuki chose a dangerous shortcut, sacrificing lifespan in exchange for rapid power. When he asks why she is telling him all this, Nana admits she has run out of ways to save Yuki. Shizuru adds that, like Yuki's mother before her, no treatment has worked. Even so, he states plainly that he still intends to save Yuki. Nana seizes on that resolve and says that while she cannot make the pills herself, his alchemical skill exceeds anyone she knows, so she is placing her hopes on him. Shizuru is startled that the president of the Traditional Medicine Association trusts him more than trained doctors. Nana reinforces his value by revealing he can refine talismans as well as pills, making him even more exceptional than she first implied. That mention of a legendary cultivator makes him pause, connecting her story to knowledge from his own world. He reflects that compared with the Liu continent, this world's cultivation system is crude and underdeveloped. Nana keeps pressing the business angle too, saying the Hashikawa family still wants to partner with him over the beauty-preserving pill. She and Shizuru even imagine huge profits if he joins forces with them, though his mind is clearly elsewhere. Nana drops the sales pitch and pleads from the heart, asking that if he ever can, he use his skill to save Yuki because the girl is gentle and vulnerable beneath everything else. She begins to reveal that after Yuki's engagement fell apart, the devastation drove her towards self-destruction. That unfinished confession leaves him silent and troubled. Their conversation is interrupted when Ima-jo approaches and calls out to Nana. Joe says he came to say goodbye before leaving, stepping neatly into the middle of the group. Nana acknowledges him and notes that he has run into Yamori and Shizuru as well. Joe politely thanks Yamori for the evening, masking his earlier hostility behind formal courtesy. He offers a handshake and expresses interest in meeting again. Yamori accepts with a smile, outwardly matching the politeness. The moment their hands meet, something unusual passes between them. Yamori senses the anomaly at once and realizes Joe is not normal. He identifies the source. Spiritual energy is leaking from Joe's body. Soon after, Joe departs under guard and heads for his car. Before he gets in, one of Yuki's people delivers a gift meant specifically for him. Joe is intrigued when he hears the gift came from Yuki. Inside the box he finds an origami butterfly, but he cannot make sense of the message behind it. Unable to decipher it, Joe orders his subordinate to keep the box open and untouched until he gives permission. A white-haired man blames Hashimoto's failure on Yamori Bakuto getting personally involved and dismisses Yamori's growth as worthless. As he handles a ring crackling with power, he turns his attention to Hashikawa Nana and Yamori Bakuto as the next pieces in motion. He tells his unseen counterpart to watch carefully, signaling that a demonstration is about to begin. A dark-haired man with a sinister aura predicts that Yuki will end up destroying both of them herself. The white-haired man falls silent and produces a prepared item, shifting from talk to action. He reveals a glowing green butterfly-like talisman stored in a box, clearly meant to track someone down. The hunt leads to a high-rise tied to the Ima clan. From the rooftop, the dark-haired man surveys the city as if choosing his next move from above everyone else. He addresses Ima and reminds her of a promise that they would meet again soon. Holding the luminous talisman, he confirms that reunion is now being forced into reality. The talisman flies off and guides him straight to the target building. When it stops, he concludes that the person he wants is somewhere inside. Realizing the place belongs to the Ima clan, he understands he is stepping directly into enemy territory. He commits anyway and launches himself into the compound without hesitation. With the pursuit underway, he decides to begin the operation in earnest. Inside the estate, rare spiritual plants are being prepared as valuable offerings for an upcoming cultivation tournament. A woman overseeing them plans to trade the nearly harvest-ready treasures for tournament resources. She suddenly senses an intruder and turns alert at once. A bald monk-like cultivator appears and recognizes her as the former prodigy of the 100 Herb sect, noting that even her ruined body and broken cultivation have not dulled her instincts. He steps forward openly, backed by a menacing red aura, and praises her sharp senses. The woman is shaken to realize cultivators have come for her. She demands their identities and motives while quickly judging whether she has any chance to survive. A second monk closes off her escape and mocks the idea of the Hashisu matriarch trying to run. The larger one belittles her weakness and makes clear they only held back because she is already diminished. Seeing two enemies surrounding her, she notes their caution and understands this is a planned capture. Even so, she keeps her composure and presses them to state what they want. Their demand is simple: surrender quietly and do nothing reckless. The other monk reveals the real threat beneath that offer by suggesting they could just cripple her by force. Instead of yielding, she reminds them they are standing in her domain and reaches for the estate's own defenses. She activates a monstrous flower that releases toxic fumes, turning the garden into a trap and calling it her hospitality. The poison spreads so suddenly that one of the attackers is caught off guard. The larger monk realizes too late that he has inhaled poison. She explains that she can resist it by holding a detoxifying herb in her mouth, but the overgrown flower's poison is still strong enough to stall them. Even while protected, she knows she cannot defeat two cultivators and decides escape is her only option. Before she can flee, a far more terrifying presence manifests behind her like a predatory shadow. She freezes as she recognizes that this is something far worse than the two monks. The looming figure's shadow arts reveal the truth she feared. A man steps out from the darkness, and she identifies him as someone from the hidden Shadow sect. He confirms it, and calmly admits that his sect was responsible for wiping out the 100 Herb sect that day. The confession collides with her old uncertainty, forcing her to confront the possibility that her long-held suspicions were right. As she looks closer, recognition begins to break through her shock. The intruder reveals himself as Yamori Hiroto disguised as Ima, taunting the head of the Hashisu clan with the truth. Elsewhere, two guards casually decide to take a break for hot pot, unaware of the infiltration around them. They head off together, treating the night like routine work. When one wonders what Lord Zhou is eating inside, the other assumes the young master is enjoying some extravagant meal and dismisses it. At that moment, Yamori slips through the area with supernatural speed, moving past them unnoticed. Following the tracking talisman, he arrives at a room he believes belongs to Ima Zhou. The talisman confirms the location by hovering insistently at the door. He moves in, expecting to find his target inside. But when he checks, he realizes Ima Zhou is not there at all. A silver-haired man numbly eats instant noodles alone, already sunk in regret. As he drinks with a blue-haired companion in the dim apartment, he bitterly reflects that his life was forced onto him, and that neither his past nor present self ever had a real choice. When his companion reminds him that this false life came with wealth and comfort, he can barely defend his misery. His frustration tightens into self-loathing as he grips his fork and admits he cannot forgive how everything turned out. That resentment sharpens into one central grievance. He is suffering simply because he resembles someone else. He recalls being held captive in a car while a composed man in white controlled the situation. That man warned him that exposure would ruin everything. He drove the point deeper by declaring that the captive was only an imitation being kept alive, never the real person. The humiliation was made absolute when he was told to remember that acting as another man was his only value. Snapping back to the present, he rages at that insult and refuses to keep accepting it. Opening a blue box, he unexpectedly releases a glowing green spirit artifact. The object rises into the air, and he stares up in shock, realizing he has found something extraordinary. Before he can process it, a dark figure appears behind him, and he instinctively demands to know who has entered. The sudden presence sends him stumbling away in panic. He lands hard among the bottles and finally sees the intruder clearly. The newcomer approaches calmly, noting that the lack of spirit she had concealed him, and asks whether the terrified man recognizes him. The host identifies him as Yamori from the party and desperately insists he is Ima Zhou, trying to preserve the identity he has been living under. Yamori rejects that claim outright and brands him a fake. With cold red eyes, Yamori presses the real question: where is the genuine Ima? Elsewhere that night, Ima clan men prepare an ambush, confident they can crush the college-age target quickly. Their leader explains that the target always uses this route, so the trap is perfectly arranged. He orders his men to break the boy and deliver him alive to Lord Ima, just as scouts report the target arriving. Yamori walks straight into the corridor alone, unhurried and fully aware of the setup. As he advances, he reflects that spirit artifacts truly exist, which means the great clans must be backed by cultivators of at least the 4th stage. He reasons that such artifacts are made by imbuing special items with spiritual power. Their strength, he concludes, depends entirely on how much chi the refiner can pour into them. Since that level of control requires 4th stage cultivation, he realizes the chi-starved world should make such crafting impossible, unless the Ima clan has access to something rare. That missing piece becomes clear in his mind. The Ima clan must possess a spirit spring. He decides that after dealing with Ima, he will find the Ryujuda spirit spring and use it to break through. The ambushers step out and mock him for making them wait. Surrounded by armed men, Yamori faces the trap without changing expression. Their leader reveals that someone paid heavily for Yamori's death and invites him to struggle for their amusement. Yamori answers only with a faint, dangerous acknowledgement. That unreadable calm unsettles the leader, who suddenly senses something is wrong. Trying to crush that unease, he orders the attack. The elites charge, but Yamori remains still inside a rising purple aura that makes their confidence falter mid-rush. Even so, the leader reassures himself that his elite fighters cannot lose. That certainty breaks instantly when one attacker is struck down before the others can react. The leader can only stare in disbelief as the fight turns against him at once. Yamori moves through them with overwhelming speed, smashing another man aside with a single blow. He follows with a brutal sweeping strike that drives a second attacker into the ground. Watching his supposedly superior force collapse in moments, the leader realizes the gap is beyond reason. Standing over the defeated men, Yamori seizes one survivor and calmly demands to know who sent them. By the next day, attention shifts to Nana Hashus's residence, now under investigation. Lady Setsu arrives at the damaged rooftop while her security team secures the scene and reports in. An aide presents her with rooftop surveillance footage for review. The recording shows that around 1 a.m., 2 figures approached and attacked Lady Nana, but the feed cuts out before the abduction is fully captured. The investigators conclude there were 3 attackers in total, and they managed to get a clear image of one face. Seeing that face, Lady Setsu immediately recognizes him from the party. She identifies the suspect as Yamori, tying him directly to Nana's disappearance. A woman arrives at a mansion and immediately focuses on the place as her destination. She checks her phone with a cold, determined expression, clearly preparing to confront someone. The message confirms the address as 432 Kuga Street, matching the house in front of her. Realizing she has found the right location, she identifies the mansion as her target. She concludes that Yamori Hiroto is the one who targeted her family, and her anger hardens into resolve. At the gate, she questions an injured guard about whether he works for Hiroto. Convinced he is one of Yamori's men, she demands to be taken to Hiroto, blaming these people for taking her aunt. The wounded man gives in and leads her inside, pointing out that Hiroto is there. As she passes through the grounds, she notes that the estate is full of thugs but judges them to be ordinary mortals, not real threats. Inside, Hiroto is lounging comfortably while one of his men serves him water, showing how secure and pampered he feels. When she calls him out, Hiroto recognizes her as a Matani and is caught off guard by her sudden appearance. She storms up to him and demands that he release her auntie Riko immediately, offering to let the matter end if he complies. Hiroto rises in confusion, acting as though he has no idea what she is talking about. She refuses to let him feign ignorance, and directly accuses him of kidnapping her aunt. The accusation lands, and Hiroto realizes she believes he abducted Aunt Nana. She insists she has proof and thrusts her phone forward, revealing footage that appears to place him at the scene. The video shows a man resembling Hiroto standing amid the aftermath of a destructive incident. The timestamp places that footage at 1:23 a.m. on Tuesday, making it look like a solid alibi-breaking record. Seeing it, Hiroto realizes someone disguised as him used a spirit artifact to frame him and turn Ima against Matani. Still furious, she channels her power and threatens to crush him herself unless he brings her aunt back. Hiroto calmly states that he was nowhere near Aunt Nana at 1:30 a.m. and points her toward Ima's men if she wants confirmation. That claim shakes her certainty, and she begins to consider that Lord Ima's faction may have deceived her. One of Ima's own men reluctantly confirms they were with Lord Ima all night and admits they had planned to rough Hiroto up and drag him to Ima. Even with that testimony, she presses Hiroto to explain the incriminating footage. Hiroto answers by producing another video, saying he recorded it as insurance because he expected trouble. The recording features Yoshiro Yosa, who identifies himself as Ima Joe's body double and explains his role in the scheme. Yoshiro reveals that Ima uses a ring-based spirit artifact to disguise himself as a guard, only dropping the disguise when needed. Hearing that, she is stunned to learn Ima can alter his appearance at will. Hiroto confirms that the disguise must come from a spirit artifact. She recognizes how rare such artifacts are, realizing Ima possesses something usually reserved for the great clans. Hiroto lays out the full plot. Ima framed him, kidnapped Aunt Nana, and tried to provoke her into killing him so Ima could remove a rival cleanly. She decides to confront Ima directly, but Hiroto warns that charging in now will only get her aunt killed. She wheels on him in disbelief, furious that he seems willing to wait, while her aunt remains in danger. Hiroto stays composed and explains that they can turn Aima's own scheme back on him. With grim confidence, he vows to make Aima dig his own grave. Elsewhere, a man is seized by the throat and overwhelmed by a terrifying purple force, screaming as the power engulfs him. The victim collapses helplessly, showing the brutal ease with which the attacker dominates him. The attacker, a white-suited cultivator wreathed in purple energy, dismisses ordinary humans as pathetic. A monk-like subordinate reports in, and the cultivator asks whether the cleanup is finished while boasting that normal people cannot endure the side effects of Lord Soma's training. He reflects that if he had harvested the remaining life force from the 100 kidnapped women, he could already have advanced to master cultivator. But he is unconcerned because his disciple has arranged everything and can seize that woman at any time. He looks ahead to reaching the first stage of cultivation, joining the Soma clan's council of elders, and rewarding his disciple by recommending him to the Zen sect. The monk eagerly accepts the promise, treating the recommendation as a tremendous honor. Another subordinate then reports that Kosaka captured Hiroto the previous night and asks what should be done with him. Pleased, the cultivator orders them to take Hiroto to Kogen Temple and keep him alive. Privately, he reveals his real intent. He wants Hiroto preserved so he can mutilate him before letting Yuki finish him off. At Kogen Temple, suited guards stand watch while a captive is held on the grounds under heavy security. One guard snaps at the others to stop chatting and focus on monitoring whatever is happening inside the building. Once the boss is out of earshot, the men grumble that he is acting arrogant just because he has a little power. Their resentment continues, exposing cracks in discipline among the guards. The complaints stop abruptly when the superior is called back, forcing everyone to straighten up at once. Lord Soma arrives at the temple-like compound to a formal welcome, immediately taking command of the situation. His attendants assume he has come to inspect the site, but reassure him that the place is already under tight surveillance. Instead, Soma orders Harigaya to dismiss everyone and prepare to move the prisoner, making clear he intends to act personally. When questioned, he coldly reminds them that he does not need permission to do as he pleases. The use of his personal name catches his subordinate off guard, hinting that Soma is in an unusually dangerous mood. A van arrives at the compound, bringing in the captive Soma has been waiting for. Emo is led out in restraints and taken into the garden under guard. The masked escort keeps him moving and warns him not to provoke trouble. Soma waits with composed confidence, as if he has already arranged the outcome. He greets Emo almost warmly, turning the confrontation into something personal rather than procedural. Emo cuts through the pretense and demands to know what Soma is really planning. Soma admits he has long anticipated this moment, and clearly intends to settle an old score. He mocks Emo for the boldness he showed earlier, treating that defiance as an insult that must now be punished. His restraint drops completely, revealing open hatred and wounded pride. Soma explains that he would have eliminated Emo long ago if not for Hashimoto's protection, exposing how much he resented being forced to hold back. Emo immediately focuses on the real issue and asks why Hashimoto's faction would go this far just to target him. Soma repeats the question with contempt, savoring the fact that Emo still does not understand the depth of the scheme. He rages that Emo ruined his chance to rise by taking the life force he had planned to seize for himself. Emo realizes Soma's motive is absurdly petty and that the kidnapping is rooted in greed and resentment. Soma reveals he has no intention of killing Emo quickly, because he wants to exploit him first. He unleashes a monstrous purple spirit, and boasts that its power comes from a realm ordinary people cannot comprehend. Emo identifies it as a summoning technique, recognizing that Soma has stepped into cultivation methods. Soma reveals his true objective, Nana Hashisa's rare life energy, which he plans to devour through her shadow in order to become a real cultivator. Drunk on ambition, he declares that this path will elevate him to something godlike. Emo points out the contradiction and asks why Soma would not simply kill him if that were enough. Soma answers that Yuki is likely trying to kill Emo already, because he deliberately left evidence of Nana's kidnapping for her to find. He reveals the final layer of the trap by changing his appearance, showing that he has prepared to shift the blame. With that disguise, he intends to make the world believe Emo kidnapped and murdered Nana. Emo finally sees the whole design and recognizes that Soma has been building this frame up from the start. Soma falters for a moment, unsettled that Emo is not panicking the way he expected. Emo calmly asks the masked escort whether she heard everything, while breaking free of his restraints. The escort responds to her earpiece that she heard it all clearly. She unmasks herself as Ning Qingxue, confirming that Soma has just exposed his crimes in front of a witness. Soma desperately tries to explain away Nana's kidnapping as a harmless arrangement, but the lie collapses as soon as he speaks it. Qingxue rejects his excuse outright and steps forward with power flaring, making it clear she will not let him harm the Song family. Her resolve hardens into open opposition as she claims responsibility for stopping him herself. Soma realizes too late that Emo maneuvered him into confessing and lashes out at being outplayed. Emo coolly reminds him that Soma exposed himself by his own arrogance. He lets the point sink in, treating Soma's collapse as proof of how easily he was baited. Emo finishes with a blunt judgment that strips away all of Soma's self-importance. Humiliated and enraged, Soma explodes and screams Emo's name. Qingxue tells Yemo to leave because she has already alerted the Zhou family and intends to handle the rest. She warns him that this fight has entered the realm of cultivators and should no longer involve an ordinary person. Soma, now driven by jealousy as much as panic, accuses them of intimacy and takes their alliance as another personal insult. He orders the monks at his side to kill Yemo immediately. Qingxue moves to shield Yemo and warns the attackers not to advance. The monks answer by preparing their own techniques, showing they are ready to force the issue. Soma raises his phone and threatens that Zhou Na is still in his hands, demanding Qingxue choose between protecting Yemo and saving her aunt. The threat shakes Qingxue, because Soma has found a hostage that can still control her actions. Yemo stays calm, checks his phone, and signals that Soma's leverage may already be gone. Qingxue is startled when the situation suddenly changes. A message reaches her side showing that Zhou Na has already been rescued and taken away safely. The white-suited mastermind is shaken, realizing his carefully arranged manpower somehow failed without a trace. Proof from the temple confirms his men have vanished, leaving him furious and confused. A short while earlier, at Gaian Temple, his subordinates reported that Song's people were gone and waited for orders. He chose patience, pretending to stay calm while deciding his next move. To avoid suspicion, he claimed he was stepping away to make a call and told the others to remain behind. Once alone, he discovered his own men had not followed his instructions at all. Their last reports said they had already brought the young master down the mountain and were only waiting for the Zhou family. He immediately understood this as betrayal and erupted in rage. Nearby, Qingxue begins to suspect Yemo is far stronger than she had assumed, especially after seeing how easily he saved Zhou Na. Yemo remains composed, giving nothing away. The white-suited man drops the pretense and orders his hidden attackers to kill Yemo and Qingxue at once. Two bold monks rush in from both sides, forcing Yemo and Qingxue into a sudden ambush. At the same time, the mastermind unleashes purple energy to tighten the trap around them. Qingxue is bound by that power and realizes she cannot move. The enemy cruelly intends to make her watch Yemo die, and she desperately urges Yemo to flee instead of saving her. The monks close in while she remains pinned in place and exposed. Confident in his control, the mastermind mocks her, insisting she is powerless to protect anyone. Qingxue blames herself for misjudging the danger and regrets coming with Yemo. Yemo finally acts, releasing a force that halts the attackers around him. Before the monks can understand what happened, his movement cuts through their assault. Their confidence breaks as they realize they have been outmatched. Yemo bursts past them with Cloud Shadow Step and smashes through their formation in an instant. Qingxue is left stunned by the sheer level of his strength. The monks are hurled away, unable to withstand even a single exchange. One of them collapses and his body starts dissolving, revealing it was only a substitute body. The false body continues melting apart under the impact. Its remains twist into a swirling mass as the disguise fully breaks down. The surviving monk angrily admits the body substitute had been difficult to obtain and is shocked that Yemo destroyed it so easily. He barely has time to react before Yemo appears behind him. Yemo strikes again with overwhelming speed, giving the monk no chance to defend himself. Even the white-suited mastermind is forced to admit that Yemo's speed is far beyond any ordinary person. Yemo lets his blue spiritual power rise openly, no longer hiding what he is. The enemy finally understands the truth. Yemo is a cultivator. Qingxue is shocked as well, because this revelation overturns everything she thought she knew about him. Yemo steps forward calmly, his aura intensifying as he turns his full attention to the mastermind. He prepares to settle the score personally. Yemo lists the offenses one by one, making clear that prison, hired attackers, and every scheme against him have all been remembered. He adds the kidnapping of his friend and the killing of his dog, showing that this confrontation is also personal revenge. The memory of the woman harmed by these events deepens the weight of his anger. Facing the mastermind directly, Yemo dismisses him as a pest who has been provoking him from the beginning. He declares that the time for tolerance is over and that he intends to silence him for good. The battlefield settles into a standoff. Yemo advances, Qingxue remains restrained, and the fallen monk lies nearby. Even after learning Yemo is a cultivator, the white-suited man refuses to back down. He reveals his own trump card by summoning a massive purple spirit-like force, boasting that his true strength is even higher than expected. That power surges outward in a direct attack toward Yemo and Qingxue. The fallen monk is engulfed by the purple energy and starts screaming inside it. His body sinks into the purple mass as though it is being consumed or absorbed. Watching this, Yemo realizes the enemy's technique even includes a teleportation-like function and begins judging it as a cultivation method developed in this world. The white-haired cultivator explains that the two defeated men are worthless on their own, so he will absorb them to complete his shadow art. He devours both cultivation bases in a single breath and revels in the sudden surge of power. One of the drained victims is left as a hollow shell, showing how completely his strength has been stolen. With his body overflowing in purple energy, the man boasts that he has already reached the legendary first level of cultivation. Yemo realizes in shock that the enemy truly advanced by consuming two other cultivators. The stolen power condenses into a sinister shadow eye, signaling that the technique has fully awakened. Backed by that monstrous presence, the white-haired man prepares to turn his new strength on Yemo. The blue-haired woman blames herself for underestimating Song Shaoan and letting Yemo get dragged into this. As guilt overwhelms her, she decides the danger facing Yemo is her responsibility. She steps forward to shield him, insisting this is a matter between her and Song Shaoan and demanding that Yemo be spared. Song Shaoan answers with contempt, disgusted that she is still trying to protect someone he sees as beneath notice. Calling Yemo by name, he openly marks him as the real target of his hatred. He unleashes a massive blast of shadow power meant to erase Yemo outright. The woman panics and warns Yemo to dodge immediately. The attack crashes down with overwhelming force, seemingly too fast to avoid. Yemo moves in a blur, slipping past the strike before it can hit him. Blue energy coils around his step as he plants himself with complete control. He and the woman emerge untouched, Yemo having carried them clear of the blast. Song Shaoan is stunned that Yemo escaped an attack that should have been unavoidable. Yemo calmly measures the enemy's so-called first-level cultivation instead of fearing it. Even while the battlefield is still tearing apart around them, he treats the threat as something to evaluate, not dread. The woman senses Yemo's aura and is shaken to discover that his power vastly exceeds Song Shaoan's. Before anyone can process it, Yemo vanishes into motion. He closes the distance instantly, and drives a crushing blow into Song Shaoan. Song Shaoan coughs blood in disbelief, unable to understand how he was overwhelmed so easily. Desperate, he throws his giant shadow beast back into the fight to stop Yemo. Fueled by rage and humiliation, he orders the shadow art to kill Yemo at any cost. The creature answers with another overwhelming wave of purple destruction. Yemo meets it head-on, carving through the attack with blue force instead of retreating. Even while reeling, Song Shaoan clings to his arrogance, insisting that a discarded nobody like Yemo cannot possibly have reached the second level before his own technique fully matures. Yemo lets the shadow power close around him, stepping into its core rather than avoiding it. Then he tears the attack apart from within, blasting the shadow art open with raw strength. He declares that against absolute power, Song Shaoan's treasured shadow art means nothing. Driving forward through the shattered energy, he proves it by smashing straight through the technique. In the same motion, Yemo reaches the hidden core and announces that he has it. He seizes the shadow eye itself in his hand. Holding the squirming core aloft, Yemo explains that shadow art is only a parasitic technique that feeds on fear and human spiritual energy. He crushes the core without hesitation, destroying the foundation of Song Shaoan's power. The backlash tears through Song Shaoan, leaving him vomiting blood as his aura collapses. Broken on the ground, he still tries to deny reality by calling Yemo nothing more than abandoned trash. When insults fail, he reveals his last shield. He belongs to a hidden sect and claims killing him would bring certain death in return. Yemo pauses only long enough to register the mention of the world's cultivation sects. Mistaking that for hesitation, Song Shaoan laughs and boasts that Yemo is insignificant before his backing. Yemo answers by walking toward him without slowing, his blue aura making clear that the threat means nothing. Song Shaoan's confidence breaks, and he starts begging Yemo to think about the consequences of killing him. Yemo keeps advancing, each step making the execution feel inevitable. Terrified, Song Shaoan scrambles backward and tries to order Yemo to stop, but he no longer has any authority left. In full panic, he warns that Yemo will die too and offers to forget everything if he is spared. His pride finally collapses completely, and he admits he was wrong while pleading for his life. Yemo rejects the plea, condemns Song Shaoan to hell, and raises his fist to finish him. A dark-haired young man crashes down with overwhelming force, ending the fight in a single decisive blow. The blue-haired woman braces herself, stunned into silence by the sudden reversal. The victor stands over the wreckage wrapped in eerie power, making it clear the outcome is no longer in doubt. As the dust settles, the defeated man lies broken in the ground while the blue-haired woman keeps her distance from the one who saved her. He calmly declares the conflict finished and reveals that her troublesome aunt has already been taken away. Realizing he resolved the crisis for her, she thanks him and admits she had badly underestimated him. Privately, she accepts that her own ignorance kept her from seeing who he really was. He downplays the rescue as partly self-interest, explaining that helping her also let him obtain what he came for. He examines a spirit artifact taken from Song Shaoan and judges it crude but still valuable enough to prove that modern cultivation can produce real results. She cannot understand why someone this strong was ever cast out by the Yi family, since his power should have made him their heir. He cuts off that line of thought and makes it clear he no longer has any attachment to the family. Her focus shifts immediately to cultivation itself, and she resolves to reach the third stage no matter what it costs. That determination is driven by her fear of being discarded by her family if she fails to become a true cultivator. He studies her in silence, weighing what to do next. At last he offers a remedy, saying their deal includes help for the condition damaging her body. He presents a spirit-dispersing pill, explaining that it will purge the violent spirit chi inside her. She recoils because losing that chi would also erase the cultivation she fought to gain. He tells her the method she inherited is fundamentally flawed and that continuing down this path will only kill her sooner. Even knowing that, she hesitates because giving it up would leave her an ordinary person for the rest of her life. He answers her fear with a new proposal, treating this choice as the beginning of another bargain. He asks whether she wants to learn the true method of immortal cultivation, offering her a path beyond the one that is destroying her. The scene shifts to his home after that life-changing offer is accepted. When the door opens, he finds the blue-haired woman already arriving to follow through on their agreement. She appears with luggage in hand, clearly having committed herself to staying with him despite her embarrassment. Flustered but determined, she reminds him that by their agreement she has come to live at his house for the time being. He notices her reddened face and assumes her condition may be acting up again. Too embarrassed to explain herself, she hurries him inside before the awkwardness gets worse. As they enter the yard, he casually asks if she is only back briefly, while she notes that the return date came sooner than expected. Behind the small talk, he is already planning his next move. With Song Shaoan dealt with, he intends to seek Lu Shi for clues about the spirit spring. He begins settling her in by showing her the courtyard and pointing out silver heart grass, whose gentle spirit chi suits her damaged body. A cheerful dog runs over, adding an unexpectedly warm note to the arrangement. While greeting the dog, she confirms that before she leaves, she will uphold her side of the deal and teach him the true immortal cultivation method. He hands her immediate responsibilities as well, putting her in charge of the silver heart grass and the dog. Seeing him relaxed around the animal, she is surprised by a softness in him that rarely shows. The moment turns domestic as she asks the dog's name and discovers he never bothered to give it one. She insists that a name matters, arguing that being named is what lets a being be acknowledged by the world. He chooses the name Shirlu, and the choice quietly stirs an old memory in him. The dog happily accepts the name, making the moment feel settled on the surface. But his approval carries a trace of melancholy, because the name has personal meaning from his past. He remembers someone once calling Little Shir to come eat, tying the dog's new name to a former life. The memory deepens with excited voices praising Shirlu, suggesting a bond with an admired senior brother. Another figure from that past calls the same name, and the recollection grows more emotionally charged. The memory breaks apart in a wash of light before it can fully return. He pulls himself back to the present and lets the past recede. Later, after bathing, she reappears in his oversized shirt and awkwardly asks where she should sleep. He matter-of-factly assigns her the guest room, showing he had already prepared for her stay. Once practical matters are settled, she asks how he intends to handle the Song family after what happened. He reveals that everything is already arranged and that, in the Song family's eyes, Song Shaoan will simply cease to exist. The story moves to the Song family's back mountain, where key members gather as the consequences of his plan begin to unfold. Someone calls for Shaoan, signaling that the family is only now confronting his disappearance. As the Song family waits outside a secluded chamber, the family head demands confirmation that the long-hidden great-grandfather is truly emerging today. A nervous subordinate insists the report is reliable, though his unease shows he knows the moment carries enormous weight. The sealed chamber suddenly opens, cutting off any remaining doubt. The family turns toward the doorway as the long-awaited elder finally steps out. His first step alone makes clear that the one emerging is no ordinary recluse but a terrifyingly powerful old monster. He reflects that 5 years of seclusion meant almost nothing to someone at his level, confirming how far he has advanced. Riding a fierce spiritual beast, Song Zijuan returns as a newly ascended legendary immortal and dismisses the trouble that forced him out early as a minor interruption. The family head immediately flatters him and formally celebrates his breakthrough, hoping to secure favor under the elder's new status. Zijuan laughs off the ceremony and mocks the younger generation for still being too comfortable and soft. He calls Song Shaoan forward, making the anxious younger man the focus of his attention. Shaoan greets him respectfully and brings up the earlier conflict with the Yi family, seeking the elder's judgment. Before he can explain further, Shaoan tries to downplay the issue by claiming the opponent is just an ordinary person and not worth troubling the great-grandfather over. That attempt only alarms him, because he realizes Zijuan will see retreat as disgrace. Zijuan explodes at the very idea of surrender, treating it as unforgivable weakness from a member of the Song family. He warns Shaoan that his status as a postman will not protect him and that failure will bring punishment from the great-grandfather himself. He summons 2 enforcers from the hidden and middle seats, signaling that the matter is now an execution order rather than a family dispute. Shaoan freezes as Zijuan assigns those 2 men to travel to Ninghai, already sensing the worst outcome. Zijuan gives the command plainly, "Bring back the boy's head." Elsewhere, the blue-haired woman complains about being dragged awake before dawn just to cultivate, treating the whole thing like an inconvenience. The young man explains that this hour has the richest spiritual qi and that cultivating now will produce far better results with less effort. To prepare her body, he hands her a special drink and tells her to finish it before they begin. She obeys without much thought and drinks it down. When she asks what it is, she is already feeling that this is not an ordinary tonic. He explains that her body is too fragile for the full spirit-gathering pill, so he made a gentler medicinal version suited to her condition. Inwardly, he notes that in his old world such a formula was only used for newborns, which reminds him how weak people in this world are. With the medicine taken, he tells her to change quickly because the real training is about to start. He reveals that next he will teach her the true method of immortal cultivation, making clear that everything before this was only preparation. Once outside, she is embarrassed to realize he intends to train in a public park rather than somewhere private. He calmly explains that being close to nature means denser spiritual chi, so the park is the best place for her first attempt. Nearby elders misunderstand the scene completely and assume the pair's awkward meditation session is some display of romantic devotion. Their gossip only deepens her embarrassment, leaving her flustered before she has even begun. He cuts through her distraction and instructs her to calm down and sense the spiritual chi around her, forcing her to focus on the lesson instead of the onlookers. He explains that her previous cultivation method trapped every kind of energy inside her body, not just spiritual chi, which is why her condition became unstable. Because ordinary people cannot perceive those violent energies, the body normally protects itself by blocking them, but she broke that safeguard. He contrasts her flawed approach with his own, which extracts and refines only a tiny usable portion of spiritual chi instead of recklessly absorbing everything. He emphasizes that his method relies on only a small fraction of spiritual chi, making it safer and far more controlled. Then he guides her toward the real key, using spiritual power from the forehead's spirit platform to discover chi first and only then direct it into the body. Following his instruction, she tries to discover and guide that power inward, but when she reaches for the sensation he describes, all she finds is emptiness. A dark, oppressive presence seems to echo that emptiness, hinting that something deeper is interfering with her perception. She grows frustrated and panicked as she realizes she still cannot sense any spiritual chi at all. Even the bystanders notice her distress and begin to worry that something is going wrong. She silently confirms the truth to herself. No matter how hard she tries, she really cannot feel it. Seeing her fail, he directly channels his own spiritual power into her spirit platform through her forehead. The sudden contact shocks her as his energy floods her senses and forcibly opens what she could not access alone. He tells her to shut out everything else and try again now that he has given her a path to follow. Leaning in close, he explains that she should borrow his spiritual power and use it as a guide to search for the surrounding chi. Though flustered by the intimacy, she accepts his instruction and steadies herself to continue. The watching elders misread the forehead touch as affectionate flirting and become delighted by what they think is a sweet young romance. Ignoring the misunderstanding around her, she closes her eyes again and focuses inward, now trying to sense chi through the power he lent her. As spiritual sight opens, she finally perceives spiritual chi directly, and is struck by how beautiful it is. He explains that this glowing current is chi's true form in this world, though to him it still feels too thin to be useful yet. The lesson ends with him closing her spiritual vision and stopping for the day. He instructs her to keep sensing spiritual chi so she can gather enough of it to step into the first realm of immortal cultivation. With the training session over, they agree to head back. Later, she settles into a bath, still processing the strange new path she has begun. Immersed in the hot water, she tries to calm herself and endure the discomfort. His earlier touch and guidance linger in her mind, unsettling her focus. Embarrassment and distraction leave her half submerged, unable to compose herself. She finally bursts out in frustration at how badly her thoughts are interfering with her cultivation. Remembering that the first step of cultivation demands persistence, she forces herself to refocus and keep fighting through it. A week later, he arrives at the pickup point arranged by the snakehead and wonders whether this is really the place. He reflects that Ning Qingshui has already sensed spiritual chi and is close to the first stage, which reassures him that home should remain safe while he is away. Even so, he stays alert, knowing he is stepping into uncertain territory. When a bus approaches, he realizes this must be the transport the snakehead prepared. He boards without hesitation and commits to the trip. Someone inside quietly doubts that a student-looking youth would dare go somewhere this dangerous. The driver notes that few passengers came today and sends him off with a suspiciously smooth welcome. He answers with silence, choosing caution over conversation. Inside, he finds a bus full of hardened, watchful travelers rather than ordinary passengers. As he takes his seat, he thinks of Flowing Snake and realizes that journey is finally beginning. The bus pulls away into the night, carrying everyone toward the same hidden destination. By the time air travel is involved, the group reaches Ninghai City and is told to disembark. The travelers emerge tired and irritable, revealing that this route is familiar to some of them. Elsewhere, a message arrives with his address and an order to deal with him when the time is right. The man receiving it is delighted by the chance to leave seclusion after decades and personally enjoy hunting the target. At the company, Sue sits in her office while her assistant reports in. Sue keeps turning over the bracelet on her wrist, clearly preoccupied by what it means to her. His earlier warning returns to mind. He will be away from Ninghai for some time, so he left the bracelet to protect her. Remembering that moment leaves her visibly flustered and attached to the gift. She recalls his explanation that each jade bead contains a talisman she can activate exactly as he taught her if danger comes. Her assistant snaps her out of the reverie, catching her embarrassed and off guard. The assistant points out that Sue has ignored her while staring at the bracelet and smiling to herself. Sue can only fixate on the bracelet again, unable to hide its importance. The assistant teasingly identifies it as a gift from young Master Yi and notes how much Sue treasures it. Trying to recover her authority, Sue abruptly assigns the assistant a business trip to the country she dislikes most. Soon after, a desperate plea for President Sue's help rings out from a high-rise, signaling trouble around her. Meanwhile, his own journey continues as the bus leaves the city and pushes deep into a remote forest road. After 6 exhausting hours on the road, he remains patient but increasingly aware that everyone aboard has hidden motives. The other passengers also wait in tense silence, revealing this is no ordinary ride. He concludes that every person on the bus has their own reason for going to Lushi. The grim confidence on the others' faces confirms that many of them are dangerous. The trip suddenly turns violent when the bus jolts hard, throwing the passengers into alarm. The driver tries to calm everyone and promises their safety, but his reassurance comes too late. An attack smashes through the bus, shattering the glass and exposing the passengers to immediate danger. The bus is forced to stop on the isolated road, leaving everyone trapped in hostile terrain. Armed men board and confront the passengers, making it clear this was an ambush rather than an accident. One of the passengers attempts to defuse the situation by invoking Master Hong and the Flower Gang, hoping shared ties will spare them. The plea fails instantly as the speaker is struck down before he can finish. The attackers stand over the fallen man with blades in hand, showing they intend to rule the scene through fear and bloodshed. A ruthless superior warns that anyone who interferes with their investigation will be eliminated. Hearing this, the young man on the bus realizes the person being hunted is likely him. Nearby, a hooded passenger with a hidden case also understands that the target has been identified. The thugs aboard the bus move to test the young man, ordering him to stand and submit. They escalate immediately, accusing him of hiding something and demanding to inspect his bag. Their leader loses patience and orders his men to stop talking and kill everyone who resists. One enforcer obeys at once, drawing a blade and preparing to butcher the passengers. Before he can strike, the target vanishes from where they expected him to be. The attackers sense a sudden gust and realize he has moved faster than they could track. He appears behind the boss and launches a surprise blow before the gang can react. The attack lands with overwhelming force, leaving the boss stunned. The boss is hurled through the bus window and sent crashing outside. Now exposed, the young man accepts the fight and tells the rest to come at him together. The gang rushes him with blades, aiming to cripple him quickly. He answers with brutal precision, snapping one attacker's arm in a single exchange. Without slowing down, he drives through the aisle and overwhelms the others. Another strike crushes a second attacker before any coordinated resistance can form. Within moments, the bus falls quiet as the last of them drop. He calmly declares the fight finished. The hooded passenger watches in silence, clearly reassessing him. Outside, the aftermath shows the bus disabled and the attackers scattered across the road. The survivors confirm the axle is wrecked, meaning the bus cannot continue. Their situation worsens when they discover there is no phone signal in the remote forest. Fear spreads among the stranded passengers as they realize they have no idea what dangers surround them. Keeping apart from the group, the young man observes from the trees instead of joining them. He decides that surviving the wilderness is manageable, but reaching town will require a guide. Someone calls out to him before he can leave unnoticed. The hooded passenger offers a deal, guidance to Lushi in exchange for protection until Jebin town. He rejects the proposal outright and starts to walk away. The hooded figure presses harder, warning that without this help he will never find Lilu. That catches his attention, especially when the stranger points out that the case in their hands is what the killers were after. He turns back with open menace and demands to know why this person thinks they can bargain with him. Sensing the danger, the stranger immediately backs down and shifts to cooperation. As he resumes leaving, the stranger hurriedly stops him again. The hood comes down enough for an introduction. The guide is Wendong from Lushi. Wendong clarifies that the trip is not about money. Instead, Wendong reveals a small vial and implies that this is the real object everyone is searching for. Before they can settle matters, 2 off-road vehicles race toward the stranded bus. The passengers mistake the arrival for rescue and feel a surge of relief. The jeeps pull up hard in front of the wreck, bringing in a new armed group. One passenger approaches hopefully, asking if they were sent by Mr. Kamikuchi. The answer is immediate and brutal as the newcomer is struck down by the vehicle. A composed man steps forward at the mention of Kamikuchi, revealing that name carries real authority here. He introduces himself as Banri Hanadate, arriving with bodyguards and complete confidence. His men drag in a battered captive named Niba and present him to their lord. Broken and terrified, Niba apologizes for failing him. Hanadate ignores the apology and asks only about the woman who escaped. Niba admits his entire crew was wiped out by a single young fighter. Hanadate is intrigued rather than alarmed, treating the report as the beginning of something more interesting. Before he can act, another survivor eagerly reports that he knows where the 2 fugitives fled and begs to be taken out of the forest. 2 survivors step forward as witnesses and add a crucial detail. The attackers wore masks, and one of them seemed to be a woman. The man in sunglasses seizes on that clue and pushes them to keep revealing everything they know. The witnesses explain that the masked group entered from the forest near Rujia and likely headed toward Shigemoto through a route known only to locals. Hearing that Rujia is effectively a safe zone with roads leading out, the interrogator starts thinking beyond the immediate attack. He decides to move on Shigemoto at once, while the frightened witnesses beg to be released after giving up what they knew. His silence makes clear he has no intention of treating them as partners or equals. Instead, his men close in on the witnesses, turning the interrogation into an execution. The captives realize too late that giving information was never going to save them. Their screams echo through the forest as the group is eliminated. The scene shifts to Shigemoto, where the next stage of the pursuit is about to unfold. As they walk through town, Yuki warns Hanati not to use his powers unless absolutely necessary. She explains that his presence in Shigemoto is already risky, and exposing the secret of the divine water could draw deadly attention. Hanati accepts the warning and agrees to stay careful. A moment later, Yuki spots the local contact they came to find. The man is outside a souvenir shop, tending gently to a stray dog instead of acting like someone caught in danger. His calm with the animal suggests a kind nature despite the tension surrounding the town. Yuki recognizes him as Mr. Kaneda, the guide they were seeking in Shigemoto. Kaneda recognizes Yuki as well, confirming they have found the right person. Yuki urgently asks him to guide her friend to Rigia as fast as possible, and Kaneda reveals he had already arranged a car for departure. She vouches for him to Hanati, explaining that Kaneda once saved people from Rigia and knows the safe routes. But Yuki also remembers that Kaneda has been hospitalized for years, hinting that his current situation may be unstable. Kaneda tells them to wait inside the shop for now, while Yuki notices his business is suddenly thriving. The reason appears immediately when a blonde debt collector arrives with a crowd and demands repayment of Kaneda's gambling debt. Hanati quickly understands that these men are trouble and that Kaneda is cornered. Kaneda tries to delay them, claiming he is busy and asking to settle it later. The blonde enforcer refuses to give him more time and makes clear this is the final demand. With the gang surrounding them, Kaneda's debt becomes everyone's problem. Yuki realizes the car Kaneda prepared may have been put up as collateral for one of his bets. Kaneda explodes in anger, accusing the collector of preying on his desperation and trapping him in a predatory loan. The collector coolly insists everything was legal, then reveals the debt has ballooned from 5 million yen to 130 million through gambling and treatment costs. Yuki thinks through the danger at once. Without the car they cannot reach Rigia, and if they delay any longer, Minami's pursuers will catch them. To keep their escape route alive, Yuki steps in and offers to pay off Kaneda's debt herself. Kaneda protests, but Yuki insists he can repay her later because securing the car now matters more than anything else. The blonde man accepts the idea on one condition and has his subordinate produce the contract details. The paperwork is brought forward, turning the confrontation into a formal gamble rather than a simple payoff. The collector boasts that only 15 days have passed, yet the debt has already reached 130 million yen, underscoring how rigged the arrangement is. Yuki rejects those terms as extortion, and Kaneda backs her up. The blonde man dismisses morality entirely, saying that in Shigemoto everything is settled through gambling. He proposes a dice match with the newcomer, promising the debt will vanish if she wins while hinting that his side dominates every table in town. His bespectacled associate politely introduces himself, masking the threat with false courtesy. Kaneda urgently warns Yuki that this is no ordinary hustler but one of the most powerful figures in the gambling halls. The terms are laid out plainly: victory clears the debt, but defeat doubles it. The blonde man presses Yuki to commit, confident the trap is already closed. Yuki feels the pressure of being held hostage by circumstances, knowing she must protect the car and their route without provoking a direct fight. As she studies the men in front of her, she realizes the entire situation may have been engineered from the beginning. Then she focuses on the game itself and remembers the key principle of a dice match: the sound can reveal what sight cannot. A childhood memory surfaces of training her hearing with dice, giving her a hidden edge. With that advantage in mind, Yuki confirms that winning will erase the debt and decides she can beat them at their own game. Kaneda tries one last time to stop her, convinced the challenge is a setup. The blonde collector answers with smiling confidence, pretending to be honorable while clearly expecting the rigged gamble to go his way. A tense gambling match is arranged as both sides gather around the table under the watch of their companions. The young woman in the cap takes control of the room and formally starts the game. The blonde gambler accepts with calm confidence, ready to demonstrate his advantage. With everyone seated, the confrontation settles into a direct contest between the two sides. The dark-haired man quietly realizes Wendong has already been lured into a trap and that their opponent is far more dangerous than a mere casino cheat. The blonde man inwardly mocks them for agreeing so easily, convinced they have walked into his hands. He recalls being trained in gambling from childhood and treats his skill as something honed to a professional level. That training has made him certain he can dominate even major casinos through technique alone. He also relies on a special cufflink mechanism from his master, believing it secures the outcome as long as he can trigger it. As the woman raises the dice cup, he is already sure that guessing odd or even has become a fixed win for him. He sees the entire match as decided from the start and savors what he thinks is an unavoidable victory. He courteously lets the woman choose first, pretending fairness while expecting her to lose. His men laugh and warn her not to accuse them later, showing how certain they are that she is outmatched. She cuts through their mockery and makes it clear they are celebrating far too early. She reasons that odd and even should be equally likely, but she has already found a hidden pattern in how the dice land. By memorizing the subtle differences in the sounds, she has learned to identify each result by ear. Trusting that analysis, she confidently calls even for the first round. The blonde gambler notices her confidence, deliberately chooses odd instead, and orders the cup opened. The dice total comes out even, giving her the first round exactly as she predicted. Her side takes heart, knowing one more win will decide the match in their favor. The blonde man's followers dismiss the setback as meaningless and pressure the game to continue. Unshaken, the woman prepares for the next throw and warns them not to act arrogant before they can bear the consequences. She slams the cup down to begin the second round. After listening again, she immediately calls odd and passes the decision back to him. Instead of choosing odd or even, the blonde gambler reveals a more specific bet, showing he has another layer to his scheme. Watching closely, the dark-haired man senses the real game is only now beginning. With a predatory grin, the blonde gambler bets on leopard, the rare result where all 3 dice match. The old man is startled, knowing that outcome is extremely unlikely and wondering why anyone would risk such a choice unless they were certain. The woman believes this should end the contest and prepares to expose his failure. Certain he has overreached, she declares that the game is finished. The blonde man answers with quiet amusement, as if her confidence only confirms his control. When the cup is opened, the dice show 3 sixes, and his impossible leopard bet succeeds. The result shocks the woman and her allies, and she is shaken by the realization that her careful listening has somehow failed. The dark-haired observer remains composed, studying the upset without surprise. The blonde gambler quickly demands another round, eager to press his regained momentum. The woman resolves not to misread the next throw and grips the cup with renewed determination. She forces herself to calm down and listen more carefully than before. She brings the cup down again to set the third round in motion. This time she thinks she hears an odd total and tries to trust her senses despite her lingering doubt. Beside her, the dark-haired man watches in silence, measuring both her uncertainty and the opponent's method. Under pressure, she finally calls odd, though her confidence is clearly wavering. The blonde man's followers jeer at her hesitation and boast that their boss never loses at dice. The blonde gambler dismisses his own men as fools, convinced none of them understand how absolute his control is at the table. Treating gambling as his personal domain, he chooses even for this round with complete certainty. The woman is thrown off by his choice and begins to fear she may have misheard the result again. Still unsettled, she reaches to open the cup and reveal whether her judgment was right. Before she can do it, a hand stops her and interrupts the round. The sudden interference stuns the blonde gambler and his men, who demand to know who dares step in. The dark-haired man finally enters the contest himself, taking hold of the cup and declaring that he will gamble against the blonde man instead. For the first time, the blonde gambler loses his easy composure and reacts with open surprise. Yumo's companion senses that the man they are dealing with is far from ordinary. Yumo confirms her suspicion by revealing that the foreigner is someone like him, which shocks her. As she processes that realization, the implication becomes clear that their opponent is a cultivator. The bespectacled host's ominous composure reinforces that this gamble is no longer normal. A blonde debtor challenges Yumo's right to place a bet on the woman's behalf, trying to undermine him before the game begins. He quickly reframes the issue, claiming he was really betting against Yumo all along and trying to seize control of the terms. Yumo answers by casually putting up a bank card loaded with 1.2 million, proving he can match the stakes. The blonde man accepts the temptation immediately and agrees that the winner should take the money as well. With the stakes raised, he grows more eager, convinced the game now favors him even more. He sits back down and embraces the wager, treating Yumo's offer as easy profit. The rules are set. If Yumo wins, the debt disappears, but if he loses, the debt doubles and his 1.2 million is forfeited. The host confirms his own bet remains unchanged and presses Yumo for his final choice. Yumo calmly chooses leopard, the rare triple-of-a-kind result. He goes further and specifies that it will be an odd leopard, making the prediction absurdly precise. The host's side laughs at what they see as an impossibly clumsy bluff. Even Yumo's companion questions whether he is serious, since he has narrowed an already tiny chance even further. The host gives Yumo one last chance to change his call, expecting him to back down. Yumo refuses without hesitation and tells them to open the dice. The host accepts and prepares to manipulate the outcome with confidence. He reveals that his cufflink can move objects within 50 meters through focused control, making ordinary dice trivial to rig. Certain of victory, he orders the cup opened and already imagines taking Yumo's money. When the dice are revealed, they show a 333, exactly an odd leopard, and the room is stunned. The host and his men can barely believe it, and immediately suspect something impossible has happened. The host erupts, insisting that if Yumo called odd, the result should have become even, so the outcome makes no sense to him. Yumo's companion fires back that they cannot call Yumo a cheat for rolling exactly what he predicted. The host protests that with him present, no one else should have been able to force a leopard at all. Yumo cuts through the confusion by exposing the real trick. The host had altered the dice values. He lays out the method plainly, accusing the host of relying on the cufflink to change the numbers under the cup. Yumo dismisses the technique as crude and demonstrates that he understood it from the start. The blonde debtor is rattled, while the host is forced to face that his certainty has collapsed. Yumo's companion openly condemns the host for cheating, turning the room's moral pressure against him. Exposed and cornered, the host drops pretense and threatens everyone, making it clear no one will leave if they oppose him. His men surge into action as purple energy flares, and the confrontation shifts from gambling to violence. The host fully unleashes his power and promises consequences for crossing him. He sends multiple blades hurtling at Emo with lethal force. But the attack fails to shake Emo, and the host realizes too late that he has misjudged his opponent. The flying blades are knocked off course before they can do any harm. Emo closes the distance in an instant, turning defense into a direct counterattack. He drives a kick into the host and breaks his momentum completely. The host's subordinates panic and call out to him as his authority visibly falters. Emo, now openly radiating power, demands the debt receipt and declares the agreement settled in his favor. The blonde debtor starts to lash out, but fear and confusion overtake his anger. The injured host desperately orders his side to hand over the receipt at once. With Emo gripping his throat, the host abandons all pride and begs for immediate compliance. The room watches in shock as Emo lifts the host effortlessly, proving who now controls the situation. Emo warns that if the host wants to die, he can keep resisting. The blonde man gives in and agrees to comply, finally addressing the host with submission. Once the matter is settled, Emo discards the host and ends the fight as casually as he began it. He orders them to take their people and leave, making clear the matter is over on his terms. Broken and terrified, the host can only accept Emo's command. As a frightened man flees, the woman presses her companion to explain what he did to terrify him so badly. He downplays it, implying the intimidation was effortless. The fleeing men regroup and decide the three travelers should be easy to kill, wondering why their boss was scared of them at all. Their boss, however, is badly shaken, sensing he has just encountered someone far more dangerous than expected. He realizes that in a single instant, his confidence was completely broken. The source of that fear was the destruction of his defensive cufflink artifact, which proved the stranger could crush him at will. Unable to face that threat, he abandons the confrontation and resolves to leave the area for good. Elsewhere, the third gang prepares an ambush outside Lushi town and sets up camp along the road the convoy is expected to take. Their leader calmly checks whether the route has been reconfirmed. His subordinate assures him the convoy will return to Lushi by this road the next day. Confident in the trap, the subordinate boasts that they have even hired a powerful enforcer this time. With that advantage in place, they expect to wipe out the convoy completely. Back with the convoy, an elderly merchant warmly thanks Xiao Dong and her companion for saving both him and the goods he built his life around. Xiao Dong explains that without their help, the old man would likely have died at his nephew's hands. She also thanks her companion for helping settle the family dispute, while he treats it as the simplest way to avoid further trouble on the road. The old merchant reassures them that he has traveled this route for decades and knows it well. Even so, he admits his health is failing and that he would normally lead the convoy himself if he were stronger. The convoy finally sets out, with the group reminded to stay alert and travel safely. As they depart, Xiao Dong promises the old man she will come back to see him again if she gets the chance. Inside the truck, the travelers settle among the other passengers and guards as the journey begins. The man in blue questions Xiao Dong about why she left Lu Shi and why she was being hunted. She reveals she came out to find something for Fang Nan and that the flower gang pursued her because of the box she carries. He immediately focuses on the box and asks what could be inside to make it worth chasing her over. Xiao Dong admits she does not know the contents herself. All she knows is that the box originally came from a cultivator. The convoy continues through the forest road, unaware that danger is already closing in. Among the passengers, a hooded man quietly warns Miss Xiao that the people around her are not as harmless as they seem. He claims that, in his view, no one on the vehicle looks like a truly good person. Intrigued, Miss Xiao asks how he can judge that so confidently. He introduces himself as Qin Yefeng of the Jebin town Kongshin style, and says his martial inheritance trained him to read people through their bearing and habits. Using that skill, he points to the large, gentle-looking man and judges him to be hiding a vicious nature behind an honest appearance. He then labels the smiling old woman as the sort who seems rustic and harmless while actually preying on others. He even includes Xiao Dong, teasing that her loud and casual manner makes her look like someone who stirs up trouble. Miss Xiao is skeptical, since they all appear ordinary to her, but Chen insists appearances are exactly what make them dangerous. He explains that the founder of the Kongshin style was a cultivator from Lushi, and says he is helping her only because she wants to find a cultivator. He further strengthens his appeal by mentioning that Longding Group is a major backer behind this search. Miss Xiao is quickly won over, impressed by his confidence and expertise. Jin inwardly notes that she is easy to manipulate, but also reminds himself that several real threats are still on the vehicle. He singles out the silent young man beside Xiao Dong as especially troublesome, suspecting he is tied to her protector Uncle Aigua. Annoyed that such a dangerous person is close to his target, Jin decides the boy is fortunate to have survived this long. Before he can act, the convoy runs into the ambush as the lead truck suddenly meets an obstruction in the road. The driver spots the danger too late and shouts a warning. The truck slams violently into the blockade, throwing the convoy into chaos. From above, the trap is clear. The lead vehicle is wrecked across the road, stopping the rest behind it. Passengers reel from the impact and struggle to understand what just happened. Armed men emerge from hiding, revealing the crash was only the opening move of the attack. The gang quickly surrounds the convoy and orders everyone off the trucks and onto the ground. Recognizing the target as the Zhao family convoy, the third gang leader confirms they have intercepted the right prey. His men prepared to search every vehicle, while one of them realizes this is the same convoy he once investigated without understanding its true significance. As the gang closes in with weapons drawn, a convoy man steps forward and tries to defuse the situation by proposing negotiations. A convoy captain tries to smooth things over by explaining that transport work brings little profit and offering a small bribe. His attempt is cut off when the offered hand is violently rejected, signaling that negotiation is over. The blonde enforcer makes it clear they are not here to be bought and demands the convoy hand over the people they are hiding. Before the captain can recover, a sudden slash interrupts him and throws the scene into panic. One of the convoy men is cut down on the spot, proving the attackers are willing to kill immediately. The surviving guards break into terrified screams as the ambush turns into open murder. The one-eyed leader calmly wipes his blade and warns that anyone who talks back will lose more than their pride. He sharpens the threat by promising the next offender will lose his head. The convoy workers scatter in fear as the trucks and roadside become a hunting ground. A pink-haired young woman is dragged out despite her protests, and the attackers close in on her. The thugs leer at her, treating her as hidden contraband they have finally uncovered. Cornered on the ground, she desperately calls for Mr. Chen to save her. The hooded man she appeals to freezes, inwardly panicking because he knows he cannot protect anyone here. Behind him, his companions remain mixed in with the convoy, watching the crisis without exposing themselves. A cap-wearing ally quietly warns that the attackers have guns, and even a cultivator cannot ignore firearms carelessly. The dark-haired young man realizes their route was leaked earlier, which is why armed men were waiting for them. An older woman suddenly steps in front of the girl and shames the gang for preying on someone defenseless. The pink-haired girl seizes the moment and loudly insists that Mr. Chen is a cultivator who promised to keep her safe. Forced into the spotlight, the hooded man can only pretend to accept the role while cursing her for dragging him into it. The gang leader perks up at the word cultivator, intrigued that he may have found one by chance. Amused rather than afraid, he raises a gun and mocks the idea that a cultivator should survive a bullet. Under that pressure, the supposed protector drops to his knees. He immediately begs for mercy and admits the girl was lying, insisting he is no cultivator at all. The women stare at him in disbelief as his cowardice destroys their last hope. The pink-haired girl tries to hold him to his earlier claims about curing her grandfather, only to realize she was deceived. He snaps back that he already told her he was tricking her, and now blames her for nearly getting him killed. The girl and the older woman are left furious and humiliated by how completely he used them. The leader dismisses the fraud as another fake cultivator and loses interest in him. Instead, his attention shifts to the two quiet figures who have not panicked. He identifies the dark-haired young man as the real threat in the group and compares him to a hidden rat worth taking seriously. The young man meets that scrutiny without flinching, finally revealing a cold, dangerous presence. The leader points his gun at him and demands submission, expecting fear. A surge of power begins to gather around the young man, unsettling everyone nearby. Seeing the danger too late, the cap-wearing companion throws herself in front of him to shield him. The shot lands in her chest instead, and she collapses from the bullet meant for him. The bystanders recoil in horror, convinced she has been fatally shot through the heart. The young man is shaken that she would take a bullet for him without hesitation. Dying in his arms, she explains that the gang repaying him was their way of honoring what they owed him. As her strength fades, she apologizes to her brother and to him, believing this is where her life ends. He calls her by name, Lin, with sudden urgency. Green healing energy pours from him as he tells her she will not die. He steadies her with that power, and her condition begins to reverse before everyone's eyes. With quiet certainty, he declares that no one here will die. He then turns to face the armed gang alone, placing himself between them and the others. Even the leader is forced to admit he is facing a genuine cultivator, possibly one with an immortal art. Rather than retreat, the leader prepares to test that claim himself. He aims again, eager to see what happens when a legendary immortal faces a gun at point-blank range. The young man vanishes from where he stood, leaving the gunman staring at empty space. He reappears beside the leader in a blur of blue force and seizes control of the attack before another shot can matter. In the next instant, the leader is blasted apart by his own gunfire turning back on him, and his confidence collapses into shock. A terrified man realizes something has gone horribly wrong and panics. The dark-haired young man stays calm and makes it clear the truth will reveal itself soon enough. Around them, wounded gang members howl in pain, confirming he has already crippled at least one attacker. A fleeing onlooker is stunned to discover that immortal cultivators are actually involved. He immediately decides to use the chaos to escape before the family tied to the pink-haired woman can stop him. Meanwhile, a desperate gang member orders everyone to swarm the intruder and rip him apart. The mob rushes in together, treating the young man as the leader of a rival gang they must bring down. He meets the charge head-on and cuts through their assault with overwhelming speed and force. His counterattack lands like a shockwave, instantly breaking their momentum. As men are thrown aside, one gunman decides brute force is not enough and opens fire. The young man slips past the stream of bullets, leaving the shooter unable to pin him down. He closes the distance in a single leap, turning the gunman's confidence into fear. An explosion erupts at the vehicle, destroying it before it can be used against him. The surviving gang members stare at the blast in disbelief, realizing they are facing something far beyond an ordinary fighter. Their leader is shaken by the thought that no one there may be capable of defeating him. Even so, greed overrides fear, and the leader decides he still has to recover the item they came for. The young man's killing intent sharpens as he notices that decision. He appears behind the leader so suddenly that the man freezes in terror. The shock sends birds scattering through the trees as the pressure in the clearing spikes. Elsewhere, the escaping witness keeps running, desperate to get away alive. He stumbles into the gang's camp and realizes he may have found their base. Spotting a vehicle, he hopes to steal it and searches for the keys. Instead, he crashes into a heavy crate. The impact knocks him to the ground and halts his escape. Annoyed and rattled, he turns to see what tripped him. He finds only a sealed box, which makes the interruption seem absurd. When he opens it, his confusion instantly turns to alarm. Inside is a rocket launcher, revealing the gang came prepared for far more than a normal fight. He forces himself to ignore it and insists on finding the car keys so he can leave. But even as he walks away, he cannot stop wondering why such a weapon was brought here at all. That thought makes him pause as he senses the answer may be worse than he wants to admit. He turns back toward the crate, now fully aware the weapon matters. A dangerous idea takes hold as he realizes catching the young man with it would solve everything. Back at the fight, the young man advances on the injured leader while bodies lie scattered around them. The leader can barely hold himself up, already broken before the confrontation truly resumes. Standing over him, the young man makes it clear the power balance is completely one-sided. The leader tries to save himself by invoking the Flower Gang's backing and warning that killing him would bring consequences. The young man dismisses the threat with contempt, noting that every thug hides behind the same borrowed authority. Before the leader can process that response, the young man's power closes around him. He declares that the man's identity means nothing to him, only judgment does. From a distance, the pink-haired woman and her companion approach cautiously, hoping the violence has ended. They are still trying to understand whether the young man is truly an immortal cultivator. He appears almost ordinary despite everything, and he calmly notes that at least the driver escaped quickly. But from the edge of the scene, a new threat is already moving into position. The escaped man returns with the rocket launcher, deciding to kill everyone so no witnesses remain. He fires wildly, convinced the blast will erase the entire problem at once. The launcher spits out its rocket toward the group. The missile tears across the clearing, carrying enough force to kill with a human-made weapon what ordinary men could not. As it streaks past his face, the attacker clings to the belief that even an immortal cultivator must die to this. The rocket races toward its target, and the next instant will decide whether that belief was fatal arrogance. Emo suddenly cries out, jolting everyone as something dangerous unfolds. The nearby passengers realize the threat too late and stare ahead in alarm. One attacker commits to murder, convinced the rocket will kill its target. But his confidence breaks when he senses the impossible is happening instead. Emo bursts forward with Cloud Shadow Step, moving fast enough to intercept the rocket. He meets the projectile head-on and tries to seize it with both hands. Spirit energy wraps around the rocket as he forces its violent momentum under control. Rather than simply stopping it, he redirects its force through his body and stance. The onlookers can only watch in disbelief as he catches what should have torn through him. Even Yemo's companions are stunned by how far beyond normal this feat is. Yemo judges that his current cultivation is barely enough to withstand the impact. He stabilizes the spinning rocket by enclosing it in spirit and countering its rotation. Using both hands and controlled spiritual force, he completes the catch without letting it explode in his grip. He plants himself hard, absorbing the last of the impact through the ground. Realizing the danger is not over, Yemo immediately moves to dispose of the rocket safely. He channels more spirit into the weapon and prepares a precise throw. With a sweeping motion, he hurls the rocket away from the convo. The would-be killer is left shaken, finally understanding he attacked someone far beyond an ordinary man. The rocket detonates at a distance, sparing the group. Once the blast is behind them, Yemo's companion rushes over to check whether he was hurt. Yemo downplays the danger, saying he only scraped his hands despite catching the rocket barehanded. The passengers begin piecing together what they saw and suspect Yemo may be an immortal cultivator, while also fearing the forces hunting such people. Panic spreads as some conclude that taking Yemo to Lu Shi could draw deadly attention onto all of them. Yemo remains calm, but the others openly worry that staying with him could get them killed and wonder if he should leave. An older convoy leader angrily shuts them down, reminding everyone that Yemo is Master Aigwa's honored guest and just saved their lives. He insists Yemo protected the entire convoy and rebukes anyone trying to cast him aside out of fear. Refusing to abandon his responsibility, the leader declares that anyone who disagrees can replace him. That challenge quickly changes the crowd's tone, and some start arguing that a man this strong would actually make them safer. Even so, one of the fearful passengers still worries about the powerful group waiting in Lu Shi. Yemo's companion steps in and assures everyone that their safety in Lu Shi can be guaranteed through the Pu Dao Society. To convince them, she invokes the society's reputation and the terrifying legend of the man who wiped out the Nan gang in Lu Shi. That feared figure is Fang Nan, known as the evil ghost of Lu Fang Nan. She reveals the real reason for her confidence. Fang Nan of the Pu Dao Society is her sworn brother. The story shifts to Lu Shi town, where the city carries on under a rough street economy. Vendors openly peddle fake cures, supposed immortal relics, and rumors tied to cultivation. The routine street scene is interrupted when something is thrown and people look up. Several suited men are suddenly beaten down, screaming as they hit the ground. Their attackers are identified as Gao Yu and Gao Chao of the Pu Dao Society, who mock the men for still operating in their territory. The beaten dealers protest that the Pu Dao Society cannot monopolize all business in the area. Gao Yu moves to answer that challenge with violence. Gao Chao restrains him, choosing control over a reckless outburst. He confirms the point coldly. In this area, only the Pu Dao Society is allowed to do business. Fang Nan, the society's president, arrives in person and makes clear that the issue is not just territory but the drug trade itself. The dealers recognize him at once in panic, realizing the feared evil ghost has appeared. One of them tries to shield himself by invoking Master Hong's name and Fang Nan's strength. He arrogantly assumes that backing from Master Hong makes him untouchable. Fang Nan closes in and immediately rejects that assumption. He tells the man that this is his turf, making Master Hong's authority irrelevant here. Fang Nan strips away any remaining hope with a simple answer. He does not care who stands behind them. The surrounding crowd scatters in fear as Fang Nan's presence turns the street into a place of immediate danger. As they wait in the alley, one man worries that Brother Nan's sister has been gone too long and may have run into trouble, while the other refuses to invite bad luck. Their bickering immediately flares into a challenge, forcing the man between them to endure another pointless clash. He shuts them both down, reminding them they cannot turn every moment into an argument. He then reveals that Xiao Dong has already sent word that the convoy has arrived, proving their contact was reliable after all. With that settled, the three head for the town entrance to receive the newcomers, one of them already thinking about buying Dong's favorite meat pies. Outside town, a transport truck carrying arrivals comes to a stop. Inside, a young man is told they have reached Lu Shi. As he gets out, he learns that vehicles are forbidden inside the town, so everyone must continue on foot. He jumps down from the truck and joins the others entering on foot. Seeing the place for himself, he quietly takes in his first impression of Lu Shi. A local guide presents the settlement as Lu Shi while leading the arrivals toward the entrance. At the checkpoint, guards keep the road blocked and direct everyone to move inside quickly because no cars are allowed through. Nearby, a local thug flatters Shi Wei for becoming Master Hong's new favorite. Shi Wei basks in the praise and jokes that with Master Hong backing him, he finally understands what real power feels like. His companion adds that if Lu Shi had accepted Shi Wei earlier, he would not have had to keep such a low profile. Drunk on his new status, Shi Wei boasts that he will even pay for everyone's brothel visit, and the crowd cheers him on. The celebration breaks when someone spots something unusual approaching. Shi Wei recognizes it as Zhuo Aigua's convoy and is caught off guard. Among the arrivals, a pink-haired girl draws immediate attention, and someone privately notes that a little white rabbit has appeared. At the gate, the guide completes a transaction by handing the young man a vial. Examining it closely, he realizes this liquid differs from the spirit fluid he previously got from Zhou Quan. He detects that its spirit chi is weak and that the vial contains other impurities mixed into it. Before he can pursue that thought, the guide notices Shi Wei at the entrance, and wonders why he came personally. Shi Wei smoothly claims he already paid this month's protection fee, so he should be allowed through without issue. He is told he may enter, but not without conditions. The condition is the pink-haired girl, whom the guards insist on keeping behind under the excuse of inspection. Shi Wei openly leers at her, and frames his demand as a safety measure for Lu Shi. One of his own men weakly tries to object, pointing out that she is only a young girl. Shi Wei answers by violently striking the man down for daring to question him. As the beaten subordinate begs for mercy, Shi Wei asserts his authority over everyone present. That abuse finally provokes the guide, who steps forward with the newcomer behind her and denounces Shi Wei for bullying his own people. Shi Wei recognizes her as a former little princess of the Pu Dao Society and mocks her fallen status. He presses the insult further, declaring that Lu Shi now belongs to Master Hong and that her old faction no longer matters. She warns him that insulting Brother Nan so casually will bring consequences. Shi Wei laughs off the threat, ridicules Fang Nan, and orders his men to attack because he believes Fang Nan would never dare show himself. A long blade suddenly drops into the scene, cutting off the assault before it begins. The sword stops directly in front of Shi Wei's face, instantly draining his bravado. It drives into the ground between his feet, making clear that someone stronger has arrived. A cold voice asks since when the Pu Dao Society has had to tolerate trash acting above its station. Heavy steps follow as the owner of that voice advances into the confrontation. Shi Wei and his men turn in alarm, realizing the person they mocked has actually come. The entire street shifts as both sides and the bystanders make room for the new center of power. The weapon's shaft settles upright in the road, marking the moment as a challenge no one can ignore. Fang Nan appears with his two companions, and they welcome Xiao Dong home as they take control of the scene. The guide lights up with relief and excitement, confirming to the newcomer that this is indeed Big Brother Fang Nan. The newcomer studies the crowd and realizes a few of them carry faint spirit chi, meaning they have begun absorbing spirit fluid like Zhou Quan once did, though they are still far behind Fang Nan. He further judges that Fang Nan has already completed half the first stage of cultivation, placing him well above the others here. Shi Wei, now sweating, tries to recover by accusing Fang Nan of trespassing in Master Hong's territory and looking for trouble. Fang Nan answers calmly that he came first to bring his little sister home. Then he leans in and shatters Shu Wei's confidence by asking whether Master Hong would truly choose a piece of garbage like him over Fang Nan. A young man arrives to take Xiaodong away, immediately unsettling the older gang leader beside him. As the newcomer passes, the surrounding men tense up, sensing that his appearance changes the balance of the meeting. One of Fang Nan's men dismisses the arrival with contempt, but the hostility only sharpens the confrontation. The red-haired subordinate greets Xiaodong warmly, making clear that Lu Shi's side has come to reclaim one of their own. With his pride stung, Fang Nan turns away and hardens his resolve. He convinces himself that his new strength means no one can look down on him anymore. Fang Nan reveals the trap openly and moves to kill Lu Shi's people before they can leave. Lu Shi's side protests that this would shatter the truce between the two gangs, but the warning no longer restrains him. Fang Nan rejects the agreement as a chain for the weak and decides to seize the chance in front of him. His men rush in with blades, and the standoff turns into an ambush. The dark-haired escort reacts instantly, drawing his weapon before the attackers can close in. His blade flashes out with explosive speed. The first attacker is struck before he can even understand what happened. The swordsman focuses completely, revealing a calm, lethal precision beneath his quiet demeanor. He cuts through multiple assailants in a single burst, overwhelming them before they can mount any defense. Internally, he judges that his movement has reached a fraction of the cloud shadow step, showing how far his power has advanced. Without slowing, he drives deeper into the group and redirects his momentum toward Fang Nan. In an instant he is at Fang Nan's side, close enough to kill him before the man can react. Fang Nan realizes too late that he has completely lost control of the situation. A new attack suddenly tears through the scene from another direction. The swordsman senses the threat and twists aside instead of finishing Fang Nan. A heavy staff slams down where the strike would have landed, forcing him to break off. He immediately understands that a far more dangerous opponent has entered. The newcomer catches the momentum of the clash with ease, confirming himself as the feared leader of the rival side, Lu Shi's Fang Nan. From a distance, the true power behind the interruption steps forward while the fighters below reset around him. Hong Xingqiao, head of the Hongmen and Fang Nan's father, arrives and coolly frames the conflict as a family matter already under his control. Fang Nan eagerly urges his father to finish Lu Shi's people now, believing this is the perfect chance to destroy the Pu Dao society. Lu Shi's side warns Hong that outside forces are watching, and that pushing Lu Shi into chaos could create consequences no one can contain. Hong ignores the warning, pretends to offer congratulations on a family reunion, and orders the way cleared for President Fang to leave. The sudden reversal leaves Lu Shi's companions stunned. Fang Nan protests in disbelief, insisting that letting Lu Shi go will only allow the Pu Dao society to rise again. Hong answers by shooting him through the ear, a brutal reminder that Fang Nan has no right to challenge him. He coldly explains that Fang Nan was only useful because the Pu Dao society did not want him dead yet, not because he had earned authority. Wounded and humiliated, Fang Nan can do nothing but submit. The swordsman accepts Hong's decision with formal restraint, recognizing that the immediate battle is over. He gathers his companions and leads them away, ending the confrontation on his own terms. Hong watches them go in silence, unsettled despite having controlled the outcome. A brief flashback reveals that he had already calculated this encounter before arriving. Earlier, Hong had assessed that killing everyone from the Pu Dao society there was possible, but killing Fang Nan specifically in the chaos was far less certain. When that probability proved too low, he abandoned the idea of using the ambush to remove his son. He admits that his cultivation makes him extremely sensitive to danger, and ordinary guns barely register as threats. But the young man standing beside Fang Nan triggered a completely different reaction. Hong's instincts screamed that he should stay away from that man, so he chose caution over bloodshed. Later, back at their residence, the tension breaks and one of the men collapses onto a couch, drained from the ordeal. The group settles in, with the red-haired one loudly demanding water while the blue-haired one grumbles beside him. A young woman cheerfully introduces the place as their usual base and tells the newcomer that his room has already been prepared upstairs. He thanks her politely, keeping his composure now that the danger has passed. Another man, Mr. Yi, introduces himself and says Xiaodong had already told him about the newcomer. He explains that he once helped Dong Dong and has something important he wants to discuss with President Fang. As he begins to ask his question, he reaches inside his coat, signaling that the conversation is about to turn serious. Yi notices the vial in the other man's hand and immediately demands to know where it came from. The dark-haired man is caught off guard by the question, realizing he recognized the item at once. The sibling's side is alarmed because the object was supposed to be something their father left for Sister Dong, not something this stranger should possess. Sister Dong steps in to stop the tension and explains that she handed it over willingly. She says she could not absorb the item herself, so she gave it to Yi, partly as repayment for saving her. Fang Nan accepts that if the promised reward has been paid, the item belongs to Yi now, though he regrets losing a clue tied to their father's disappearance. The blue-haired brother connects Ye's interest in the item to Mr. Ye's unusual background and begins to suspect what Yi might be. When asked directly, Yi calmly confirms that he is a cultivator. That revelation shocks the brothers, who instantly compare him to their missing father. Sister Dong suddenly realizes the implication and understands the situation is becoming far more significant than she expected. Fan Nan immediately asks Yi for a spar, hoping to test what this revelation really means. He explains that after absorbing the divine water their father left him, his strength has grown beyond normal limits, and he believes he has already stepped into cultivation. He formally asks Yi to fight him so he can finally measure his true level. Sister Dong reflects that Fan Nan has always been driven to prove himself, and this chance matters deeply to him. Their father had wanted his children to live as ordinary people, despite the secrets he left behind. Fan Nan presses Yi for an answer, clearly unwilling to let the chance slip away. Yi flatly refuses. As he turns away, Yi says he can already tell Fan Nan does not count as a cultivator. He adds that Fan Nan will get no further explanation from him either. Fan Nan bristles at the dismissal and demands to know if he truly intends to withhold help. Yi clarifies that he is not refusing out of malice. Fan Nan simply needs an opponent at his own level if he wants a meaningful test. He warns that fighting Yi directly could end badly, making clear the gap between them is dangerous. Ye's confidence and pressure make it obvious he is speaking from overwhelming strength, not arrogance alone. The moment echoes an old lesson from their father. With only current strength, they could not even force a cultivator to move. Remembering that warning, Yi decides that if no equal opponent exists, he will test Fan Nan himself after all. That sudden reversal catches him by surprise, and he pauses to reconsider Ye's intent. Yi sets a condition: if Fan Nan can last through a match, he will explain the whereabouts of the divine water. The brothers are stunned because Yi has just put their father's hidden secret on the line. Sister Dong is equally shaken, realizing Yi is now directly entangled with their family mystery. Yi remains unreadable, showing no sign that he plans to take the challenge lightly. Fan Nan studies him in silence, recognizing the seriousness behind the offer. He gives a faint, confident smile and agrees to begin. They move to a reinforced training room built to withstand explosive force, and Fan Nan urges Yi not to hold back. Yi enters the room with casual composure, treating the coming fight as something already under control. Fan Nan readies himself and formally starts the spar. Watching from the side, the two brothers complain that Fan Nan is monopolizing the fun and want their own turn. One of them notes that Ye's stamina is limited, so if they want a chance, Fan Nan should drag the fight out. Yi overhears that and dismisses the concern, implying endurance will not matter. The others are confused by his calm response. Yi raises the stakes by telling all three brothers to attack him together. The room falls into disbelief as they struggle to process the challenge. The red-haired brother is irritated by Ye's master-like attitude, even while admitting Yi once saved Sister Dong. Fan Nan can hardly believe he is serious about taking on all of them at once. Sister Dong tries to stop things before the situation escalates too far. The red-haired brother ignores the caution and prepares to jump in. He even asks Sister Dong to time him, turning the challenge into a personal boast. Confident and competitive, he declares he can finish Yi in 5 minutes. He launches forward first, charging straight at Yi with full force. Yi does not even bother to move from his spot as the attack closes in. The red-haired brother throws a heavy opening punch, determined to smash through Ye's composure and prove him wrong. Watching the three challengers, the young man calmly decides they are about to have a very bad time. One of the attackers barely registers the danger before the situation turns against him. The black-haired fighter bursts forward with overwhelming speed, taking the initiative instantly. His opening strike sends the red-haired opponent crashing away before the others can react. A follow-up blast tears through the room, forcing the remaining fighters to realize this is no ordinary target. Even his own side is startled by how effortlessly he seized control of the fight. He coolly identifies that as only the first move, making clear he is still holding back. The two surviving attackers decide their only chance is to coordinate and rush him together. They charge from both sides, trying to overwhelm him with numbers. The blue-haired fighter commits first, diving in to pin him down at close range. Instead of retreating, the target slips into motion with precise, fluid footwork. His eyes sharpen, signaling that he has already read the battle ahead. He positions himself so the blue-haired attacker's strike misses its mark. The miss shocks the attacker, who realizes his approach has been seen through. The black-haired man remains composed, already a step ahead of both opponents. His pursuer understands the truth. Their movements were predicted from the start. Using that foresight, the target redirects the blue-haired fighter and turns the attack into a throw. He immediately chains the motion into a kick that sends the blue-haired man flying away. The red-haired fighter drags himself from the wall, now fully aware they are facing someone far beyond expectations. Standing untouched amid the chaos, their opponent asks whether this is really all they can do. The taunt lands hard, and the attackers hesitate as the gap in confidence widens. He gives a small, casual signal, as if inviting them to keep trying. Stunned by the humiliation, the two men rush him again with renewed desperation. They close in from different angles, but he remains planted at the center, as though their speed means nothing. The red-haired fighter unleashes a stronger technique, determined to force out the man's true ability. Golden spirit arms erupt around him and converge on the target in a coordinated assault. Yet the black-haired man still does not move, standing inside the attack with eerie confidence. He finally acts with a single step. That one motion releases a violent blue shockwave that blows apart the floor and shatters the entire assault. Before the red-haired fighter can recover, the black-haired man drives a crushing strike into him. He pivots immediately and smashes the blue-haired fighter across the face as well. Both attackers are thrown back at once, their combined offense broken in an instant. One of them realizes too late that even a successful block only created an opening for their opponent. The victor surges forward again, now wrapped in a darker, more oppressive power. He rises above the broken ground like someone completely in command of the battlefield. Then he dives back in, carrying that purple force straight at his next target. The attack comes so fast that the defender can only brace and watch it arrive. A massive purple impact slams through the area, overwhelming any attempt to resist. Seeing the blow connect, the attacker briefly thinks they have finally landed something meaningful. But the black-haired man emerges unfazed and warns them to stop before they are seriously hurt. That response leaves his opponent shaken, because it means even their best effort accomplished nothing. The battered pair can only wonder whether they are even fighting a human, while asking the observer how long this hopeless struggle has lasted. She checks the time and answers that only 15 seconds have passed, adding that at their current level they might have survived 2 minutes at best. The red-haired fighter can only vent his frustration, while the blue-haired one is left speechless by the humiliation. The black-haired challenger finally grasps how absurd the difference is between them. He realizes the most crushing part of it all. Their opponent has not taken a single step from his original spot. Accepting defeat, he bows and thanks Mr. Yi for showing mercy. Mr. Yi explains the reason for the mismatch. The challenger has barely entered the first stage of cultivation and still relies on crude physical attacks instead of spirit power. Still trying to understand the scale of what he witnessed, the young man asks if this restrained display was truly Mr. Yi's full strength. Mr. Yi offers no answer, letting the silence speak for itself. After his defeat, the young man realizes his father may have been right to keep him from cultivation, and he bitterly wonders if he is simply too weak. The others argue over the match and conclude that Mr. Yi clearly held back instead of using his full strength. Mr. Yi cuts through the speculation and demands the information they promised him about the divine water. Steadying himself, the young man decides to reveal what he knows. He reaches beneath his clothes for the object his father left behind. He explains that before disappearing, his father told him the answer was connected to this item. The clue, he says, is hidden inside the stone itself. He presents the blue pendant his father left him, admitting that he still has no idea what its message means. Despite examining it countless times, he has only ever found it to look like an ordinary stone. The group gathers around the table as he lays the pendant before them for inspection. Mr. Yi studies it and realizes the stone only appears ordinary from a normal angle, not from a cultivator's perspective. That remark confuses the others, who do not understand what he means by a cultivator's perspective. Mr. Yi channels power into the pendant and reveals that it is far from ordinary. The stone responds with a burst of blue light and hidden energy. The room is swallowed by the activation as everyone is forced to watch what emerges. Mr. Yi identifies the object for them as an image recording stone. The group finds itself standing inside the recorded projection as the message begins to unfold around them. A glowing image of the young man's father appears and greets a fellow Taoist, confirming the message was meant for a cultivator to discover. Seeing his father again, the son instinctively calls out to him. Mr. Yi quickly explains that this is only a preserved recording, then listens as the message reveals that creating such a stone requires someone at the 4th stage of cultivation. The father says he does not know who will find the message, only that the finder must be one of the few children tied to this matter. The son can only stare in shock as his father's recorded voice continues. The father confirms that the seeker came for the spirit spring, the so-called divine water, and warns that it is nearly exhausted and may no longer open at all. Mr. Yi is jolted by that revelation and realizes the spring is on the verge of drying up completely. The father confesses that he was responsible for guarding the spring, but his selfishness and greed led to a disaster that nearly destroyed an entire country. Hearing this, Mr. Yi immediately suspects the man may know where other spirit springs are hidden. The father explains that he sealed the spring's information away with this message so it would surface only when danger became unavoidable. The son listens as his father admits he left the warning because Fan Xiaodong and the others would eventually be drawn into that danger. The recording offers a path forward. Anyone determined to find the spirit spring should go to his small temple. To make that possible, the father passes along a key and says all the secrets he hid in his room can be retrieved there. Mr. Yi accepts the glowing key, understanding that the next lead has been placed directly in his hands. The father entrusts the children to the finder and asks him to look after them. When the father addresses Xiaonan by name, the son is stunned to realize the message was prepared with him in mind. The father says that if Xiaonan was the one who activated the stone, then the spirit spring has already entered a new era, and he apologizes for leaving him so young. The cap-wearing girl is moved to tears as the family grief becomes impossible to ignore. The father urges Xiaonan not to chase the spring himself, but to care for his younger siblings and live an ordinary, safe life without exposing his strength. As the recording begins to fail, the father softly calls Xiaonan's name one last time. Xiaonan reaches out desperately, unable to accept losing him again just as they have finally met in some form. The father fades away apologizing, leaving only fragments of light behind. Xiaonan tries to hold on to the vanishing image, but the vision collapses and the room returns. Back in reality, the group sits in heavy silence, absorbing the truth they have just learned. Someone places a hand on Xiao Nan's shoulder to pull him back from the shock. Mr. Yi quietly tells him that he has already endured more than enough. Xiao Nan regains his composure and thanks Mr. Yi for helping reveal his father's final message. He then explains that he knows where his father's small temple is, because his father and Xiao Dong's father were close friends, and he grew up with Xiao Dong without knowing the full connection. The cap-wearing girl offers to guide them there the next day, asking only for time to prepare. Mr. Yi agrees, and the group seems ready to move on to the temple lead. That fragile calm is shattered when a violent crash erupts from outside. A bottle is smashed in a burst of rage, and an unseen drunk bellows murderous threats. A furious man staggers in with a broken bottle and vows to kill everyone who has looked down on him. A frightened subordinate asks his boss how they should respond to the setback. Enraged, the boss decides on immediate revenge and vows to repay the humiliation many times over. He demands his phone at once so he can start moving against his enemies. On the call, he orders Hua Ho to mobilize the Pujia guards and come over immediately, while hearing there is an unexpected person beside the target. Annoyed by the questions, he cuts the report short and insists the matter is his to handle. To prove his confidence, he reveals that armed men are already in place. He boasts that Ye's life is entirely in his hands and could be taken whenever he wishes. A signal is given to begin. Inside Ye's group's room, the sudden disturbance at the door interrupts their gathering. Ye immediately turns serious, sensing trouble. The repeated knocking makes it clear someone has come directly to them. His companions wonder who would seek them out so late at night. Ye realizes that if visitors reach this room, something may have happened to the people guarding outside. He approaches the door cautiously as the knocking continues. He opens the door himself to face whoever forced their way this far. Instead of an attacker, he finds a young woman who recognizes him immediately. Nervous but composed, she introduces herself respectfully as she faces Yi. She apologizes for arriving so late and asks for a moment of his time. While one of Ye's companions questions her identity and motives, another recognizes her as Xiao Lei from Uncle Igwa's convo. Xiao Lei admits she came specifically to find Yi. Caught off guard, Yi asks why she would seek him out personally. She urgently begs him to save her grandfather. She explains that after returning from abroad, her grandfather began wasting away for no known medical reason. Although the decline has slowed, she says only legendary immortal cultivators can truly save him now. Yi weighs her plea against his own priorities, thinking that while he could use the trip to support his family, the spirit spring matters more to him at the moment. Sensing his hesitation, Xiao Lei promises she will not ask for help without offering something in return. She presents a purple bracelet, saying it is a family heirloom tied to immortal cultivators and offers it as a deposit if he agrees. Yi is startled to realize the bracelet is actually purple heart vine. He recalls that purple heart vine is a rare spirit plant useless to ordinary people but highly valuable to cultivators because it can refine spiritual energy. Recognizing how much it could accelerate his cultivation, Yi is tempted, but he also knows he currently lacks the healing talismans needed to treat her grandfather. He tells her he cannot handle the case immediately, asks for time, and says he will come once she leaves contact information. Relieved, Xiao Lei gladly hands over the bracelet for him to keep. Yi notes that the purple heart vine also points to the possible existence of a spirit spring, giving him another reason to stay involved. One of Ye's companions, remembering that Xiao Lei's family was described as extremely wealthy, asks who her father is. She reveals that her father is Xiao Zhanlong of Dying City. The name hits with force, marking her as someone from the powerful Longding sphere. Yi realizes Xiao Zhanlong controls the Longding conglomerate, a top 5 global company, and that his youngest daughter was given a massive share of it. His companion confirms in shock that Xiao Lei is that youngest daughter. Elsewhere that night, the scene shifts to a luxurious residence. Inside, Master Hong is calmly at home when a servant announces that his coffee is ready. Hong allows the servant to enter, still untroubled. That calm breaks when armed intruders appear at his door. Shi Wei arrives with machete-wielding men and declares that he has come to deliver Hong's coffee himself. Hong immediately understands the betrayal and rebukes Shi Wei for turning on the Pu Dao society after being raised under its protection. Shi Wei mocks him as an out-of-touch old man who still thinks status alone can control the situation. He points out that the room is filled with his own men and asks where Hong's support is now. Hong dismisses that logic, saying Shi Wei still mistakes numbers for strength and has never understood real power. Hong then calls on Mr. Wu, and the bodyguard steps forward without hesitation, treating the coming fight as routine work. Mr. Wu releases a terrifying aura around his cane and asks if the attackers are ready. Still smirking, Shi Wei orders Mr. Wu to be dealt with. A suited man is suddenly attacked before he can understand what is happening. His assailant reveals the betrayal was easy because the victim never truly suspected him. In front of his own men, the one-eyed enforcer mocks the old man for trusting the wrong person and handing him everything. The dying victim can only ask why, still clinging to their shared history. The traitor answers with more violence, driving his attack down without hesitation. The old man is finished off at close range, unable to resist. Standing over him, the killer vents his resentment, insisting he did the dirty work while the old man kept all the rewards. With the murder done, his subordinates urge him to move on Fang Nan's territory and kill Lu Xun before she can consolidate power. He refuses to rush, warning that someone beside Fang Nan is too dangerous for him to handle alone. That admission shocks his lieutenant, who realizes they are facing an immortal cultivator. The one-eyed man confirms it and admits the cultivator is stronger than he is, but says his senior brother will arrive soon. He prepares for that alliance, confident that once they join forces the balance will change. He coldly concludes that when that moment comes, none of their enemies will survive. Elsewhere, a young woman struggles up a mountain staircase, exhausted. She complains that the climb is far worse than she expected and can barely catch her breath. Yemo waits ahead for her, and she begs him to slow down. Yemo explains that the temple hidden in these deep mountains was meant to stay unnoticed as long as no one exposed themselves. He urges her to keep moving because he needs to settle his grandfather's matter, while she marvels that he climbed without even panting. At last they stop, and Yemo announces they have arrived. He tells her this is the place where Brother Fang Nan once lit incense, and where his father referred to by a particular name. The secluded estate is identified as Yiksha Mingwang Temple. They enter the grounds together, with Yemo leading and the woman still recovering from the climb. Yemo notes that almost no one came here after his father died, yet the place still carries a strong spiritual presence, suggesting it was carefully maintained. The woman leads him toward the main house, where her father's room is located. Inside, she coughs from the stale air while Yemo quietly takes in the room. She remarks that the room feels ordinary, and asks what exactly the key her father gave Yemo is meant to open. Studying the key, Yemo suspects it was made for a hidden box rather than any obvious lock. The room stirs old memories in the woman as they search. She recalls playing here often with Brother Fang Nan when they were children. Her memories turn to how she used to run to her father whenever Fang Nan bullied her. She remembers her monk father gently comforting her and bribing away her tears with sweets from the temple fare. Her voice softens as she explains that her father spent nearly all his time in this room and rarely went out. She adds that after he died, he unexpectedly left behind this Yiksha idol instead of taking it with him. That detail strikes Yemo as odd, because a monk devoted to Mingwang should not have owned only a single idol. She says her father had always been that way, worshipping only Mingwang and treating that devotion as his life's mission. Looking closer, she realizes the idol itself appears to have been made by her father's own hands. Yemo praises her father's strength, a remark she does not understand. He reaches toward the idol with spiritual power, focusing on something hidden within it. His energy slices through the concealment built into the statue. A glowing barrier of symbols unfolds around the idol, exposing a concealed mechanism. When she asks what she is seeing, Yemo explains that the idol is actually a spirit artifact used to hide objects, proof that her father was an exceptional forging master. He goes on to explain immortal cultivation, saying its stages create vast gaps in power and mastery, including over spirit chi in crafted artifacts. He describes the early layers as the foundation for expanding spirit chi. He continues that the middle layers allow spell arts, while only higher layers truly qualify someone as an immortal. He adds that advanced disciplines like alchemy, artifact forging, arrays, carving, and spell recognition lie far beyond ordinary people. From that, he concludes that her father's attainments in forging spirit artifacts surpassed almost everyone else. The woman is left wondering how someone so young can understand such profound things. Yemo inserts the key into the newly revealed lock within the hidden formation. The idol begins to melt away, exposing a box concealed inside, and he tells her to take it out quickly. With the red box finally in hand, they realize they may be looking at the secret spirit spring legacy her father left behind. Inside the box, the only clues are a wooden tag marked 104 degrees 20 minutes and a green pendant. The man senses that the coordinates point to a place with no spirit chi, suggesting an ordinary temple. His companion confirms the coordinates cover a broad area but still place the target somewhere nearby. They decide to split up, with him searching the temple grounds while she stays back and uses the temple as a base. Realizing there are wild hot springs nearby, they head out to investigate that lead. Elsewhere in the forest at night, a frantic chase is already underway. A barefoot boy runs in panic, struggling to keep ahead of whoever is after him. He pushes himself through the dark woods, exhausted and terrified. A sudden sound behind him makes him realize his pursuers are still close. He drops behind a tree to hide, trying to make himself disappear. Armed men search the area, and their leader demands to know where the boy has gone. To flush him out, the leader threatens the boy by invoking his sister. The boy cowers in silence as the men decide to stop searching and instead capture his sister and force him out through her. Overwhelmed by fear, he nearly breaks down completely. He clings to thoughts of his sister as his last source of courage. Desperate, he prays to the local deity to get him safely back to the village and to the chief, Uncle Damu. As he grips the pendant around his neck, it begins to glow with an eerie green light. Not far away, a fire burns in the forest where the searching man has made camp. After 3 fruitless days, he concludes there is no spirit spring aura nearby and re-examines the wooden coordinates marker. He considers the possibility that the spring has completely dried up, which would explain why only a spirit spring can raise his cultivation now. He reflects that absorbing a 3rd spirit spring would have let him break through and extend his life, but without it he needs another method. His thoughts are interrupted when he notices something approaching through the woods. The source turns out to be a frightened child stumbling into the clearing. He is puzzled that a child would be alone in the forest so late at night. The boy urgently warns him to flee because danger is coming. That warning makes the man realize the child is not the threat but a target fleeing from one. When armed pursuers arrive, he immediately understands the boy has run into him while escaping them. The mercenaries dismiss the boy's life as worthless and order each other to kill him without wasting time. The man recalls hearing that mercenaries had been active near the village and suspects these are the same ones. Their leader levels a gun at him too, mocking his bad luck and treating him as another disposable witness. The boy begs him to run, but the man instead releases power and prepares to act. He explodes into motion before the gunman can react. In an instant, he closes the distance under a surge of blue energy. He seizes one mercenary's rifle before it can be used. The speed and force of the move leave the gunman stunned. The leader is shaken by the possibility that this opponent is far beyond normal human limits. Annoyed after days of frustration, the man decides to vent that mood on them. He faces the mercenaries calmly, making it clear they have chosen the wrong target. One of them abandons his gun and charges with a blade in desperation. The man meets the attack head-on without hesitation. He cuts the attacker down in a single brutal counter. Without slowing, he tightens his grip on the weapon and continues the assault. A rapid spinning strike drops all three mercenaries almost instantly. Watching in disbelief, the boy realizes this stranger effortlessly defeated the men his sister had feared. The man dismisses the whole encounter as an irritating nuisance and starts to leave. He reflects bitterly that after wandering for 3 days and finding nothing, he has only ended up with guns pointed at him. Before he can go, the boy timidly calls out to him. Awestruck, the boy assumes only the local lord deity could possess such overwhelming power and asks if that is who he is. The man denies being any deity and tries to brush the misunderstanding aside. But the boy persists, introducing himself as a villager from Chi village and revealing that his sister is the Holy Maiden. A desperate boy begs the deity to save his sister, claiming she was taken by dangerous men. The deity immediately focuses on the key point and realizes mercenaries may have abducted her. When his plea is doubted, the boy panics and insists he is telling the truth. To prove it, he reveals that his sister left him a token meant to identify her connection to the deity. The token turns out to be a sacred pendant from the Holy Maiden, confirming the boy's story. Recognizing the pendant shocks the deity, because it matches one tied to his own past. He compares the pendant with his own and confirms the two are a paired set, proving the sister's identity. The boy explains that his sister is Ji Wanqing, the Holy Maiden of Spirit Pool Village, and that this pendant was entrusted to her by the deity. The deity concludes that if Ji Wanqing was seized while trying to leave with Dongdong's father, then she was likely heading toward him. That realization convinces him this journey was worthwhile, because the abduction is directly tied to him. He decides at once to intervene and tells the boy they will go rescue his sister. Elsewhere, the story shifts to the place where the captive women are being held. Inside the compound, a bound woman is violently thrown into confinement. She is identified as Ji Wanqing of Spirit Pool Village, confirming the abducted Holy Maiden has been imprisoned. A masked interrogator treats her as a valuable prize because of her village's legendary status. He makes clear that what he truly wants is the secret of the divine spring her village has protected for centuries. Positioning himself to dominate the exchange, he prepares to force answers from her. He begins the interrogation by demanding the location of the divine water spring. On the way through the forest, the boy anxiously asks how they can possibly rescue his sister. The deity decides they must first scout the enemy camp before making any move. He reflects that even in his current physical body he can still be injured, especially after previously taking a rocket head-on. Since the mercenaries are heavily armed, he knows a reckless assault would be foolish. He resolves to act carefully, while the boy admits his sister had tried to sneak him away before everything was exposed. They finally reach the edge of the enemy position. Seeing the danger ahead, the boy warns that going any closer will get them spotted. From their vantage point, they confirm the mercenaries are holding Ji Wanqing inside a fortified base. The deity studies the camp in silence, searching for a workable opening. The base is packed with guards, vehicles, and heavy weapons, confirming a frontal attack would be costly. Rather than back down, he coolly prepares to exploit another option. He remembers the artifact he carries and realizes it may solve the infiltration problem. Producing the item, he decides it can be used to slip inside the camp. Soon after, a guard steps away from his post under the excuse of taking a quick smoke break. The guard complains about being hurried all day, leaving himself isolated and careless. The deity strikes from behind and silently knocks him out before he can react. With the guard down, the deity drags the body aside to hide the evidence. He disappears into the brush, preparing the next stage of the infiltration. Using the spirit artifact Song's shadow ability, he takes on the guard's appearance, though he notes the disguise cannot be maintained for long. Now disguised, he turns when another mercenary calls out to the missing smoker. A patrol urges him to hurry back so they can finish their rounds, giving him a natural way to blend in. He answers casually and rejoins them without raising suspicion. While moving through the base at night, he keeps searching for where the boy's sister would most likely be confined. Maintaining the stolen identity, he continues deeper into the compound. A superior stops him from wandering and challenges his presence in a restricted area. The officer demands his group and identification, making the disguise test immediate and dangerous. Thinking quickly, He apologizes and claims he was only looking for a place to smoke away from others. The officer checks the ID, identifies him as Li Yan from Group C, and scolds him for breaking the no-smoking rule. Instead of punishing him on the spot, the officer redirects him to help with another task, giving the deity access to more information. As they walk, the officer mentions that after a little boy recently escaped and killed several men, they have tightened security and are assigning extra guards to the prison. From that, the deity realizes the sister is probably being held in the prison area. The officer warns that the prison is dangerous because Consul Liang is formidable, sharpening the risk of the rescue mission. For the night watch, the guards settle into an informal routine as they oversee a hidden detention site. 2 soldiers enter the holding area, taking charge of the prisoners inside. One guard tries to sound humble, reminding the other that he rose from the bottom as well. A captive silently dismisses the guards as pathetic men abusing what little power they have. The pink-haired guard challenges that contempt, implying mercy is not as simple as the prisoners think. He explains that as a soldier he follows orders, and since Battalion Commander Liang has not returned, the hostages are still being kept to pressure the local organization. His partner starts to question whether that justification really holds up. He recalls a report from a little boy that one hostage's sister is unusual because she was born with pink hair. That detail suddenly makes him suspicious that the special girl may already be among the captives. Seeing the pink-haired woman in the cell, he realizes she could be dangerous and begins thinking about eliminating her quietly. He hesitates only because other prisoners are present, and the problem would have to be handled carefully. Meanwhile, the other guard tends to a wounded captive, assuring him the injury should mostly heal after a few more bandage changes. At that moment, a sinister presence with a glowing eye looms behind the medic, signaling an unseen threat closing in. Outside, a young woman worries that Yemo still has not returned, though she tries to believe this trip should be safe. A nearby gate shifts, hinting that someone has arrived. She turns in relief, expecting Yemo to be back. That relief instantly turns to alarm when she realizes something is wrong. Fong Nen appears badly injured, supporting a pink-haired woman as he staggers in. Barely holding himself together, he warns that Xiao Dong, Gao Yu, and the others are in danger. Inside the prison, someone grabs the medic from behind before he can react. The medic turns and finds it is Captain Fong, who has arrived unexpectedly. Captain Fong casually takes control of the situation and tells him to leave the simple matter to him. Relieved, the medic yields authority and even jokes that he will praise the captain for handling it. The room is shut off again as the exchange ends. Battalion Commander Liang suddenly storms in with several men, furious that Fong Wu is guarding the prison. Caught off guard, Fong Wu immediately apologizes and tries to placate him. Liang's anger sharpens as he notices something that confirms his suspicion. A prisoner asks whether the guards are really carrying out the orders of her brother, and Liang instantly recognizes the implication. Fong Wu panics and tries to deny it before the truth can spread further. Liang cuts him off, orders him to disappear, and makes clear that survival itself is more than Fong Wu deserves. He decides to amuse himself by choosing which captive will suffer next. Terrified women huddle together as Liang recalls with disappointment that the last woman he toyed with died too quickly. Fong Wu steps between Liang and the prisoners, reminding him that he once failed to stop him but refusing to let anyone be taken this time. Liang answers with immediate violence, striking Fong Wu down before he can resist. As Fong Wu falls, Liang mocks him for not learning from the last beating and his men treat the defiance as foolish. Liang openly boasts that even if all these prisoners died one by one, it would mean nothing to him. In pain but resolute, Fong Wu apologizes for defying his superior and still swears he will not surrender a single captive. Liang orders his men to beat Fong Wu so badly he will be bedridden for a month, and they obey at once. The soldiers begin the assault, smashing Fong Wu as he tries to stay upright. They continue kicking and stomping him, determined to break both his body and his pride. Watching the beating, Liang smugly notes that he did not expect such backbone from someone so ordinary. His attention returns to the pink-haired prisoner, whom he eagerly singles out as the kind of fragile victim he enjoys tormenting. From the floor, Fong Wu desperately reaches out and begs him to stop. Liang asks one subordinate which group he belongs to, then orders all the men to leave and shut the door, no matter what they hear. One soldier accepts the order while warning that a few people may still ruin Liang's mood. Pinned under a boot, Fong Wu recognizes the man as Li Yan. Li Yan gives no answer, revealing nothing of his intentions. Forced down and unable to move, Fong Wu can only submit as the others comply with Liang's command. Standing over him, Liang coldly remarks that people born weak usually end up exactly like this. Just as Liang prepares to proceed behind closed doors, the door is suddenly shoved open from outside. A red-eyed soldier appears at the cell door with a cold, predatory intent. The barrier gives way as he forces his way into the prison block. A guard barks at him to leave, assuming he can still control the situation. The intruder answers by crushing the lock with brute force. Even as another guard curses at him, he keeps opening the cell without hesitation. He tears the mechanism apart completely, making it clear he is not here to obey orders. The commander angrily demands to know what he thinks he is doing and orders him removed. The soldier repeats the order to leave as if testing its meaning. He makes clear he will not go until he finishes what he came for. He declares that no one in this place will be allowed to escape. The guards mock his threat and trust in their numbers and rank to crush him. In response, power flares around him and turns the standoff into something far more dangerous. He invites them to prove whether they can survive him. The commander, insulted that an ordinary soldier would challenge him, orders an immediate execution. One of the men lunges in eagerly, confident that any murder can be covered up. The commander boasts that his family connections will protect them and dismisses the target as disposable. The attacker rushes in first, trying to overwhelm the red-eyed soldier with speed and a blade. He commits fully to the strike, aiming to cut the intruder down in one motion. The blade reaches the red-eyed soldier, but he remains unnervingly calm. At the last instant, the attacker realizes too late that the counter is already coming. The red-eyed soldier intercepts him and redirects the assault with overwhelming force. The attacker is smashed to the ground and disarmed in a single exchange. The victor repeats his warning that none of them are leaving. A surviving guard stares in disbelief as the balance of power collapses. The dropped knife strikes the floor, underscoring how completely the first attack failed. The red-eyed soldier stands over the scene, fully in control. He surges down the corridor toward the remaining men before they can regroup. Panicked, the guards finally reach for firearms as the commander urges them to shoot. The commander is shaken by how suddenly this unknown threat has appeared. Gunfire erupts, but the red-eyed soldier charges straight through it. He breaks their formation with a brutal close-range strike before they can capitalize on the shots. Moving through them faster than they can react, he disables both gunmen in rapid succession. He finishes one at point-blank range with a crushing blow. The man collapses, leaving the commander alone to face what he unleashed. Standing over the fallen, the red-eyed soldier warns the commander that the next loss will be the last thing he has left. Now frightened, the commander demands his identity and tries to invoke his brother, Consul Leon, as protection. When that fails, he reveals the truth in desperation. The intruder is an Esper from the New World, and harming him could bring terrible retaliation. That revelation catches the soldier's attention and gives the title immediate weight. Sensing an opening, the commander tries to tempt him with promises that joining him could also make him an Esper. He justifies himself by claiming the prisoners are expendable and that extraordinary people have the right to prey on ordinary lives. He even offers the captives as raw material, saying their lives are enough to make a whole batch of potion. Hearing that they absorb life force, the red-eyed soldier recognizes the method as disturbingly familiar. He recalls that Xuanyi Wang once used the same shadow energy to break through his first cultivation stage. That connection hardens his expression and turns suspicion into certainty. One wounded guard realizes in horror that they were lied to and that the supposed hostages were actually victims. The commander starts to say more, still trying to talk his way out. The soldier cuts him off with a sudden, merciless strike to the face. The blow launches the commander backward with overwhelming force. He ends up pinned against the wall, broken and helpless beneath the impact. The red-eyed soldier rejects the entire path before him, deciding that power gained this way is not worth wanting. A battered soldier realizes the man before him is not Li Yan and demands to know who has infiltrated the place. The stranger calmly confirms the deception, while activating a strange power in his hand. He reveals himself as Yemo and declares that he intends to save the captives, daring anyone present to stop him. The soldier admits he has no way to oppose him anymore. The prisoners, hearing this, accept escape as far better than remaining test subjects. Yemo immediately moves to free them by force. Without slowing down, he orders the others to help remove everyone's restraints. The soldier can only grumble at Yemo's rough methods. Yemo turns to a pink-haired woman and asks if she is Chi Wanqing. She is startled that a stranger knows her name, and connects him to the village chief who summoned them. Yemo explains that her younger brother asked him to rescue her, and he begins cutting her loose while noting he also has questions for her. The soldier warns that the gunfire has likely drawn attention and that leaving normally will mean walking into a siege. Yemo asks whether the outside lies directly behind the warehouse wall. When the soldier confirms it does, Yemo settles on a direct exit. The soldier is stunned as Yemo's power tears open the wall instead of using a door. Faced with a man-made breach to the open night, the soldier can only wonder whether Yemo is even human. Yemo brushes off the shock and tells them it is time to move. The soldier hesitates, caught between fear and decision. Yemo gives him a final choice: stay with the people who did all this, or leave with the victims. The soldier falls silent as the others wait for his answer. Yemo prepares himself to leave without expecting loyalty. When he hears the soldier speak up, he pauses to listen. The soldier commits himself at last and chooses to go with Yemo and the rescued group. Elsewhere, the wider city is already in chaos, with fires spreading across multiple buildings. Civilians flee in panic as the disaster drives the streets into terror. Inside another burning location, armed men continue operating amid the flames. At the same time, captives are being tortured for information about Fang Wu's whereabouts. One prisoner tries to bait his interrogator into coming closer, hinting that he knows something useful. The interrogator takes the bait, convinced the captive is ready to talk. Instead, the prisoner lashes out and headbutts him. The humiliated thug recoils in pain and fury. The bound prisoners laugh, pleased that even restrained they can still strike back together. Enraged, the thug orders his men to kill them since Fang Wu is unlikely to appear. Elsewhere, a man called Wu He, a rogue cultivator, coldly judges that these subordinates are risking their lives for a boss who would not value them. He makes clear that if simple intimidation fails, he has harsher ways to extract information. He summons his senior brother as the real instrument of torture. That hooded enforcer promises to force the truth out by making the captive reveal everything. Back at the breached warehouse, soldiers report that Consul Liang found Li Yan unconscious outside. Their evidence suggests someone impersonated Li Yan, infiltrated the site, and killed Battalion Commander Liang. Consul Liang treats the idea of an outsider using Li Yan's identity as an intriguing development rather than a simple breach. When a subordinate asks how the wall was broken without gunfire, the mystery deepens. Consul Liang answers that the wall was not blasted open at all, but smashed apart with a fist. The soldiers struggle to accept that a person could break through reinforced structure by sheer force. Liang pieces the incident together as the work of someone with a flawless disguise and overwhelming killing power. He concludes that the intruder is far beyond an ordinary human threat. A subordinate adds that the intruder rescued everyone except a missing man named Wan Wu, raising the possibility of inside help. He also reports that Battalion Commander Liang was assassinated and admits their Black Panther mercenaries failed the assignment. Liang dismisses the failure for now, deciding the mercenaries may still be useful later. The subordinate gratefully accepts being spared, while Liang privately notes that if his own brother had not died, this intruder might have become an ideal test subject. Leaving the investigation to his men, Liang departs to handle more important matters himself. Soldiers strain to force open a sealed door, but their effort is failing. When the guards admit they still cannot open it, Consul Liang takes control of the situation himself. He orders everyone aside, making it clear he intends to solve the problem by force. A surge of power gathers around him, signaling that he is far more dangerous than an ordinary man. Liang unleashes a supernatural strike at the barrier with open hostility. The door gives way in a blast of light, and his overwhelming strength leaves the soldiers stunned. One witness can barely process what he has just seen. Liang's display confirms their fear that this is the superhuman from the other world. Elsewhere that night, a refugee group presses through the forest, determined to reach safety before they collapse. A soldier helps an elderly woman along and urges her to endure a little longer until they find treatment. A young boy suddenly finds his missing sister among the travelers, and the reunion catches her by surprise. The siblings embrace in relief, grateful that at least they survived long enough to find each other again. As the group regathers, the soldiers ask Emo where everyone can rest and reorganize. Emo offers a distant temple as a temporary refuge. A pink-haired woman named Aman goes further and invites them to Chi village, saying they can stay there because it is hidden and safe. Emo cautiously asks whether her village truly accepts outsiders. Aman explains that her people still follow an old prophecy tied to a lord deity, so anyone connected to that deity will be welcomed by faith. Emo rejects being treated as a god and insists he only found the pendant by chance while trying to help. Aman realizes he may be searching for the source of the divine water. The possibility immediately sharpens Yemo's attention, and he asks if she knows where it is. She reveals that her family has guarded the route to the deity's ancestral land for generations and can lead him there. Yemo decides Fang Wu should escort the refugees to Chi village first, while the rest can be arranged later. With the destination settled, the group is urged onward so they can arrive before dawn. 3 days later, Fang Nen finally wakes in a hospital bed after being unconscious the entire time. His companions explain that soon after Yi left, a violent group stormed Lu Shi. The attackers rampaged through the area, burning, killing, and looting without restraint. Everyone inside Lu Shi was taken hostage as the gang seized control. The pink-haired woman breaks down as she recalls that Fang Nen only escaped by faking his death and fleeing with Gao Chao, Gao Yu, and the others. Xiao Dong cannot understand how Master Hong lost control of the situation so completely. She is told the invaders forced their way in, and that Master Hong was badly injured in the process. Fang Nen wakes enough to confirm that Shu Wei arrived with 2 cultivators and swallowed up Master Hong's gang. He explains that Shu Wei's faction then absorbed the Flower Gang and took over Lu Shi entirely. Humiliated and bitter, Fang Nen admits he could not defeat them and even lost an arm. Xiao Dong explodes in anger at Shu Wei's return and the damage he has caused. Fang Nan asks where he is and learns he left after opening the secret left by Fang Nan's father to search for the source of the divine spring. Hearing that, the pink-haired woman hopes she can be asked to come back and save Shu Wei's captives. Xiao Dong agrees immediately, convinced he is strong enough to crush them. But Fang Nan refuses to drag Yi into their conflict without permission, insisting this is their responsibility. Xiao Dong challenges that resolve, pointing out that Fang Nan is in no condition to mount a rescue himself. Fang Nan answers by bringing up the suitcase he had with him when he returned with Emo. He asks for that suitcase, revealing he believes it may contain the means to act. His companions grow uneasy and ask what could possibly be inside something he treats so seriously. Fang Nan warns that the contents are a taboo so dangerous even his father feared them. He reminds Xiao Dong of the shrine from their recent trip and the object she said had come from a cultivator. Xiao Dong remembers, realizing this suitcase is tied to that same ominous secret. Fang Nan recalls that the shrine's abbot entrusted the box to him only after his father died, and the old monk had clearly been afraid of it. He explains that he was meant to open it with his father, but now he must face whatever is inside alone. Despite the danger, he unlocks the case and commits to seeing the truth. He steels himself for the revelation, fully aware it may change everything. Inside lies the severed arm of a cultivator, preserved as the forbidden legacy his father left behind. Two women are stunned by what they hear as the injured man continues his account. He explains that he personally witnessed a parasitic arm called the monkey's hand, and that his father ultimately subdued and sealed it. Now bedridden and wrapped in bandages, he studies the arm and warns that its power is overwhelming, strong enough to destroy a house after infecting its host. Xiao Dong is shaken that such a thing could truly exist. He adds that once the parasite and host fully merge, the victim loses sanity and becomes a bloodthirsty force that destroys everything in sight. When Xiao Dong sees the sealed arm in his grasp, she realizes he intends to use it and tries to stop him. He confirms her fear and steadies himself for what he has already decided to do. Driven by vengeance, he resolves to wield the arm this time instead of merely containing it. Xiao Dong argues that this is reckless, reminding him that even his powerful father chose not to destroy the arm because of how dangerous it was. He admits she is right in principle, but insists their situation has left them no other option. She offers to take the risk herself, believing she should be the one to act while he recovers. He refuses, saying she is only an ordinary person while he has already reached the first stage of cultivation, so only he has any chance of mastering it. Xiao Dong can only protest that he is gambling with his life. He answers that nothing is absolute, and that this power can be controlled by someone with enough will, then begins forcing the arm into submission. As the arm fuses with him in a surge of violent energy, he realizes this is no simple test of strength but a direct clash of wills. He understands that the struggle will end only one way: either he conquers the arm, or it consumes him. He endures the full force of the possession, pouring everything into dominating the parasite before it can take him over. The two women rush to him in panic as the room fills with the aftermath of the struggle. Despite the agony, he starts to laugh, showing that he has not lost himself. He declares victory, confirming that he, not the arm, is the one who remains in control. 4 days later, back in the village, the chief and the family guardian worry that Wang and Aman have been missing too long and fear the mercenaries may have taken them. Their anxious waiting is broken by sudden movement at the doorway. The guardian tries to reassure the chief that the Holy Maiden's ritual area is strictly confidential, so the chance of outsiders finding it should be low. Even so, the chief is consumed by a deeper fear that the village's divine spring and its legacy could be lost under his watch. A villager bursts in with urgent news, calling for both elders at once. He excitedly announces that the Holy Maiden and the missing group have returned, and they have brought several people with them. The chief and guardian are left speechless by the sudden reversal. Outside, Aman and Xiaoqing arrive safely with Yemo, a soldier, and the rescued survivors. The chief rushes to Xiaoqing in relief, overwhelmed that she has finally come back alive. Seeing the unfamiliar group, he demands to know who they are and why they have come. The villagers grow suspicious when they notice one man in mercenary gear and wonder if danger has been brought back with the Holy Maiden. Aman proudly explains that these are people rescued by their so-called Lord Deity, and that his sister wants them to live in the village. The claim confuses the elders, who question what Aman means and ask where this supposed deity is. Yemo steps forward with the divine pendant, identifying himself as the one Aman means, though he notes he may not be the deity of their legends. The pendant shocks the chief, who recognizes it as the true sacred token their ancestors said had been lost. Word spreads quickly, and the villagers begin to believe their village may finally be saved. Xiaoqing explains that Yemo rescued these survivors from nearby villages after they were captured by the same bad men who had used them for experiments, and she asks that they be given refuge. The chief understands, but hesitates because the village is already under strain. The guardian offers a practical solution by housing the newcomers in an empty lot near the east entrance, and promising to gather supplies for them. The rescued soldier gratefully accepts the arrangement on behalf of the group. Xiaoqing formally introduces Yemo to the family guardian, Uncle Damu, and the guardian greets him with deep reverence while Yemo asks to be treated simply as Yemo. The chief invites everyone into the village and announces that a bonfire celebration will be held that night in their honor. Aman erupts with joy at the promise of a party. Night falls over the village as the celebration begins. Away from the festivities, someone slips into a room where a glowing phone has been left on a table. The intruder quietly takes the phone, clearly acting with purpose. He places a call and demands an explanation from Consul Liang. His bitterness surfaces immediately as he asks why Xiaoqing was allowed to return alive. Meanwhile, the rest of the village throws itself into the bonfire festival under the full moon. As food is passed around and everyone runs about in excitement, the celebration continues unaware that betrayal is already moving in the dark. The outsider is welcomed into the village feast as the locals proudly serve their traditional food and try to make him feel at ease. While eating with the pink-haired Holy Maiden, he notes that the village seems to lack even basic modern conveniences. She explains that the villagers deliberately reject modern facilities because protecting this place is their sacred duty. That answer catches his attention, and he presses her on what mission could justify such isolation. She begins revealing the village's hidden history, saying the land was once a kingdom ruled by a powerful lord deity. Under that deity's fair rule, the people prospered by drawing on a divine spring that granted extraordinary power. But abundance fed greed, and the people's desires spiraled out of control. Driven by that greed, They invaded other lands and even polluted the divine spring in pursuit of greater power, causing its decline. When the deity returned to find the kingdom ruined and the spring nearly dead, the surviving faithful begged to preserve what remained here. Her family became the hereditary guardians of that secret, with Uncle Damu serving as the village's most trusted protector. The outsider quietly absorbs the story when she names Damu as the one person everyone relies on most. She suddenly realizes both Damu and the village chief are missing from the celebration, which feels unusual enough to worry her. Elsewhere, a hidden figure complains that his subordinates failed to deal with the woman despite being told where she was. Learning she brought a man back to the village, he dismisses the idea that the newcomer could be any kind of deity, and treats it as childish superstition. He vows to kill the woman himself if given the chance and demands greater payment for cleaning up their failure. As he ends the call, he reveals his real motive: unless that woman dies, the curse on him can never be lifted. Back at the gathering, the missing village chief returns and brusquely shuts down the villagers' excitement around him. The villagers instead crowd around Damu, urging him to finally enjoy his treasured wine and celebrate freely. The outsider watches in silence, still studying the village and its people rather than joining their mood. The celebration is abruptly interrupted as wine jars fall and spill. In an instant, the feast turns into disaster, with villagers collapsed across the ground and fire breaking out nearby. Even the elderly village chief is left slumped unconscious, showing the entire gathering has been taken down at once. Later that night, the outsider heads alone into the forest, following the source of the disturbance. He reveals that the village's spirit chi has become so unstable that it is effectively drawing him toward the problem. When he finds Damu waiting there, Damu admits he deliberately lured him out and apologizes for the method. Damu says he had no better option because the spirit chi he inherited from his ancestors has already marked the outsider as a threat. He judges that an immortal cultivator of the outsider's level is too dangerous to leave unchecked. The outsider cuts through the pretense and asks why Damu sought him out if he truly sees him as a danger. Damu gets to the point and asks him to hand over the pendant in his possession. The outsider immediately treats the demand as a threat rather than a request. Damu backs off from open hostility and clarifies that he does not want the divine spring opened. He argues that opening it would spread its scent, attract wild wolves, endanger the whole village, and leave the holy maiden unprotected. The outsider rejects that explanation, noting she nearly died before he intervened and that outside mercenaries already know where the village is. Damu laughs off the need to persuade him and says the outsider is free to decide for himself. What truly matters to Damu, he says, is the holy maiden's safety, especially now that she is in greater danger of being captured again. That warning makes the outsider demand to know what Damu is implying. Damu reveals that the holy maiden leaves every year to worship the ancestors, and only he and the village chief know where she goes. Given the recent attack, he concludes the truth is obvious. The unconscious village chief begins to stir, proving he survived the poisoning or attack. Before fully recovering, the chief warns the outsider to be careful of Damu. By morning, the outsider helps a villager with a repaired bellows and earns simple gratitude, briefly returning to ordinary village life. As they talk, he casually asks after the missing people from the previous day. When he realizes he has not seen the holy maiden at all, his attention sharpens immediately. A villager explains that she left early in the morning with the Lord Deity's escort and that Damu went with them. Hearing that Damu accompanied her, the outsider is visibly alarmed. He catches up with them in the forest just as she tells Damu he did not need to come along. Damu insists he came only to protect her, claiming repeated accidents prove danger follows her, and that she is safe while he is present. She is unsettled by how possessive he sounds, especially when he calls her his brother's wife and treats that bond as his concern too. Remembering the chief's warning and Damu's talk of more accidents at the spirit spring, the outsider grows increasingly suspicious. As he watches Damu lead the way deeper into the forest, he is left weighing whether Damu can be trusted at all. The group arrives at a hidden stone gate deep in the forest. They confirm that the sealed door is the entrance to the divine spring. The young man realizes the place may have remained untouched for ages. The large companion explains that the door cannot be opened without both matching pendants. The young man accepts that the key lies in the pendants rather than force. The pink-haired woman prepares herself to use the paired tokens. She reveals both pendants, ready to test the seal. When she places them into the mechanism, the ancient formation responds and unlocks. The seal releases, and the stone door begins to open under the woman's control. A narrow path of light appears beyond the gate, inviting the three inside. The big man is thrilled that the long-shut entrance has finally opened. With the way clear, the young man takes the lead and brings the others in. He crosses the threshold first, committing them to whatever lies within. Inside, blue spirit flames ignite along the walls, lighting the passage. More torches flare to life, confirming the temple is awakening to their presence. The corridor stretches deep ahead, making the place feel ancient, vast, and dangerous. The big man voices his unease, while the young man stays silent and alert. The pink-haired woman suddenly senses something unusual. She realizes she can perceive the exact location of the divine spring. Her companion is startled and wonders whether this sensing ability belongs to her clan. The young man explains that she can commune with the divine spring because she is tied by blood to Wendong and his brother's father. Trusting that connection, she takes charge and tells the others to follow her. Elsewhere, the village chief learns that Dama has finally left the village. He immediately decides this creates the perfect chance to act. The old chief rises from his desk, moving with sudden purpose. He heads out at once to seize the opportunity before it passes. He hardens his resolve and refuses to let this moment slip away. Meanwhile, the three explorers enter a larger chamber within the temple. The big man suspects this may be the ancestral divine temple, while the woman says the spring's presence is becoming clearer. They discover a towering stone deity, and the woman identifies the divine spring as being hidden inside it. Though the claim sounds strange, she insists she somehow knows the statue's interior well. The young man confirms her intuition, noting that the statue itself is saturated with spirit chi. The dense aura around the idol suggests it is more than a mere monument. The young man considers whether they must break the statue open to reach the spring. He quickly rethinks that plan and suspects there may be a hidden mechanism instead. As he studies the chamber, something about the statue suddenly catches his attention. When the woman asks what is wrong, he fixates on the statue with growing alarm. He turns sharply, certain he has noticed a change. He warns the others that the stone statue's eyes have moved. At the same time outside, an alarm is struck to gather the village. A villager recognizes the disturbance as the village chief taking action. People notice the commotion is heading toward Dama's house and begin asking what happened. Under the chief's orders, villagers rush to search the place. As the search begins, the crowd demands an explanation for targeting Dama's home. The chief decides to make his accusation public. He declares that Dama has betrayed the village. Back in the temple, the explorers realize the divine statue is no longer stable. They understand with shock that the stone deity has awakened. Its eye opens fully, proving the ancient guardian is alive. The big man suddenly remembers the explosives were left outside in the backpack, ruining any immediate plan to deal with it. A burly man rushes off to retrieve the missing item himself, ordering the others to stay put and wait. He disappears through the exit while the young man remains behind, already treating the separation as part of a larger plan. The pink-haired woman grows uneasy around the ominous divine statue and urges Brother Yi to leave before anything worse happens. Yi coldly tells her that their chance to leave has already passed. She is thrown by the sudden warning and realizes something has changed. A heavy impact signals the exit sealing shut and trapping them inside. As the chamber trembles, she panics over the door closing while Yi stays focused on the real danger. She pounds on the barrier and calls for Uncle Dama, hoping he can still open it from outside. Yi reveals that Dama will not help because he already sold out the village and arranged this betrayal. She cannot accept that the trusted guardian could have done such a thing. Yi explains that their capture was likely possible only because Dama leaked their route from the very beginning. She pieces it together and realizes Dama intentionally left the backpack outside as bait. Shaken, she demands to know why Yi knowingly let the traitor leave if he understood all this from the start. Before he answers, the divine statue begins to awaken, its dormant power stirring to life. The statue fully transforms into a giant hostile puppet and looms over Yi as the true threat finally reveals itself. Yi explains that only by letting Dama go could he focus on dealing with the monster inside. Blue power flares around him as he prepares to confront the giant directly. The woman is stunned that he intends to fight something so overwhelming. Even as the statue raises its weapon, she realizes Yi truly means to challenge the village's terrifying guardian. The awakened colossus unleashes a devastating strike, testing whether Yi can survive its first attack. Outside, Dama stands before the sealed entrance, satisfied that those trapped within should now be doomed. He contemptuously displays the 2 pendants he took from them, mocking the people he betrayed. Dama sneers that dying inside is a fitting end for such fools. A new group approaches him, and one of them sarcastically praises his skill as a guardian. The praise turns into accusation, condemning him for personally murdering the very people he was meant to protect. Their masked leader says Dama's treachery has exposed the village's so-called ancestral values as hollow restraints. Dama laughs off those teachings as chains for obedient dogs and boasts that he was never the kind to be leashed. He adds that after watching the little girl grow up, he became even less willing to let her go. The masked leader answers that if Dama is truly a wild dog, then they are alike in kind. When asked whether the people inside will certainly die, Dama replies with complete confidence. He explains that the village's founder was a legendary immortal and that this history is preserved in the clan's secret records. According to that record, the divine statue is the nation-guarding colossus forged by that immortal personally. Because of that origin, Dama believes the statue can kill an ordinary cultivator without difficulty. Inside, the woman can only call out to Yi in fear as the danger escalates beyond anything she expected. The statue's attack smashes the floor apart, showing the force Yi is up against. He survives by blocking the blow head-on, proving his body and power are far stronger than they appear. From the impact, he judges the puppet's immense strength and recognizes the refined puppet craft as likely connected to Wendong's father. But that realization leads him to a more important conclusion about its limits. He sharpens his focus, having found the opening he needs. He surges forward in a burst of blue energy and launches his counterattack. His strike detonates against the statue with enough force to crack stone and blast debris outward. He drives straight into the giant's face, refusing to give it room to recover. The impact shatters part of the colossus and sends fragments flying, proving it can be damaged. Yi calmly concludes that defeating it is entirely possible. He darts across the statue's massive body, turning the battle into a controlled dismantling rather than a desperate struggle. As the puppet tries to crush him with its hands, Yi reads its construction and cultivation level in the middle of combat. He identifies it as an apocalyptic giant puppet roughly equivalent to the 5th stage of cultivation, dangerous but still within mortal limits. Yi notes that his real advantage is not raw power alone, but his superior grasp of cultivation realms and battle techniques. Since he himself is already at the 12th stage of cultivation, he strikes a vital point with decisive confidence. As the statue breaks under his assault, Yi dismisses it as a crude puppet whose intelligence is far too low to threaten him seriously. Yi confronts a towering divine statue at close range, refusing to retreat despite its overwhelming size. He explains that the statue's revival method was simple because it lacked spirit stones. The real source of its movement is revealed to be spirit chi flowing through patterns spread across the puppet's surface. Yi realizes that same design is also the statue's weakness, because once its trigger is neutralized, the weapon becomes useless. He identifies the decisive target as the spirit chi pattern in the statue's chest, knowing its body will collapse if that core is destroyed. As the statue attacks, explosions erupt around it, forcing an opening in the assault. Yi uses the moment to launch himself onto the giant body and close in on its vital point. Burning through his own reserves, he commits to ending the fight immediately rather than conserving spirit energy. He unleashes Cloud Shadow Step, multiplying his movement and surrounding the statue with deceptive afterimages. The barrage of false positions disrupts the statue's response and lets Yi slip through its defenses. When a massive strike comes down on him, Yi counters by activating a Fireball Talisman. The talisman flares to life as a deliberate setup rather than his true killing move. Its explosions tear across the statue's body, serving mainly to distract and destabilize it. Using that distraction, Yi gathers blue spirit power into a concentrated finishing blow. He drives the attack straight through the stone shell toward the statue's core. The chest pattern shatters, and the divine statue instantly collapses into ruin. The pink-haired woman is stunned that Yi has actually defeated a divine statue. Yi admits the victory cost him heavily, consuming about 60% of his spirit chi and leaving him needing time to recover. When she checks on him, he brushes aside his condition and focuses on whether she can still sense the spirit spring. She confirms the source is directly beneath the pedestal where the statue stood. At the opening below, she senses no spirit chi rising from underground and worries the spring may have dried up. Yi decides they have to descend anyway and leads the way down. They drop into a hidden chamber beneath the ruins, entering a deeper sealed space. Inside, they discover an enormous underground hall packed with stone statues, far beyond what they expected. The woman hesitates as he falls silent, sensing his attention has fixed on something important. Yi recognizes the place as threaded with an unusually thick purple heart vine, suggesting a hidden core lies deeper within. Following the vine growth, they find a secluded recess concealed behind the roots. There sits a stone statue of Wendong's father, preserved in a meditative pose. Cracks spread across the figure, signaling that this statue is beginning to awaken. The woman fears they may be facing another puppet, but Yi studies it more carefully instead of attacking. He recalls the recorded message about cause and consequence, and realizes he may finally be meeting the one who left it behind. The awakened figure confirms it, addressing him directly as Benefactor Yi and revealing he had expected this meeting. Yi advances in disbelief, trying to understand how a man from the recording could know him. He reasons that the recording stone should only have preserved a message, not allowed its owner to identify him personally. The monk clarifies that it is not he who knows Yi, but something else connected to this place. He reveals that the spirit spring itself recognizes Yi. The monk further identifies Yi as the incarnation of the spirit spring, explaining why his spirit chi is so extraordinary that it surpasses his cultivation realm. He then explains that his human self died 600 years ago after making a grave mistake. Turning to the woman, he deduces she must be descended from his family, tying her bloodline to the past he left behind. When she wonders if he is now a deity, he denies it and says he is only the incarnation of the spirit spring, not the dead man she seeks. He presses him about the recording stone and coordinates, suspecting they were part of a trap he intentionally arranged. The monk admits the coordinates did not point to the spirit spring at all, but to the old site of Qi village where that kingdom began 600 years earlier. He explains that without finding the two jade cicadas, outsiders would assume Fang Nan and the others simply died by misfortune. In truth, the surrounding stone statues were traps prepared to kill anyone who forced their way in. He says that although the child Fang Nan had some talent, he could not be allowed to grow unchecked. So the monk deliberately ensured those intruders would be eliminated rather than spared. He then asks the deeper question of why he himself appears inside the spirit spring's memories. The monk admits the memories are incomplete and explains only that many spirit springs exist in the world, while he is merely one of them. That answer only deepens Ye's confusion, and he demands to know how the monk can speak so confidently about the number of spirit springs. The monk responds by asking where he thinks the spirit spring in this world came from, hinting that spirit springs are born from the convergence of heaven, earth, and the world's dense natural spirit chi. The monk greets the appearance of a spirit spring with delighted certainty, treating it as proof that an old mystery has finally surfaced. He immediately overturns common belief by explaining that this world never truly had a spirit chi era at all. From that contradiction, he raises the real question of how spirit springs could ever have come into existence. He is stunned by the implication, realizing the truth behind cultivation may be completely different from what he believed. The monk reveals that 5,000 years ago a celestial vessel carrying immense heaven and earth power fell from the sky, though its owner died on impact. As the corpse decayed, its spirit chi separated into 6 clusters that slowly returned to their most primordial forms. One of those restored primordial clusters became what people now call a spirit spring. He adds that both the spring and the memories tied to it came from the celestial's remains, making their origin far older and stranger than mortals assume. That means the being who recognizes Yi is not some local entity, but a remnant of the celestial itself. Yi can barely accept that a dead celestial remnant could know him at all. His thoughts race as he realizes he is not from this world either, but from the Luoyu continent, so the remnant should have had no reason to know him. He starts connecting the timelines, wondering if the 1,000 years since his death in Luoyu and the 5,000 years here could somehow be linked. That leads him to a darker possibility. Someone may have awakened his soul after his death and deliberately sent it 5,000 years into the future. The idea horrifies him at first, until he recognizes that only one group had both motive and means to do it. He remembers the betrayers around a mysterious woman and concludes that one of them possessed the supreme time treasure known as the Time Wheel. At the center of that suspicion stands Luoying, the master he once served. Yi steadies himself and admits he finally understands what happened to him. He concludes that his enemies feared his eventual return to Luoyu, so they exiled his soul 5,000 years ahead to trap him before he could recover his former strength. In his eyes, they are cowards who feared both death and his revival, and he now sees their scheme as a test of whether he could ever climb back to the highest realm. Turning back to the present, Yi demands to know where the spirit spring in the monk's possession came from. The monk explains that the 6 spirit springs reshape civilization itself, drawing powerful cultivators to their locations and giving rise to 6 great sects. Those sects spread across the world through the earth's veins, but over time they declined and disappeared into history. Yi presses further, asking whether the monk knows where the other 5 spirit springs are now. The monk admits he does not, but says he once met a man who had already gathered the power of 3 spirit springs. That man was so formidable that he could command multiple springs at once, proving someone had been hunting them for a long time. The monk recalls that this collector called himself the Lord of the Hidden Sect. That name jolts Yi, because it matches the hidden sect previously mentioned by Song Shewin. The monk suggests the spring may have chosen Yi because he does not truly belong to this world, and because such a treasure cannot be safely entrusted to ordinary mortals. He formally declares that the spirit spring has selected Yi as its next master. Before accepting that role, Yi asks after the people the monk left behind. The monk's first concern is Fang Nan and the others, showing that his lingering attachment is to them rather than to power. He pauses, understanding how much this answer matters to the man before him. The monk explains that he stayed in this world because he wanted to protect the spirit spring, but over the years he also built a life, founded a nation, and took responsibility for many people. What brought him the most happiness was adopting Xiao Nan and the others, and he insists that everything he chose here was by his own will. Yi finally gives him the answer he has been waiting for. He says Fang Nan has returned to Lu Xin and rebuilt the Pu Dao society, while Long and the others are all being cared for well, and that they miss him deeply. Hearing that, the monk is overjoyed and relieved. Satisfied that those he loved are safe, he lets go of his final burden and begins to fade away. The pink-haired woman offers him a respectful farewell, recognizing the weight of his departure. Yu senses that something significant is happening as blue spiritual energy begins to gather around him. The spirit spring rises and surges toward him, no longer remaining a separate treasure. He realizes it is more accurate to think of the spring not as a place, but as condensed spiritual essence. To him, it resembles a portion of a high-level cultivator's lifelong spirit chi made tangible. When he draws it in, his body accepts it effortlessly, as if it recognizes him. He understands why. This was originally his power, now returning to its rightful owner. The energy settles into his body and forms a concentrated core at his chest. As he measures the result, he realizes the recovered power exceeds even his expectations. That moment is interrupted when armed figures suddenly appear through the mist at the entrance. They rush into the chamber in formation, clearly arriving with hostile intent. More intruders descend from above on ropes, turning the cave into the site of an imminent assault. Armed men move cautiously through a cavernous chamber, as someone rushes ahead toward the heart of the site. The group reaches a massive purple root-like structure, and the place immediately feels like the hidden source they came for. The masked intruder realizes the old records were accurate, confirming that the legend they pursued is real. A burly man from the Dama clan exults at finally reaching this place, treating the discovery as his long-awaited prize. A pink-haired woman is shocked to recognize him as Uncle Damu and realizes he has come with mercenaries. Seeing him aligned with outsiders, she understands that a betrayal from within the clan is unfolding. She worries that Brother Yi is still absorbing the divine spring and cannot be disturbed before he finishes. Yi, still calm, decides he needs to buy time until the process is complete. The Dama clansman advances confidently, convinced Fortune has delivered the hidden power into his hands. He explains that the broken statue outside exposed the secret by accident after years of neglect. He blames Mo and Yi for escaping disaster and reaching the chamber first, insisting the treasure belongs to the Dama clan. The woman denounces him for betraying both the village and the clan that was supposed to protect it. He rejects the clan's sacred duty, arguing that each guardian only held half a key and that the so-called Lord Deity never intended them to inherit this power. In his eyes, the true betrayer is the Lord Deity who kept the clan from claiming what was hidden here. She counters that this power was never meant to be controlled, and would only corrupt ordinary people. She insists the Lord Deity concealed it to keep everyone safe. He dismisses her warning and prepares to take the power by force. As he lunges in, he vows that once he captures them, he will force out the location of the divine spring. The masked intruder notices a sudden interruption before the attack can land. A hand flicks forward with precise control, stopping the charge in an instant. The attacker is blasted backward into the wall, his momentum completely overturned. The masked man turns in surprise, realizing someone stronger has entered the exchange. He awakens and immediately tells the intruder that the divine spring can no longer be found, though an old score can still be settled. The woman is relieved that he has awakened, while he remains focused and unreadable. The masked intruder reveals he was the one who took the people he had imprisoned and claims the old seer ultimately chose Yi. He recognizes a deeper connection and presses him on whether he knew that old man. The intruder admits it, saying the old man was too rigid to study the hidden power despite possessing it. He argues that the old world was too foolish to use such a precious force and only knew to bury it away. He adds that even if he absorbed the power, he has many methods to extract it from him. To justify himself, he claims cultivators are nothing mysterious to him because he has dissected their bodies and understands them completely. From that cold perspective, he sees cultivators as little more than hollow vessels. He boasts that against modern weapons, cultivators are still too weak to matter. He answers with quiet confidence, as if testing an old technique he has not used in a long time. Alarmed, the intruder orders the mercenaries to fire immediately before Yi can act. Yi releases a golden aura and catches the incoming bullets in midair, as though their force no longer applies to him. The intruder had expected his specially prepared rounds to pierce any cultivator, and Yi's effortless defense shatters that certainty. Yi begins a metal art technique, turning the attack itself into material under his control. With a simple hand sign, he binds the bullets in place instead of letting them strike. The trapped rounds dissolve into glowing metallic essence under his command. That essence gathers into a controlled field around Yi, proving he can reshape modern weapons into part of his technique. The mercenaries are stunned, unable to decide whether they are witnessing sorcery or a miracle. Yi explains that spell arts are simply refined applications of spirit chi, not divine impossibilities. He frames cultivation as part of a natural cycle, with fire, earth, metal, water, and wood transforming into one another endlessly. He adds that his understanding of this cycle came from entering the third stage of cultivation. The masked intruder is shaken, realizing Yi's power exceeds anything he had heard of and no longer fits his assumptions. He starts to claim he has already reached the third stage, only to be overtaken by what Yi reveals next. Yi corrects the scale entirely and declares that he now stands at the fourth stage. He unleashes fire art, Buddha's angry lotus, condensing blazing power into his hand. The technique erupts outward, sweeping through the mercenaries and breaking their formation in an instant. The masked intruder is struck by the attack's force and can only recoil as Yi's power crashes into him. The blue-haired man reveals that the spirit spring is inside his own body and offers to hand it over himself, turning the situation into a deliberate transfer rather than a search. He immediately sets a condition on that offer, warning that the recipient will get only one chance to take it.